This kid with that pouty little face is our protagonist, Zeke Eldragon. Don't underestimate him just because he's a newborn. In his past life, he was Gilfa's Eldragon, chieftain of the strongest clan on the continent. And the reason he ended up in this infant body goes back over 1,000 years. He had reached the absolute pinnacle of martial arts, but then he realized a person's lifetime was never enough to overcome a certain truth. He clung to an ancient legend. Deep within a sacred sanctuary guarded by a divine dragon, there was said to be a golden metallic fruit. That fruit was rumored to hold the power of immortality, the everlasting fruit. With that thought in mind, Gilfas went and defeated the dragon god and actually laid eyes on that wondrous fruit. He crawled forward, his body battered and bruised, toward the tree, and quickly plucked the fruit. With this, I can still pursue the absolute peak of martial arts, Zeke gleefully said, and immediately devoured it without a second thought. This was Gilfa's Eldragon, the man famed as the strongest in the world. Decades quickly passed thereafter. Inside some room, sounds of sorrow kept echoing. The issue is time. He's old. At least let him rest. Sitting beside the bed was the clan's eldest son, William. He kept calling his father's name. His expression made Zeke, in his now aged body, chime in with a reminder. Don't pull that pathetic face. My time has simply run out. Hearing that, William joked. This manor feels so cold without mother or anyone else around. Zeke shook his head slightly. Don't be so weak. Then inwardly he thought, turns out those legends aren't to be trusted, but I'm still lucky to have a wife and obedient children. He reached out to stroke his grandson's face and continued speaking. My beloved children, I Gilfas have lived long enough. I have no more regrets. Well, that's what he said outwardly, but inside Zeke was fuming. Don't be ridiculous. Of course I have regrets. If only I could have more time. If only I had more time. I still haven't reached the absolute pinnacle of martial arts. Gilfas tremblingly raised his aged hands toward the sky. Seeing this sight, his son couldn't hold back his tears. And so, Gilfa's Eldragon ended his life, at least so it seemed. Not knowing how much time had passed, Gilfas suddenly woke up. His heart couldn't help but feel a bit bewildered. Did I fall asleep? This wallpaper pattern? Isn't this the annex? My body feels unusually light. And what's with these tiny hands? Gilfas was shocked as he looked at his tiny hands. Aren't these the hands of a newborn? Have I become a baby? Thinking of this, even the strongest man in the world couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. It took a few seconds for him to calm down and try to reassure himself. Calm down. To drag someone like me, who reached the 10-star level, into a bizarre situation like this without being noticed. This is clearly not normal. Who could have done this and how? Thinking it over, a flash of realization suddenly appeared in his head as he remembered something. Could it be because of that fruit? I get it. It seems the effect of that fruit wasn't immortality, but reincarnation. I didn't expect this, but this is truly lucky. Now I can finally witness the absolute peak of martial arts. Thinking of this, our protagonist couldn't stop grinning. Next, he glanced around the room, where there were countless cradles also containing bobbies. Based on the situation, Gilfas quickly deduced his circumstances. Let's see. There are other newborns sleeping here too. I'm in the annex, which means I've been reborn into the Eldragon family once again. But why are there so many bobbies gathered here? Just as he was thinking this, a group of maids carrying a jug of red liquid and some empty milk bottles entered the room. While they were pouring the liquid into the bottles, Zeke analyzed the situation quickly. Maids of the Eldragon family. According to the timing, it's feeding time. After all, everyone here is a baby. Unaware of these thoughts, one maid said, "Get ready." "Yes, ma'am," another replied. Immediately after, they pulled out a goblin from somewhere and shoved a milk bottle filled with the red liquid into the goblin's mouth. Their actions left the protagonist confused. Why is there a goblin here? What on earth are they planning to do? As if to answer Zeke's question, the goblin's chest suddenly turned glowing red like heated steel. Next, its chest exploded directly, causing fresh blood to splatter onto Zeke. He was left completely stunned. What just happened? On the other side, the maid continued. If we dilute it this much, it should be safe. Hurry and let them drink. Yes, ma'am, the others replied and quickly went to feed the newborns that red liquid. Gilfas, of course, could not avoid that fate, and because he had witnessed the end of the goblin earlier, Gilfas was now scared out of his wits. What are they making us drink? This isn't milk. What is this liquid? It contains a massive source of power. Giving something this dangerous to newborns is truly hazardous. Despite his thoughts, as soon as the nipple was brought to his mouth, Zeke's body automatically opened up and started suckling. This made Gilfas incredibly frustrated. Damn it, I forgot I'm a baby now. Next, as the red liquid was swallowed, Gilfas realized what it was. This is ancient dragon blood. What are these fools thinking making us drink this? So the dilution they mentioned was for this purpose. This is a bad situation. I have to spit it out. I'm already swallowing some. A small amount like this probably won't kill me. The other bobbies are also spitting it out instinctively. I need to do the same before I explode. But is this really the right thing to do? Zeke asked himself. But immediately after he realized, this is a bargain, here's the chance. If I absorb this entire energy source, I can surpass even my past self and reach the absolute pinnacle of martial arts. I don't know what the reason is, but I will seize this opportunity. Don't look down on me. Don't look down on Gilfa's Eldragon. Zeke screamed in his heart, while he gritted his teeth to endure the pain brought by the ancient dragon blood. Zeke's eyebrows furrowed tightly as he thought, don't look down on Gilfa's Eldragon. The maid saw him gripping the milk bottle tightly and cried out in surprise. This baby. Zeke frowned and puffed out his cheeks, suckling hard as he thought. I will absorb all the power of the ancient dragon, and then I'll be able to reach the absolute pinnacle of martial arts that I couldn't reach in my past life. In his mind, an ancient dragon spread its wings and roared continuously. Its eyes flashed with golden light as it looked at the silhouette of another dragon. Zeke saw that ancient dragon open its mouth and bite down hard on the other dragon's neck, wondering, what? This power is being absorbed with startling ease. No, this is perfect. Outside, he lay in the soft cradle, constantly frowning and looking around in thought. Somehow I've managed to pull through. Zeke lay inside, sensing the energy from the nearby cradles and thinking. The other children seem to have survived as well. One truly shouldn't underestimate a baby's survival instinct. Damn it, it's definitely a child's body. After a long while, he sucked on his finger and fell asleep. Suddenly, I feel so sleepy. Time quickly passed, and 7 years later, inside the forest, a voice rang out counting. 998, 999. Zeke was doing push-ups with one hand, carrying a boulder on his legs. Then he used his legs to kick the boulder high into the sky. Next, Zeke quickly jumped aside to avoid the boulder falling straight down from the sky. The former patriarch of the Eldragon family, Gilfa's, now Zeke Eldragon, looked down at his hands and reflected. Still such an excellent physique, all thanks to the ancient dragon blood. In his mind, he thought about the current world, where every living creature possesses a power. Zeke thought about the bottle of blood he drank before. The ancient dragon blood that he and the other children were forced to drink contained an infinite source of power. He recalled that massive energy and pondered. The children who consumed it, more or less, gained a physique far surpassing ordinary people. Zeke felt that flow of energy and thought. Combined with the power of the divine dragon I defeated in my past life that resides within me, Zeke, the only child who completely absorbed the entire power of the ancient dragon, has undergone changes that even surprise himself. He closed his eyes and reflected inwardly, but I still only reached 1 star. Zeke looked down at his hands and whispered, only reaching 1 star is a bad situation. By now I should have reached at least 4 stars. Stars are the source of power one achieves when pushed to a certain limit. He felt the energy emitting from inside his body. The body is seen as a universe with stars floating inside. The more stars, the greater the power achieved, but each time the number of stars increases, creating a new star becomes even more difficult. Zeke clenched his fist tightly and reflected. And Zeke, in his past life, Gilfa's Eldragon, reached 10 stars, an unprecedented record. He was the only person in the world to achieve that power. He reached up to brush his hair back and muttered, but time passes so quickly. It's been 7 years since I was reincarnated as the illegitimate child of the current Eldragon Patriarch. Zeke thought about her and him, musing, my mother passed away and my father hasn't appeared once. I doubt his qualities as a father, but more than that. He reached up to scratch his face and suddenly made an inquiring sound. 1,000 years later, huh? Zeke thought of the scene of the maids feeding ancient dragon blood to the bobbies and whispered, though being reincarnated was surprising enough, being reborn 1,000 years later. Before I could even realize the timeline I'm living in, this world has become a place where the survival of the fittest is tested to the extreme. A prime example is this. He thought about the family's seat. Forcing newborns to drink ancient dragon blood is a ritual called the Trial of the Dragon. Zeke thought about the survivors and mused. Only the children who survive this trial can receive an education as Eldragon warriors. At least, that's how it should be. He turned his head and saw the maid coming out to find him. Zeke stared at her and exclaimed, I'm afraid I can't answer that question. He thought about how for the past 7 years, not a single instructor had come to Zeke. Zeke, looking agitated, roared at the maid, isn't it strange? Those who pass the trial are supposed to be trained for combat, right? But here, there are only maids. Hearing this, she asked in confusion, is there a problem with that, sir? Startled, he stammered back, "No, there's no problem, but—" Zeke pointed a thumb at himself and shouted, "Right now, physical training is more important to me than learning combat. After all, I can do that on my own." He stood with one hand on his hip, looking at the maid and inquiring, "But at least I want to know some information about the other children or the main family. Don't you think so?" Hearing this, she replied coldly, "I'm afraid I cannot answer that." Zeke frowned and asked again, "I'm just talking about family matters, do you understand?" She closed her eyes and replied, "I'm afraid I cannot answer." Hearing this, his face immediately darkened as he shouted, "Is that all you can say?" The maid also frowned and replied coldly, "I'm afraid I cannot answer that." Zeke, with both hands on his hips, shouted, "Isn't treating me like this a bit harsh?" She bowed respectfully and replied, "We are only ordered to take care of your daily needs." He stared at her and thought, this maid has reached the 3-star level. For basic combat training, just one maid might actually be enough. Immediately after, under her suspicious gaze, Zeke turned to leave and said, "Fine, whatever. I'm going into the forest. Living together for 7 years with only these minimal interactions is truly too abnormal." Just then he turned his head to look back and inquired, "Finally ignoring me, are you?" After that, Zeke went alone quickly into the dense, deserted forest. Next, he reached out and quickly pulled up a small plant. Zeke quickly stuffed the entire plant into his mouth and chewed vigorously. Immediately, he stuck out his tongue and made a groaning sound. Poison grass still tastes disgusting, truly terrible, but this counts as training. He turned his head to look around, constantly advising himself, "Patience, have patience." Zeke glanced at the bushes behind him and whispered, "But that gaze has been constantly watching me lately. I really wish I could do something." He let out a breath and shouted forward, "Well, I didn't expect them to show themselves over something minor like this. Seriously, if you have something to say, come out and say it directly." Immediately after, Zeke pouted and walked quickly toward that spot, reaching out to part the bushes to investigate. Inside those bushes, purple sparks of light flashed in the air. Hiding behind the dense bushes, he looked toward the other side and whispered, "There's something over there." Zeke saw a wild boar entirely covered in black mist and mused, "That is a berserk boar." He frowned and stared over there, wondering, black mist, something that didn't exist 1,000 years ago. What on earth is that thing? Suddenly, the wild boar turned its head and stared toward Zeke. Its whole body emitted black mist as it stared at Zeke. Next, it quickly charged toward him. Seeing this, Zeke looked agitated and grinned at the forest. Immediately after, he leaned to one side to dodge it. Zeke's eyes lit up and he raised his fist, gathering golden light to strike. He punched hard, sending the wild boar flying backward a great distance. Zeke looked down at the light flashing on his hand and exclaimed, "Just a light touch on something of the same 1-star level produced that much power." He immediately carried the boar's carcass and left. The quality of the stars is truly important. I'm starting to get bored of being neglected like this. Should I go on an exploration? Zeke left the forest behind and walked away quickly. If I want to go somewhere, the sea is the first place. Behind a tree trunk, a man gripping a staff thought, "What is going on here?" Even without proper training, he used the power of 1 star and defeated a berserk boar with a single blow. More importantly, he realized my hidden presence. That child is not normal. He thought about Zeke and mused. His mother died early and his father doesn't care. How could a child like Zeke receive a proper education? However, because the family blood flows in him, he isn't allowed to escape the family and is always under surveillance. The man sat cross-legged on the ground and muttered, "Even if he is an illegitimate child, he still belongs to the clan's bloodline." Is that so? This will be quite interesting later on. Immediately after, his silhouette instantly vanished, leaving no trace behind. On the other side, at the house, where Zeke had grown up since he was a baby, he tightened the straps of the backpack on his shoulders and inquired, "Who are they?" 3 4-star level, 1 5-star level, all are trained warriors. What do people like that want here? Zeke stood outside the door, pressing his ear against the wood to hear the discussion inside. "The air in this countryside is so fresh, Captain, isn't it? There are no rifts near here, so there's probably little chaos. They don't seem to have bad intentions. At least it doesn't look like an assassination. In that case," he pushed the door open and inquired, "What do you want in a place like this?" Zeke looked at the emblem on their clothes and thought suspiciously, "The Eldragon family crest. Did something happen?" Immediately after, the man quickly stepped forward. He took off his hat, placed his hand over his chest, and bowed respectfully, replying, "This must be our first meeting. We have come to escort young Master Zeke. You must undergo a test." Zeke was startled and inquired, "A test?" Immediately after, he stared with his mouth agape and let out an exclamation, "Huh!" Inside that small wooden house, Zeke's disbelief echoed everywhere. even when I haven't been taught anything. Zeke crossed his arms, looking up in shock and remarking, I didn't expect to be heading back to the main estate. After that, I was taken back to the main family by messengers sent from the main house. The maids saw me and quickly reminded me, you need to change, you can't enter the manor looking like this. At that, I couldn't help but be stunned. Can't enter, but isn't it to live at the main house? Speaking of which, that object is called the Dragon's Den. It seems that in the past 1,000 years, the Eldragon family has established a specialized educational academy. Zeke recalled what he knew. Everyone born into the Eldragon family aims to join the Dragon's Den and is homeschooled until age 7. Today is the entrance exam. He smiled confidently and thought, well, I'm the one who hasn't been taught a single thing properly. Zeke stood straight and looked around. Immediately after, he suddenly slumped down and clutched his head in dejection. Even so, taking the exam is mandatory, so I've been brought back here from the borderlands. Zeke couldn't help but remember his situation then. Why did it have to happen right when I was planning to leave? After all that preparation, it's all gone. Just as he was crouching on the ground, a voice suddenly came from behind him. A young man with blue hair and a gentle look leaned down and inquired kindly, Rangi's from Ordskull village. Are you okay? Is something wrong? Seeing this, Zeke raised his head and asked in confusion, who are you? Hearing that, the boy flusteredly explained, I'm Rangi's. You didn't look well, so. His expression remained rather indifferent as he stared intently at Rangi's. A source of energy was radiating from the boy's entire body, and Zeke evaluated him internally, thinking, this kid. He looks shy, but he's quite perceptive. So Zeke suddenly stood up and said, sorry about that. He flashed a friendly smile and introduced himself. You're Rangi's, right? I'm Zeke. Afterward, Zeke lamented loudly, I have no idea what they're actually planning to make us do. Hearing this, Rangi's awkwardly hugged his own arm and said, the content of the exam hasn't changed at all over the past few years. However, Zeke spoke with total nonchalance. Oh no, I don't even know what the test consists of. I have zero background knowledge. Hearing this, the boy's expression shifted in shock. What? Rangi's was puzzled internally, thinking that knowing nothing about the exam was far too reckless and wondering if he was okay. He then began to explain to Zeke, well, today's test includes... But suddenly, a shout rang out from a distance. Hey, you weakling Rangi's. Hearing that, Rangi's jumped and turned his head with a terrified look. At that moment, another person walked up with a punchable face. This was Retin from Ordskull village, and he spoke with contempt. Why is a weakling like you here? Are you lost? Scram home before you get hurt. Rangi's answered flusteredly, naturally, it's for the Dragon's Den entrance exam. Hearing that, the guy scoffed and exclaimed, you. Retin clutched his stomach and laughed in his face. No way, there's no way you'll ever get in. Your dad is a fake dragon, right? What can the son of a fake dragon possibly achieve? At this, Rangi's hands clenched until they trembled with rage, and Zeke noticed this as well. Speaking of the Eldragon family background, there is a clear hierarchical system established by an absolute monarch, the prime dragon. Next are the dragon hatchling soldiers, then the adult dragon captains, and the high overlord dragons. Finally, at the very bottom are the fake dragons, those who cannot enter the dragon's den or cannot graduate, and are referred to as the immature ones. The boy lowered his face in silent anger, thinking, but I want to prove that we aren't fakes. Right then, a voice rang out that made him jump. Why? How can you be so sure without even trying? Zeke quickly stepped in front of the 3 bullies. Seeing this, Retin spoke with contempt and anger. Who the hell are you? What, you got a problem? He replied gently, no, I'm just asking, why isn't it possible for Rangi's? Hearing that, the guy pointed directly at Rangi's and said, because he's weak, obviously. His face flinched slightly upon hearing that word, weak. Zeke stared at Rangi's and assessed. He's actually a lot stronger than all of you. Hearing those words, the boy couldn't help but stare with wide, stunned eyes. Seeing this, the bullies immediately began to shout insults. What did you say? You're saying we're weaker than that failure. Just then, footsteps suddenly approached, and 2 men appeared shouting, fall in. This was the dragon instructor. He spoke sternly. The Dragon's Den entrance exam will begin now. Candidates must register in order and then move quickly with your numbered tags. Retin stopped arguing with Zeke and walked past, issuing a warning. I'll remember your face, you bastard. He watched them go and sighed in exasperation. There's no need to be that angry. Kids these days are so hot-headed. Behind him, Rangi spoke up flusteredly. We're the same age, aren't we? So the boy lowered his head slightly and continued. Anyone would be mad to hear that I'm stronger than them. Zeke looked at Rangi's and replied softly, is that so? Afterward, he crossed his arms and stated the obvious. But the entrance exam is mandatory, isn't it? so saying stuff like it's impossible or whatever. Rangi's asked in bewilderment, "You can actually withdraw, you know? You really don't know anything, do you?" So Zeke replied, "You can quit. I had no idea." The boy gave a strained smile and continued, "You'd better just withdraw too. At least that way you won't get hurt." He didn't explain further but smiled and rubbed his chin. "Someone of my caliber can't withdraw even if I tried." Hearing that, Rangi's couldn't help but remark, "You're really confident even when you don't know what the test is." Zeke burst into happy laughter. "Well, whatever. Hurry up. We need to move fast or the exam will start." The boy scratched his head and replied, "Ah, right." Afterward, they gathered with the others at the instructor's station. He said, "The test is very simple. If you can scratch this stone, you pass. No weapons are allowed except those we have provided, but using bare hands is fine. All you need to do is make a scratch appear on the boulder." The instructor held up 3 fingers and added with a smile, "However, you only have 3 attempts." Hearing that, Zeke couldn't help but remark, "That's really simple." Rangi's was startled to hear that. "What?" Over here, he thought to himself as he recalled. "Just scratching that boulder is enough, right? After going through a crazy ritual like the dragon's trial, I thought a terrifying exam would be waiting. This is a total letdown." Immediately after, the instructor on the other side shouted coldly, "Begin." Next, a young boy quickly struck the boulder with all his might. Rangi's, on the other hand, couldn't help but clutch his head in fear. Then there was the sound of another hard strike, but suddenly something snapped, and the boy's hand began to bleed. Zeke's group saw this and were shocked and terrified. The little boy cried out in pain and lay sprawled on the ground. The instructor walked over, noted something down, and asked, "First attempt failed. You have 2 left. Do you want to try again?" Seeing that he wasn't moving, the person nearby smirked. "Considered a forfeit. Clear him out." After that, they just dragged the boy away right in front of the crowd. "Next, step forward." Rangi's was still clutching his head in fear next to him, and Zeke felt annoyed. "So this is the test." He couldn't help but mutter while looking at the object. "What is that stone, anyway?" Rangi's began to explain to Zeke. "That's called a regeneration stone. It will immediately repair itself even from small scratches. Furthermore, when attacked with pure force like that, it reflects the blow with a force hundreds of times stronger." Hearing that, he couldn't help but think, "Isn't that a totally absurd material?" The boy added, "But if you circulate your power through your body correctly and strike, it will get scratched." Zeke understood and calculated with a bit of confusion. "I see. From what I've heard, the martial skills learned are less important than learning to control the source of power." His gaze swept over the surroundings once more. At this moment, everyone present looked down tensely. It seemed very few could pass the test, including those guys from this morning. On the other side, another piteous cry rang out, and the boy was scared to the point of tears. "Number 51, fail." Next. And then another teenager failed as well. "Number 202, fail." Next. The tags fell, and the instructor continued writing on the paper without emotion. Then he spoke again. "Next, number 315. He looked at his tag and spoke up. "It's my turn." Seeing this, Rangi's worried for Zeke and said, "Hey, there's still a chance to quit." Zeke waved at him and stepped down. "Don't worry." Rangi's looked down, so tense he didn't know what to say. On the other side, the instructor pointed the way for him, pen still in hand, ready to take notes. Right then, the instructor's eyes showed a look of shock. A powerful energy radiated from Zeke's back, and he gave a slight smile. "The weapons are on the rack." Seeing Zeke enter the field empty-handed, the dragon instructor asked in confusion, "Not using a weapon?" He confirmed, "Yes, it's not necessary. This fist is enough." On the stands, the students buzzed with gossip. "Is that guy planning to use his bare hands? Even if he's good at controlling his power, he won't scratch that boulder with his bare hands. His fist will be turned to mush." Rangi's turned pale when he heard someone suggest, "No, forget the fist. His whole arm might go flying." He secretly blamed himself, thinking that, as expected, he should have stopped him more forcefully. The instructor didn't press the matter. "I see, then begin." When he touched the boulder, Zeke assessed internally, "This is truly the first time I've seen a mineral like this. This must be a product formed over 1,000 years. There's too much I don't know. Oh well." He reassured himself, "No problem," and immediately raised his fist. Rangi's jumped up in panic, thinking, "This is bad, I have to stop him," and shouted loudly, "Zeke." Meanwhile, Zeke was very excited. "With this, I can release my full power right now." Rangi stared blankly as he showed no sign of stopping. The technique Zeke used at that moment was Dragon Destruction Martial Art First Form, Explosive Strike. In the blink of an eye, the boulder exploded, sending debris flying in all directions. It was so powerful that the boy in the stands was terrified even from a distance. The dragon instructor stood frozen, because this was far beyond anything he could have imagined. He gave an arrogant smirk, It had turned out exactly as he predicted. This technique is still a bit too much for my current body. I still need to train a lot more. The stands fell silent. No one had recovered from what just happened. After a moment, Retin spoke up irritably. He smashed the stone. Simultaneously, Lika praised, "How interesting." Rangi's alone was still in shock, unable to believe what had just taken place. Then he cried out in realization, "What?" Beside him, the instructor evaluated secretly, "Impossible." The boy punched away half of a regeneration stone. This can only happen with someone at the 4-star level or higher, yet a child did it. Doubt filled the instructor's heart. Even if he's an illegitimate child, does he truly belong to the main clan bloodline? But that technique, I feel like I've seen it somewhere before. Seeing him dazed, he asked, Mr. Examiner, may I ask for my test results?" The dragon instructor immediately announced, "Number 315, pass." The instructor brought over a gift. "Here, take this." Zeke was curious. "What is this?" At the same time, the instructor whispered, "Can you move a bit faster? I still have to clean up the scene." He stamped his foot irritably. "Is everyone in this era like this? Everyone is in such a hurry. Calm down a bit." The boy ran up with an admiring look. "Zeke, that was amazing. You smashed it." Zeke was delighted. "Well, it was easy." Remembering the gift, he asked, "Oh, right, Rangi's, what is this?" Rangi's blinked. "You were given a recovery potion." Zeke was even more confused. "A recovery potion?" The boy replied happily, "the standard kind." He picked it up to examine it. "It doesn't look like poison. Don't tell me this is an elixir." In fact, it was actually cloud-piercing transparency. It is a medicine crafted using extremely rare ingredients. Specifically, the components are herbs that only grow in secret realms, and the core is filled with high-purity power from divine beasts and phantom beasts that are difficult to defeat. The specific effect is that upon use, not only current wounds but even old scars are immediately healed, and it shows great effectiveness in enhancing the source of power. However, due to the extreme difficulty of gathering materials and the arduous refinement process, it is very rare. Zeke decided to try a sip of cloud-piercing transparency to see if there was anything new. Surprisingly, the wound on his arm healed in an instant. He was very surprised. "Is this really an elixir?" Rangi's explained. "I don't know about elixirs, but the recovery potions provided by the Eldragon family are definitely better than the ones sold normally." He asked hesitantly, "Are you that surprised?" Zeke was honest. "Of course I am. To think serious injuries like this could be healed immediately." However, he was a bit disappointed. "It doesn't seem to increase the source of power like an elixir," Rangi's expressed. "To me, you're even more incredible, Zeke." Zeke thought to himself, "What are you talking about?" At the same time, he realized something. No, this truly is the wisdom of humanity accumulated over more than 1,000 years. While the boy praised, "You're truly amazing, Zeke, so incredibly strong." Zeke said casually, "Well, I'm aiming to become the strongest." Rangi's admiration grew. "You say those things so calmly." Testing continued below the stands. Number 373 pass. Number 395 pass. Number 405 pass. Hearing the results, he remarked secretly, "Their passing was expected." Next, number 414. Despite being very scared, he was determined. "It's my turn, I will." Zeke shouted encouragement. "Hey, why are you so worried? It's fine, just stay calm. Don't set the bar too high." But when he saw Rangi's preparing, he sighed. "What is that guy doing?" The boy took a deep breath. The instructor signaled begin. Immediately after, Rangi squeezed his eyes shut and swung his sword. He reminded him coldly, "First attempt failed, 2 left." He struggled on. "Once more, this time it'll work." Rangi's picked up the sword again and slashed hard at the boulder. The result of the second attempt was still a miserable failure. He stammered tremblingly, "Impossible." His peers took turns laughing at him. As expected, the son of a fake dragon is still a fake dragon. Just give up. Seizing the moment, the guy brought up earlier events. "What did you say earlier?" Retin mocked loudly. "Didn't you say that Rangi's guy lying there was stronger than us?" The words became increasingly unpleasant. "Stop babbling, it's ridiculous." The dragon instructor asked for his input. "One more time, do you want to try again?" Rangi's was shaking like a leaf. I. Before he knew it, Zeke was by his side. "What are you doing?" Zeke asked in confusion. "Why aren't you using a spear? Why did you take a sword?" He didn't understand his point. "A spear? What do you mean?" Zeke explained slowly. "Like I said, why use an unsuitable weapon without any plan?" On the stands, the guy added fuel to the fire. "In your current state, no matter how hard you try, you can't even make a scratch on that boulder with a sword." The other students joined in the laughter. "Are you stupid? His old man didn't use a spear, he taught him swordsmanship." Another group of students whispered among themselves. "Exactly. Changing weapons won't help one bit. Ignoring those words, he said politely, "Mr. Examiner, is it against the rules to change weapons in the middle of a test?" He replied nonchalantly, "No problem." Zeke excitedly gave Rangiz some pointers. "You heard the man, Rangiz? It's your lucky day, so." He provoked him to fuel his determination. "Are you really just going to let it end like this?" Images of the past suddenly flashed through his mind. Rangiz slowly stood up. "No, I will." And he made a decision. "I'll try using a spear." Speaking of the past, my father was unable to enter the dragon's den. Nevertheless, he was a gentle and kind man. He treated Rangiz very well, and whether he was happy or sad, his father always had a habit of stroking his head. He was called a fake dragon and mocked, but even so, my father didn't let it bother him as he raised me. He taught Rangiz everything from the smallest things in life to how to hold and use a sword. Returning to reality in the middle of this square, Rangiz silently vowed to himself, "The person my father raised is not a fake. Today, right here, I will prove it." Despite his resolve, Rangiz's mind was currently racing with conflicting thoughts. He looked down at the spear in his hand and thought tensely, "If I try again with a sword, the result will be exactly the same. Fine, I'll trust Zeke. But how do I even use a spear?" At that moment, Zeke was by his side and called out, "Rangiz," before pointing toward the regeneration stone. Then he encouraged Rangiz, "Just thrust straight forward and don't think about anything else. Just thrust straight." Encouraged by Zeke's spirit, Rangiz felt somewhat less anxious, but he was still a bit nervous. Rangiz slightly tightened his grip on the spear and muttered to himself, "Thrust straight ahead." His mind involuntarily recalled the past where he was often mocked by Retten's group. Then he thought of Zeke always being by his side. Rangiz thought, "Normally, thinking I could scratch a regeneration stone just by thrusting a spear I've never held before would be impossible. But how can he say that without having ever tried it himself? Even though I just met him. It's quite strange, but..." Reaching this point, he finally made up his mind, pointing the spear directly at the regeneration stone and declaring loudly, "I understand. I'll try it." He repeatedly told himself that because Zeke believed in him, he would try to believe in himself too. With that thought, he lunged toward the regeneration stone, the spear in his hand faintly emitting a soft glow. Rangiz seemed to feel the power the spear was giving him. He thought with a mix of joy and worry, "I've held a sword since the beginning, but my inner flow has never circulated this much before." Stopping his overthinking, Rangiz shouted as he used all his strength to thrust the spear directly into the regeneration stone. Unaware of how things were turning out, Retten's group laughed boisterously and mocked him. "There, just like I said, simply changing weapons isn't going to help that loser do a damn thing." Slowing down the moment Rangiz struck the regeneration stone, as the tip of the spear accelerated and was about to touch the stone, he thought in disbelief, "It's as if it was a part of my body from the very beginning." The sharp tip of the spear pierced through at the speed of light. As the spear drove through the regeneration stone, dust and debris scattered everywhere. Retten's group was stunned, unable to believe their eyes as they shouted, "What?" The assistant beside the dragon instructor also cried out in surprise, "My goodness!" Although the dragon instructor's expression remained unchanged, he couldn't help but remark, "He didn't just scratch it, he pierced right through it." As Rangiz finished his attempt, Zeke immediately stood up and clapped to congratulate him. "Incredible! Well done, Rangiz." Rangiz was still dazed and asked blankly, What did I do?" The dragon instructor announced the result while writing it down. "Number 414, pass." Rangiz stood frozen, still holding the spear, and stammered in disbelief, I passed." Zeke put an arm around his shoulder and repeated with a smile, "That's right, you did it, just like I thought." After it finally sank in, Rangiz's eyes welled up with tears of joy as he muttered, "I passed." Then he happily hugged Zeke and cheered, "I did it, I actually passed." Zeke smiled and said, "I told you so." In the stands, the two lackeys beside Retten protested loudly, refusing to acknowledge Rangiz's talent. It's a fluke. Yeah, it has to be, right, Retten." At that moment, the dragon instructor announced loudly, "The entrance examination has concluded." He looked at the list of students who passed in his hand and continued, "The entrance ceremony will begin immediately." Hearing this, Zeke asked Rangiz, "An entrance ceremony? Is that all?" Rangiz immediately replied, "Yeah, there might be other tests after we start classes." Zeke asked again, "So what do we do now?" Rangiz didn't know how to answer that either, so he just replied vaguely, There's probably nothing for us to do." Just then, steady footsteps were heard approaching. A dignified group of people walked slowly into the center of the square. Seeing them, the dragon instructor spoke up. "The leaders of the Eldragon family will now deliver a welcoming address to you all." Attention was drawn to a man with an imposing aura standing silently among the group. Zeke curiously asked Rangiz, "Who's that gloomy guy?" Rangiz turned pale hearing him call the man a guy, but he answered honestly, "That is the Patriarch." Zeke didn't hold back at all, bluntly critiquing him. "The Patriarch, with that face? Can't he brighten up a little? Even ice would be warmer than him." Hearing his words, Rangiz was terrified and immediately covered Zeke's mouth, half begging and half demanding, "Please, just shut up, okay?" Having said that, he slowly removed his hand from Zeke's mouth, but he was still breaking into a cold sweat, repeatedly whispering, "Please, stay quiet, okay?" "Okay." Zeke nodded and didn't say anything more. His eyes returned to the leaders of the Eldragon family as he wondered to himself, so that's the current strength of the Eldragon family. A few 7-star level, a fair amount of 6-star level, quite a formidable force. Reaching this thought, he couldn't help but remark internally. Then Zeke looked at the Patriarch and fell into deep thought. And the current Patriarch of the Eldragon family, Baltza Eldragon. Looking at the mysterious aura emanating from him, Zeke assessed, "I'd guess he's an 8-star level. Based on his knowledge, this level was extremely rare. An 8-star? 1,000 years ago, there weren't even 12 people in the world who had reached it. I don't know about this era, but..." At this point, he stopped keeping his thoughts to himself and spoke directly out loud. "I don't like him." Hearing this, Rangiz stared at him in shock. Zeke kept the thought to himself that this man was supposed to be his father. The other leaders of the Eldragon family moved to either side to make a path for Baltza to reach the center. The dragon instructor announced loudly again, "A few words from Lord Baltza. Attention." Baltza walked in a straight line to the center position. Baltza spoke, his voice completely devoid of warmth as he made a single brief statement. "Strive to become the flesh and blood of Eldragon." His words released a strange, magical pressure that blew Zeke's hair back. Everyone in the stands was similarly buffeted, as if they were about to be blown away. Noisy voices began to rise as people whispered, "I can't. Breathe." Zeke was unaffected, but seeing Rangiz struggling for air with a purple face, he called out worriedly, "Rangiz." Looking at the other children around them who were also gasping for breath, he realized, even these other kids are being suppressed by this guy's pressure. With that, he frowned and thought to himself, "What a terrible hatred. I don't know what happened, but I really don't like him." As Baltza turned to withdraw, the atmosphere in the square gradually returned to normal. Suddenly, there was a sound of clapping. Another man, also a leader in the Eldragon family, laughed and followed up on Baltza's speech. "Yes, truly valuable words of encouragement. Lord Baltza has quite high expectations for you all." Zeke noticed him and wondered, "Who's that?" Meanwhile, the man's booming voice continued to echo, "So I won't waste words on long greetings. Work hard, young people." Having finished, he laughed heartily once more. Zeke was still curious. "Who is he?" Stepping down, the man casually chatted with the dragon instructor. The instructor teased, "Seriously? You said that with a straight face." The man joked back, "Worrying about small things will make you go bald." No longer concerned with the man's identity, Zeke simply thought to himself, "I don't know what's going on, but luckily the atmosphere has changed." After the recent pressure, the students in the stands were pin-drop silent, with no one saying a word. No one even dared to breathe heavily, while Zeke didn't care about such trivialities and sat idly looking down at the square. Now holding a list in his hand, the dragon instructor announced loudly, "We will now announce the dormitory assignments. Those whose names are called move out immediately." Hearing this, Zeke asked Rangiz, "Aren't we all going to the same place?" Based on what he knew, Rangiz explained, "No, there are actually 4 dragons' dens. Entering students will be assigned to the halls corresponding to the directions east, west, south, and north." Hearing this, Zeke nodded and replied, "I see." Just then the dragon instructor called out, "Number 315. Zeke stood up and gave Rangiz a cheerful farewell. "That's me. Take care of yourself, Rangiz." Rangiz also sincerely wished him well. "Yeah, you too, Zeke." At the Eastern Dragon's Den, the buildings were formal and classical with a spacious, shady garden. At this moment, Zeke was holding a note in his hand, scratching his head as he lamented, "So much has changed after 1,000 years. Huh, turn here." Finally, after struggling to find his way, he reached his dormitory room. He cried out in relief, "Here it is. Man, I'm late because I got lost. My roommate has probably already arrived." With that, Zeke turned the doorknob. Opening the door, he happily waved to the person inside and said in a friendly tone, "Sorry for making you wait. Starting today, we're roommates." Looking vaguely at the person in front of him, he froze slightly and asked in confusion, "You are?" Zeke grinned and remarked, "It seems we're quite fated, Rangiz." The blue-haired boy also smiled back. "I guess so. I was so worried I'd be alone. This is great." Next, he plopped down on the bed. "Is there nothing left to do today?" Rangi's stepped over to him and replied, "That's right. The training session starts tomorrow." He puckered his lips and muttered, "Right." Seeing this reaction, the boy couldn't help but ask, "Are you even listening? The instructor already said so." Zeke gave a bright smile and a thumbs up. "I didn't hear a thing," Rangi's immediately shouted. "That's not something to brag about." Then he said in a stern voice, "Anyway, we should sleep early. Training starts tomorrow." Under the soft glow of the sunset shining through the window, Zeke remained silent. He suddenly remembered everything he had been through and thought to himself, "I intended to escape this boring house and go on an adventure, but that regeneration stone and that medicine." So many interesting things happened at the entrance exam. Zeke involuntarily looked toward the window and thought, to understand what has changed after 1,000 years, staying with the Eldragon clan for a while longer wouldn't be so bad. Time quickly passed, and a month later at the Eldragon fortress, on the training ground, a group of children was trembling as they lifted weights with both hands, while someone barked orders continuously. "Listen up. The dragon breath I taught you is a brilliant breathing technique created by the 15th Patriarch of the Eldragon family." The dragon instructor stood solemnly and continued loudly, "You must master this ultimate technique in every situation." As soon as he finished, he turned his head to look in a certain direction thoughtfully. Lika, who was currently in front of him with her eyes closed using the technique perfectly, made him muse. "Many have mastered the dragon breath already, especially with the young lady's primordial power showing signs of overflowing. It proves she's about to reach the 2-star level." But then the dragon instructor looked toward another spot with a look of doubt. And that boy, Zeke, was sitting in another area, easily lifting weights while carrying 3 large and small stones on his back. "What is this? It's true the Patriarch's blood flows in him, but he has no instructor and hasn't had any formal schooling." The dragon instructor stood behind him, observing silently but still unable to hide his shock. "But what on earth is this sight?" Meanwhile, Zeke was calmly breathing in and out, thinking to himself, "I didn't expect the Dragon King's breath technique I created to be simplified and spread so widely under the name Dragon Breath." He sat cross-legged with a slightly bored expression, his body enveloped in a golden aura. Breathing techniques are the skill of absorbing environmental energy into the body and circulating it to self-upgrade power. What determines the effectiveness is the skill and finesse of the user. That's why prestigious families all create their own methods, and complete ultimate techniques are kept as top secrets. Zeke closed his eyes and thought, "Dragon breath is quite safe and easy to learn, but if the purpose is only for meditation, I don't need it." The image of his grown-up back from his past life suddenly appeared. The secret Dragon King's breath, passed down by Gilfa's Eldragon, is the only breathing technique that allows for energy control without interrupting the breath, even while moving. Its effectiveness is immense, but very few could inherit it due to its extreme difficulty. Zeke suddenly visualized the inheritance process of this breathing technique in his mind and immediately deduced. So they intentionally simplified it so anyone could use it, thereby raising the overall strength of the entire family. I didn't expect my technique to be passed down to posterity in such an altered form. I'm almost touched. I wonder if other martial arts have changed like this after 1,000 years. I'm looking forward to it. In a corner where Zeke couldn't see, Lika was silently observing him. Not long after, the children who had just finished training began their meal in the dining hall. Amidst the lively atmosphere, 2 children looked with terror at a hand reaching out to grab a plate of food. Zeke happily opened his mouth wide to take a bite of the food he had just grabbed, with food crumbs still stuck to the corner of his mouth. Zeke asked while chewing, "What's wrong? You look pensive, Rangi's. If you don't eat, you won't get stronger, you know." Rangi's asked helplessly in return, "How are you so full of energy? Your stamina is truly strange." He then bluntly critiqued, "It's because you're too weak." Zeke gave a wry smile and pushed the plate of cakes in his hand forward. "Eat more and train hard. There's no other way. Here, you have this." The blue-haired boy muttered gloomily, "I have my own portion." A second later, he suddenly glanced behind him. "Anyway, some of these kids have been well-trained." Just then, Lika suddenly approached him and spoke up, "Hey, you're quite good, aren't you?" "Who's this?" Thinking that to himself, Zeke instinctively asked, "Who are you?" Rangi's, hearing this, spat out the water he was drinking. "What?" He immediately pulled him over and whispered some knowledge. "Zeke, don't you know? This is Lady Lika, the Patriarch's daughter." Zeke replied apathetically, "I don't know her." Rangi's cried out in panic again, "No way! She's one of the candidates for the next Patriarch position. Normally, we wouldn't even have the right to speak to her." Zeke, with Rangi's right in his face, suddenly blurted out, "If that's the case, I'm also the Patriarch's son, even if I'm illegitimate." Rangi's was instantly frozen in shock. while Lika, opposite them, suddenly exclaimed, "Really?" She asked again with a calm expression, "You're the Patriarch's illegitimate son." Next Patriarch candidate Lika Typhona Eldragon. Zeke propped his hand up and replied immediately, "Why would I lie about something like that?" Hearing this, Lika questioned, "Then why are you strong enough to crush a regeneration stone with your bare hands?" She spoke while slamming a hand on the table. "How can an illegitimate child with no support do something like that?" He went back to cutting his meat and answered slowly, "Well, because it's me. Rangis don't just space out, eat." This answer left Lika silent for a moment. A second later, she suddenly grinned and said, "You really are very interesting." Lika sat down comfortably next to him and made an offer. "How about it? Become my subordinate." Zeke gave her a dead-eyed look. "Huh, what are you talking about?" Lika repeated the invitation while offering benefits. "I'm asking if you want to become my follower. I'll be your support. You want allies too, right?" In her mind, she was already imagining a scene of the two of them standing side by side in the future. Lika leaned one arm on the table and happily painted a picture of the future. "So use your strength to help me become the Patriarch. Of course, I'll treat you well after I become the leader. What do you say?" Zeke closed his eyes and refused instantly. "No thanks." Lika's voice suddenly dropped, making him look over. "What's wrong? Don't tell me." She coldly released a powerful aura. "You also intend to take the Patriarch position, don't you?" Zeke felt the aura and only thought, she's at the threshold of 2 stars, able to release aura outside her body. At this age, interesting. But he replied nonchalantly, "Do whatever you want. I have no interest in becoming the Patriarch or whatever, no interest in family matters at all." Lika couldn't help but slam the table and stand up in surprise. "What? Then what's left?" Before she could finish, something suddenly flashed in front of her. Zeke, his face darkening, slammed the knife in his hand into the table. The knife landed only centimeters away from Lika's fingers. Zeke opened his eyes wide, flashing a golden light, and said, "I don't serve anyone, because I am the strongest." Before that gaze, Lika's entire body suddenly went stiff as if she had been electrocuted. "What?" Her face turned pale as she thought to herself, "Did I just lose my footing?" At that moment, Rangi stood up tremblingly to intervene. "Ah, well, let's just calm down." But Lika suddenly shouted in an angry tone, "Then I'll force you to submit. Duel me." Zeke chewed while looking over blankly, while Rangi's beside him was frozen with fear. A while later, a boy walking by suddenly turned and asked, "Where are you guys going?" "The training ground. There's a duel between rookies. And it's Lady Lika." The boy exclaimed in shock, "Lady Lika? Of the Typhona family, against who? Why, who knows?" Currently, at the training ground, other rookies who had come to watch the duel hid behind the walls and whispered to each other. They said it was a sparring match. "Who is that guy?" Zeke was currently rubbing his head and muttering, "This is getting intense." "Ah, well," Rangis asked worriedly, "are you okay? Your opponent is Lady Lika." He spoke nonchalantly. "Even if you say that, I don't even know who she is. Besides, why did you suddenly switch to formal speech?" The blue-haired boy's eyes went wide as he shouted, "Of course I did. You're the Patriarch's son." Zeke just gave a slight smile and said, "Ah, do whatever you want." More importantly, Rangis grabbed his arm and launched into a long explanation. "Please think carefully. Lika is the daughter of the current Patriarch Baltza and carries the bloodline of the Typhona family, one of the 4 pillars of the Eldragon house. She's a genius who mastered all variants of the Great Lightning Sword ultimate technique, the Typhona family legacy, at age 7, just like Lord Baltza's other extremely talented children." As soon as he finished, Zeke held up a hand blankly and expressed, "Sorry, the only thing I understood was that she's the Patriarch's daughter." Rangis screamed in panic again. "Why?" he explained. "Everything is new to me." The blue-haired boy clutched his head gloomily. "How is that? Don't even ask." But Zeke suddenly offered some comfort. "But isn't not knowing even more interesting?" He grinned and remarked, "Extremely interesting." Despite Zeke's reaction, Rangis was still worried. "Ah, no matter how strong you are, Master Zeke, facing Lady Lika is too much of a disadvantage. Why did you accept the challenge?" He rubbed his chin and replied, "Well, when someone challenges me, I don't back down." Just as he said that, Zeke turned his head toward the opposite side. It seemed she had arrived. Lika drove her sword into the ground, her face angry and her aura blazing as she spoke up. "The idle chatter ends here." Lika leaned on her sword and shouted a question. "Are you done talking yet?" Rangis was trembling with fear, while Zeke stood beside him and replied with a smile, "Ready. Everything is all finished." Rangis shouted in a panic as he hurried away, "Just, please be careful." Zeke remained, asking Lika calmly, "Careful, that depends on you. Why are you so determined to challenge me?" She answered confidently, "I want to become the Patriarch. To do that, I must make you submit and join my side." Zeke asked with a bored expression, What do you mean by that? Thinking to himself, what does any of this have to do with me? Lika's face darkened as she said, wait, do you really know nothing about the current state of our family? Is it because you're an illegitimate child? He replied hesitantly, well, I might know something if you just ask me directly. Lika immediately explained, listen closely. Including you and me, there are a total of 5 candidates for the position of next patriarch. Everyone except you is already aligned with one of the 4 branches of the Eldragon family. She thought about the strength and background of each person and continued, which branch the next patriarch comes from is very important. Therefore, the fact that we are all here at the Dragon's Den is to represent our respective branches and compete with one another. I need more power to face my brothers. Zeke frowned and thought, so there's a confrontation going on between the 4 branches. This is complicated, I'm not sure I understand, before saying, I see. Then while drawing her sword, Lika said, therefore, as a candidate for the next patriarch, I need to consolidate my resources even more. She declared that is why, as she leaped into the air. Zeke looked up warily. Lika lunged toward him with her sword raised, shouting a declaration. Right here, right now, I will defeat you. Lika slashed straight down, but Zeke nimbly dodged to the side. He tilted his head again to dodge another of Lika's slashes. She screamed in anger, I won't let you get away. A student cried out in shock, so fast, while the boy standing next to him remarked, she uses that massive greatsword so easily. Lika continued to pursue Zeke. The students watching the fight gossiped. Her control over her power is so precise, and her attacks are getting faster and faster. So this is the power of an heir to a family branch, the power of the patriarch's children. It's only a matter of time before this match is decided. Lika gritted her teeth and wondered, how? She swung her sword, but Zeke dodged it. Then he nimbly stood behind her and teased, I can't even get one hit in, while wearing a bright smile. Rangis remarked in awe, incredible. On the field, Zeke muttered an evaluation. I've never seen this kind of martial art before, and with this speed, it's not something you'd see from a 1-star ranker. Lika shouted angrily, shut up and focus on the match. Zeke clenched his fist and replied, I am focusing, that's why. Lika froze and looked at him blankly. Zeke had somehow already punched her squarely in the stomach. He said coldly, I can counterattack like this. Lika coughed dryly in pain. She leaned on her sword, head lowered as she clutched her stomach. The students outside buzzed. No way, every single one of Lady Lika's attacks missed. Who is that guy? Lika raised her head and gritted her teeth, demanding, why can't my attacks hit you? Compared to a 1-star like you, I should be far superior in speed. I should be much faster than you. Zeke replied with a smile. You're certainly much faster than any other 1-star I've met. He glanced at her and added, but you are also only at the 1-star rank. Lika questioned him angrily, aren't you a 1-star too? You shouldn't be able to keep up with my movements. Zeke chuckled softly. It's simple. He observed her body and said, breathing, eye movement, muscle tension. Zeke explained, just by observing those things one can read most movements. The rest is experience. Lika struggled to her feet. She swung her sword at him and roared, don't be ridiculous. He leaned back to dodge her attack and said, I told you. He then supported himself on the ground, twisting his body to kick Lika. She gritted her teeth in rage, while Zeke clenched his fist and aimed at her, saying, I can read you. Lika was punched away by Zeke, her body slamming into the wall. Zeke frowned in silence. A student shouted, Lady Lika, and those around them gossiped in shock. No way, did she really lose? Lady Lika lost. Rangis ran over and exclaimed, Master Zeke is truly amazing. He defeated Lady Lika. Zeke countered coldly, no, not quite. As the dust settled, Lika stomped her foot. Zeke smiled and remarked, she concentrated all her power into her core to withstand my blow. Not bad at all. Lika clutched her stomach and panted in pain. Rangis advised in a panic, Lady Lika, that's enough. Zeke interrupted, Rangis, get back. I won't be responsible if you get caught in the crossfire. A faint aura radiated from Lika, and he said, she showed signs earlier, but has she already reached the 2-star rank? Lika wiped the blood from her face with her hand and slowly stepped back onto the field. The surrounding students cried out in shock. Hey, isn't that? Yes, no mistake, that's the mark of the 2-star rank, a white aura. Zeke thought to himself, 2-star, the state where one can project their inner power outside the body to use martial techniques. That projected power is called an aura. While fixing her hair, Lika said, thank you, thanks to you I've reached 2 stars, and now. She glared at Zeke. Swinging her sword, she shouted, you have no chance of winning anymore. Zeke dodged her attack and laughed loudly. That's fast. Lika slashed at him again, and Zeke remarked mockingly, how unexpected. Suddenly a small cut appeared on his cheek. Zeke was secretly startled. What was that? He touched the wound and thought, I'm sure I dodged it. Lika stepped forward and said, see. A pale white mist radiated from Lika's entire body as she approached and said, "This is my ability." Lika raised her sword to her chest and continued, "Now that I have the two-star aura," a series of yellow lightning bolts appeared around her, and she declared, "I will show you true lightning swordsmanship." Zeke stood still and muttered, "So, am I about to see a martial technique I've never witnessed before?" He laughed loudly, "Awesome." At that moment a light flashed. Great lightning sword technique, lightning flash. Lightning surged around Zeke as it raced forward. "Wait, what's this?" He smiled and asked, "You mean you can control lightning? That's completely absurd." Lika raised her sword high and spoke loudly. "For someone saying those things." She drove her sword into the ground and pillars of lightning shot upward. Zeke quickly jumped high. "You seem to be enjoying this quite a bit." Lightning web. He looked at Lika with a smile. "This is far different from before. These bolts are quite tricky even for me right now." Those above watched and remarked, "What kind of battle is this? How can everything change this much just by moving up one rank?" Rangis watched the scene below with a terrified, worried face. Master Zeke. On this side, Zeke was still observing his opponent's weapon and calculating. The movements themselves are actually quite simple. Nothing has changed much from before. But he looked straight into her sharp eyes. The moment she reached 2 stars and gained her aura, the power of the great lightning sword burst forth. I thought she would just be faster, but now she's even faster than that. Moreover, that lightning is mysterious. Zeke smiled as he lunged forward. To be able to envelop someone in lightning like this, I could counterattack now, but he couldn't help but hesitate as he watched Lika's sword strikes. "I'm so curious. What is this power really?" She also gave a triumphant smile. "You can still smile in this situation. You look quite relaxed." In that case, Lika slashed her sword quickly. "I'll kick that smile right off your face." Then she quickly raised her foot. Lika immediately used a move. Lightning shift. He dodged to the side and evaluated the move. It's like a pillar of lightning. Then an explosion occurred in the distance, sending earth and stones flying. Seeing this, Rangis quickly jumped down from the wall in worry. "Master Zeke!" Someone behind him shouted. "Hey, wait." At this moment, Zeke could still stand straight, still wearing that smile. To Lika, it felt like a provocation, so she immediately unleashed another move. Lightning flash. He was hit so hard, he couldn't help but drop to one knee to brace himself. Rangis ran over at the same time. "Lady Lika, please stop if this continues." "Why?" Her voice turned mocking. "He's still standing, isn't he?" Lika's entire body radiated lightning. "Don't you think stopping now would be an insult to him?" The boy turned to Zeke in worry and cried, "Master Zeke, please surrender." While she also warned him, "Actually, I think he's right. You're in a terrible state. Tell you what, if you surrender and submit to me, I'll stop here." Zeke lowered his head and smiled in silence, not answering. Seeing this, Lika said happily, "So even if you're an illegitimate child, you're still a proud Eldragon? I understand. Fine, I'll finish you with all my power." She then raised her sword high, powerful lightning bolts striking. Great sword martial art. First secret, heavenly thunder. That lightning struck directly onto Zeke's body like a pillar of light. He was immediately electrocuted until his eyes went white, the sound of the lightning echoing. Rangis reached out his hand in terror and cried out, "Master Zeke." Zeke then lay unconscious on the ground, no longer moving. Lika drove her sword into the ground roughly. She turned her head away, no longer caring. "A pity, but the match ends here." Right then a voice suddenly rang out, "I figured it out." A pillar of light appeared behind Lika. She turned around in a startled panic. "How is that possible? How do you have a lightning aura?" Zeke stood up straight with a smile and exclaimed, "So this is called a lightning aura, huh?" He replied happily and hesitantly, "You're asking how?" Zeke crossed his arms and answered seriously, "I don't know either." Lika stood there, completely stunned. He continued happily, "I intentionally took your attacks to understand this power, but somehow I can use it now too." Hearing this, she repeated, "Use it. That shouldn't be." Zeke thought happily to himself. "While receiving those mysterious lightning attacks, I continuously used the breathing technique. Dragon King's breath." He recalled Lika enveloped in lightning back then. And then what happened? The Dragon King's breath reacted to her lightning aura. Those lightning bolts appeared on Zeke's hands, and lightning began to accumulate inside my body. He smiled and wiped the dirt from his face. "Before I realized it, I was able to manipulate that lightning. I don't know the exact principle, but I must have some kind of special physique." "No, wait." Zeke looked straight at Lika and continued, "Considering that great sword technique is your family's heirloom, should I assume your entire family has a special physique?" He then quickly walked toward her, hypothesizing that the power source itself could follow the properties of lightning. "Yes, this has been an excellent training session." Zeke raised his hand, lightning bolts appearing. Moreover, he smiled and clenched his fist, his whole body radiating powerful lightning. Thanks to you, I've also reached the 2-star rank. The match isn't. Zeke's eyes quickly darted to one side. At that moment, Lika suddenly slashed her sword toward him. Zeke smiled and raised his head, continuing, "Over yet." Then lightning suddenly flashed, and he lunged forward with great speed. After using his new ability, Zeke couldn't help but exclaim, "This is." He analyzed the flow of this power in his mind. Right now, as the power source increases, it affects all the nerves and strengthens the body. What an incredible special physique. All my senses have been enhanced. Zeke whispered to himself, "I need to get used to this a bit." On the other side, Rangi still hadn't recovered. A battle between patriarch candidates? I can't even keep up just by watching. Am I imagining all this? Now the two of them were lunging at each other. Zeke easily dodged the attacks, and the boy thought in shock. Lady Lika's lightning-fast slashes aren't hitting anymore. Lika lost her cool and shouted angrily, "Are you mocking me?" He smiled nonchalantly and said, "I'm not mocking you." Then Zeke quickly lunged forward and struck directly at her sword. "I truly consider you a formidable opponent." Lika felt the powerful force and immediately backed away with her sword. He moved his wrists to warm up and laughed. "Is the distance right here? It's time to end this match. Now then, it's been a while, maybe I should create a new move." On the other side, she was still stunned and asked, "A new move?" Zeke clarified, "That's right, first form. No, let's call it a secret technique." At this point, Lika lost her composure and thought in terror. A new move? So he really has received training in secret martial arts, from which branch, and he creates a move just like that? I really can't understand him. Suddenly he appeared in front of her and said, "You're distracted." Lika let out a startled cry. "Not good." Before she could dodge, Zeke's hand pressed directly against her chest. Dragon Destruction's secret technique. He used all his strength to attack. Ultimate lightning claw. The girl was completely electrocuted, her knees hitting the ground. A voice rang out before Rangi's stunned face. "The match is over." Zeke smiled down at Lika and remarked, "This really was an interesting match." She still tried to brace herself and stand up in disbelief. "Impossible. I lost." Lika gritted her teeth, refusing to accept it. I must become the patriarch." She looked up at the sky with a sad face. "I have to defeat my brothers." It seemed as though Lika saw her brothers still looking down on her. "I must become the patriarch. I absolutely cannot lose." Right then, Zeke suddenly spoke up. "How wonderful, you really are very strong." Lika was startled. He leaned over and added, "I've learned new things that are truly interesting. This has been a very meaningful time." Zeke's hand reached out in front of her. He gave a cheerful smile and asked, "It would be boring if this was the only time we sparred. Let's spar again, Lika." Lika couldn't help but blush slightly as she looked up. "Move." Zeke reached his hand toward Lika and said cheerfully, "I'm really looking forward to the next time." She shook his hand and laughed, replying, "How can I even compare to you? I lost." A few hours later, inside a rift, a series of monsters appeared. A man was surrounded by a swarm of monsters. Baltza looked calmly at them as they lunged toward him. He frowned, and Baltza's eyes immediately flashed. A murderous intent surged forth as the silhouette of a roaring dragon appeared behind him. Baltza muttered, "Dragon fear." He drew his sword and charged toward the monsters. Baltza slashed in an arc, thinking to himself, "Dragon chi shattering formation martial art, first form, origin." The sword chi dissipated, annihilating a massive wave of monsters. Afterward, Baltza sheathed his sword. The soldiers standing behind him immediately rushed at them. The rift gate gradually opened as Baltza calmly walked toward it. A soldier bowed to announce, "Lord Baltza, I have something to report." Baltza asked, "What is it?" He said, "Lady Lika has reached the 2nd star, sir." Hearing that, Baltza stopped in his tracks. He glanced toward the soldier and growled, "And?" The soldier nervously said, "Reaching the 2nd star at that age can be considered a significant achievement, sir. With Lady Lika's talent, by the time she graduates from the Dragon Pit, she might reach the 4th. No, she might even reach the 5th star." Baltza coldly declared, "Talent doesn't matter. Report to me when she becomes useful. If you came to report something so trivial, then get out." The soldier paused for a moment before announcing, "However, Lady Lika has been defeated." He asked in shock, "Did she challenge one of the older children?" The soldier answered, "No, sir. The one who defeated Lady Lika was a child of the same age, Master Zeke." Baltza muttered in surprise, "Zeke, the child of that woman." He hesitated. "That's right, that woman had innate martial talent, but..." Baltza looked at the soldier and questioned, "Even so, she died when that brat was born, didn't she? Who taught him the skills to defeat a 2nd star rank?" The soldier, recalling Zeke, replied, "About that. Master Zeke defeated Lady Lika without being taught by anyone, and he reached the 2-star rank through his own strength." Baltza ordered, "I see. In that case, let the first training course begin." He asked in astonishment, "I don't mean anything, but isn't it too early, sir?" They have only been learning formal combat for about a month, and most of the children haven't even reached the first star. Balza said coldly, and, whether they have learned to fight or not, death treats everyone equally and only the strong can survive. Those who cannot overcome even the first trial, regardless of their star rank, he proclaimed, are not worthy of being an Eldragon. The soldier bowed in obedience. As you wish, sir. Balza suddenly said, report back to Freya. He asked in confusion, Freya, sir? Balza replied, yes. The fact that the brat claimed to defeat Lika with his own strength is quite interesting. As he walked into the rift, he continued, Freya will be assigned to oversee the content as well as the entire process. Tell her to monitor closely throughout the trial. The soldier immediately shouted, understood. Balza smirked and muttered, Zeke, how interesting. The next day at the arena, the students were training frantically. Rangiz was also trying to improve himself. On Zeke's side, he carried heavy stones and weights on his body, thinking, Dragon Seal Combat Method. Today's plan. 2x weight lifting, 1x large stone, 2x medium stones, horse stance. Zeke recalled that, like the dragon breath, this was a technique founded by the 15th Patriarch. Although called a combat method, it was essentially a body fortification technique designed perfectly so even a child could master it easily. Rangiz walked over and wondered, are you not going to train, Master Zeke? He immediately replied, what are you talking about? I am training. He hesitated. Ah, no, not physical training. I meant practicing the Dragon Seal combat method. Zeke calmly answered, I have already learned it. He shouted in shock, what? You just learned it a moment ago and you've already mastered it. He closed his eyes and said, of course. More importantly, Rangiz, your power flow is going in the wrong direction. Rangiz paused, Zeke dropped the stones and weights to the ground and said, here. He raised his hand to point at him and said, look at this, turn around. Rangiz wondered to himself if he had just levitated, muttering, yes. A burst of energy suddenly glowed. Zeke placed his hand on Rangiz's shoulder and channeled energy into his body. When finished, he said, this is the correct flow. Rangiz said in amazement, thank you very much, sir. Rangiz looked at him and spoke seriously, you've truly mastered it as expected of Master Zeke. He yelled, are you doubting me? What kind of person are you? Rangiz replied apologetically, sorry, I didn't mean that. This is the first time I've been taught by someone other than my father, so I've always been desperate. Recalling Zeke and Lika's clash, he continued, but Master Zeke, you already have martial skills strong enough to defeat Lady Lika. So I thought the Dragon Seal combat method might be simple and boring for you. Zeke crossed his arms and said, that's not true at all. I am completely impressed by the stability of the Dragon Seal combat method. He thought to himself, after all, my technique, Dragon Havoc, was not suitable for my son. They thought it was too complex and difficult. Zeke pondered. The Dragon Havoc combat method was complex and difficult, but superior in overwhelming power as a foundation, starting with the first form, then the second, third, and fourth. He thought of an ancient tree and a silver dragon. Zeke recalled that besides the secret form created from the battle with Lika, there was also the final form, the one with overwhelming destructive power from defeating the divine dragon. I am also very curious about other dragon techniques. Perhaps those martial arts have also been modified. Zeke was internally excited. How thrilling! Then he smiled and said, anyway, I have finished learning the Dragon Seal combat method, so I am practicing my body as usual. Everyone will learn at their own pace. Rangiz replied, I understand. Suddenly Rangiz cried out, Master Zeke. He suggested, please train me. I want you to guide me like you just did. Zeke watched with wide eyes as he continued. I know it's an embarrassing request, but Rangiz shouted, I want to become stronger even if just a little. Zeke smiled and said, I don't mind. He asked in a daze, is that okay? Really? Zeke replied, what's with that reaction? You're the one who asked. He continued, I'm not lying. On the other hand, you deserve it. At that moment, Lika walked up. She spoke shyly. In that case, I also want you to train me. Rangiz muttered in shock, Lady Lika too. Lika asked sternly, is there a problem? Lika explained, honestly, I thought no one of the same age could defeat me because I am a candidate for the next clan leader position. But in yesterday's battle, you overwhelmed me and somehow deployed lightning aura and used it better than I did. She shouted shyly, my pride was completely shattered by you. Zeke sighed, is that my fault? Rangiz chuckled awkwardly, well. Lika looked at him with determination and said, but I want to become even stronger, strong enough to defeat my older brothers and you. So please train me as well. She asked, is that okay? Zeke remained silent in thought. Lika was briefly disappointed. Is it not possible? I understand, since you are also a potential heir, it might not be right to train with your rival. Zeke stood still in thought without responding. Seeing this, she silently accepted it, thinking, come to think of it, he is indeed a candidate for the heir position. Despite being an illegitimate child, he is still the patriarch's son. After a moment of thought, he spoke up. I don't mind, but is your body really okay? That wound should have left you unable to move for a month. Lika nodded and recounted. I used a recovery potion, so there's no problem. You worry about the strangest things. Hearing that, Zeke leaned into Rangis's ear and whispered, I see. That weird medicine worked like a miracle drug. He replied, if you mean the potion from the entrance exam, that one wasn't that effective. Rangis pointed toward her and asserted, knowing Lady Lika's personality, she used a better version this time. He couldn't help but exclaim, what a great era we live in. Lika flushed red. What do you mean? Without the recovery potion, I really wouldn't have been able to move for that month. But more importantly, will you really train me? You surely need time for your own practice. Zeke shrugged with a bright smile. Of course, I will never refuse an ambitious young person. She stared blankly, a question mark appearing over her head. Young person? You're young too, aren't you? Even Rangis was suspicious. We're the same age. He whistled casually. Well, that's true. To be sure, Zeke asked again. Are you sure, Lika? I'm the one who defeated you, remember? She was determined. No problem. I don't have the right to be picky. Lika clenched her hands, her eyes full of resolve. Becoming stronger means becoming the clan leader. I will do anything. Zeke couldn't help but wonder. When you challenged me before, you also mentioned the clan leader position, right? Why are you so obsessed with becoming the patriarch? She hesitated briefly. Ah, that's obvious. Lika slowly explained. If I don't become the patriarch, marriage will be the only future for me. A political marriage. If I'm lucky, I'll become the wife of some unpleasant cousin. If not, I'll be forced to become someone's concubine. Hearing this, his face darkened. What? She shrugged as if it were a matter of course. That's right. Maintaining the Eldragon bloodline is that important, especially for the 4 great families. Don't you know that? Our true essence power is unique, meaning it can be used in countless ways. Zeke suddenly flared up with anger. Let's just run away. Those bastards make me feel sick just thinking about them. Rangis trembled beside him. He clenched his fists in fury and let out a string of curses. What do you people think humans are? Doing things like that? Those damn customs, I will destroy them all. At that peak moment, the instructor's stern voice rang out. Gather round. Lika, not understanding what just happened, asked, What's going on? Zeke was annoyed. Great timing, right at the important part. Rangis felt like crying. That scared the life out of me. The 3 of them looked toward the instructor who had just called the assembly. He announced loudly, Starting today, a new instructor will join us. Despite a busy schedule, they have personally come to guide you all. Be grateful. That person. While everyone was listening intently, a girl with vibrant red hair suddenly stepped up beside Lika. She reached out to brush a lock of her hair and asked, Are you? Lady Lika, correct. Lika jolted and turned to look. The moment they locked eyes, she practically recoiled in an instant. Rangis was startled and hugged Zeke tightly. The red-haired girl acted surprised. Oh my. She winked in praise. What excellent reflexes, and your aura isn't bad either. Zeke, being hugged tightly by Rangis, thought to himself, I didn't sense her presence at all. He asked tremblingly, God, who is this person anyway? The dragon instructor extended his hand to introduce her. That person is... But before he could finish, the person beside him interrupted. As quick as ever, I see. Lady Freya, she waved cheerfully. Hi, nice to meet you all. Freya glanced at Zeke probingly. And you must be Master Zeke, right? He replied without hesitation, That's right. She was surprised. You don't seem surprised. He calmly replied, Because for a lady there's nothing to be surprised about. But, whatever Freya saw, her eyebrows suddenly furrowed. Zeke smirked, his pupils glowing. It seems the young lady possesses quite an interesting martial artist. Freya thought with interest. I see. No wonder the patriarch is paying attention to this one. Opposite her, Zeke also stroked his chin in admiration. Her stealth technique is indeed very impressive. But what's even more special is the martial art she has mastered. He was full of curiosity. The flow of her true essence was mostly concentrated in her lower body, but he had never seen that type of flow before. This must be why her steps make no sound, even when wearing those shoes. What kind of martial art is this? How fascinating. Freya turned to walk back to the instructors, her tone becoming more serious. Now then, with a friendly smile still on her lips, as you were just informed, starting today I will be your instructor. Let's do our best. The other students were ecstatic. Wait, isn't that? The wind goddess Freya? Wow, it's her in the flesh. Amazing. The dragon instructor sternly reminded them. Lady Freya has reached the 6-star rank. She is a key member of the Black Dragon Guard. Everyone learn everything you can from her. Hearing that, the students whispered among themselves, The Black Dragon Guard? Isn't that the guard unit directly under the Patriarch? Why did such a figure suddenly appear here? One child bravely raised their hand. Will you really train us, Lady Freya? She smiled brightly. Of course. Before the students could celebrate, Freya added, but, she emphasized, only if you pass my test. Those words were like a thunderclap. The crowd clutched their heads in gloom. A test? So suddenly, Freya took out a spirit stone to encourage them. Don't worry, it's quite easy. You just need to keep this stone intact and survive in the Poison Dragon Mountains for 1 month. Rangi's jaw dropped. The Poison Dragon Mountains. Zeke also noticed the name. That sounds familiar. Regarding the Poison Dragon Mountains, it was a land full of extremely venomous creatures, a place where even touching a normal-looking blade of grass could be lethal. It must be affirmed that this was truly a place of death. He recalled his past life when he used to train there and had curiously tasted a few fruits. It made his skin crawl. The taste was horrific. He wondered, but for these kids, isn't it a bit too early? Freya warned, if your spirit stone breaks or is lost during the trial, you will be immediately disqualified. A child raised a trembling hand. And if we fail, what will happen? She smiled. Naturally, you will be expelled. If you survive. Freya explained, being poisoned can be easily handled by using the dragon breath technique correctly. As long as you keep your spirit stone intact, everything will be fine. Simple, right? Lika spoke up, but instructor, there are monsters there. She feigned surprise. Oh my. Then just defeat them, Freya said as if it were obvious, not forgetting to remind them. Otherwise, you won't even have food and you'll die before the test ends. The young students were bewildered. What? Can the dragon-slaying technique really deal with creatures like that? Freya smiled again and held up 5 fingers. You still have 5 days before the real trial begins. In those 5 days, each of you will choose a weapon from the foundational martial arts of the Eldragon family and begin training. She gestured toward the table behind her. If you have to find a way to deal with monsters, survival will be easier, right? But if you cannot master the martial art within 5 days, Freya's voice dropped. If you cannot master the martial art in the 5 days before the exam, I will not be responsible for anything that happens afterward. Another person chimed in, if the situation turns bad, you will help us, right? She waved it off. Oh dear. Freya became cold with the aura of an instructor. Good heavens, this is Eldragon, a place where the weak are culled and only the strong survive. If you cannot fight back against monsters, then such an end is only natural, isn't it? If you cannot even pass a simple test like this, then you might as well sleep on a bed of poison and monsters. Hearing that, the children couldn't help but break into a sweat, while the 3, Zeke, Rangis, and Lika, each had a different expression. He found it hard to understand. This place is so different from the Eldragon I once knew. An imaginary image from the past flickered in Zeke's mind when he was Gilfas, holding his tiny son and boasting happily, Father, look, this is your grandson, so cute. In reality, he was frozen in confusion. I'm not sure. But what was that all about? Freya clapped her hands to announce, that's enough chatting. Now I will distribute the martial arts manuals for each type of weapon. Come and take the manual for the weapon you want. Each person went up to choose. Everyone was bewildered. What are you choosing? Which one should I pick? Rangis bit his fingers and trembled. What should I do? What should I choose? Zeke stepped up to remind him, Rangis, you should choose the spear. You used it in the entrance exam, didn't you? He suddenly sighed in relief. That's right. Thank you so much. To one side, Lika was still hesitating, although there was the Thunder Spirit Great Sword technique, even if it was just the basic level. He saw this and stopped her. Wait, Lika. Zeke advised, you should choose the sword technique. She was surprised. Me? Why? He turned away, waving slightly as he explained, it will compensate for what you are currently lacking. Although she didn't understand, Lika accepted it. If you say so, then I guess I'll pick this one. After a period of choosing, everyone gathered again. Have you all received enough? Then for the next 5 days until the trial begins. Freya reminded them, if you want to survive, then practice as if your lives depend on it. Otherwise, you'll just die. Everyone turned pale with fear upon hearing that, except for Zeke, who remained indifferent. She suddenly remembered, oh right, one more thing. Senior students from the Kin Cock Festival will also try to seize your spirit stones. Rangis was shocked, while Zeke was delighted. Now that's more like it. Freya explained, seniors from the class 10 years ago will join the trial, and their task is to take your spirit stones. But since there are more of you and the Poison Dragon Mountains are very vast, you might not need to worry about bumping into each other. Though they will certainly hunt you, so do your best. Having spoken, she waved her handkerchief and left. Rangis turned pale and clutched his head. What? Not just monsters, but senior students will attack us too. Lika frowned. The students from the 10-year class are all 2nd star rank or higher. Even I couldn't hold out if ambushed by several at once. Most of the others might not survive. Zeke simply stretched calmly. True, she shouted irritably. Hey you. He then suggested, if you can't manage alone, then form small groups of 2 or 3. Cooperating to hunt monsters isn't forbidden. Isn't it better the more people there are? Hearing that, Lika nodded. That makes sense. Rangi's asked in confusion, Master Zeke, what will you do? He smiled with delight. Me? Naturally, I will enjoy the trial alone. His eyes widened. Enjoy it. Lika was worried, but even just you. No, maybe you really could. Zeke walked away happily. Come on, before we start training, let's go find something to eat. She was speechless. You really are a strange person. Rangi's agreed. Yes, sometimes that's true. 5 days later, as the sun just peeked over the mountain range, the first rays of light pierced through the leaves, waking the sleeping forest. All the students had gathered. Everyone was tense for the upcoming test. Freya announced, all right, it's a perfect day for a test. Everyone's here, right? Let's begin. At the camp assembly point, Rangi's gripped his spear tightly, whispering fearfully to Lika, it's finally exam day. Lika was also in a state of fear and worry, only giving a low. Watching other students working hard, some pitching tents, others carrying supplies, Rangi's went on a long rant. Even though Master Zeke said so, is it really okay for me to go with Lady Lika? After all, there are many in this class from more legitimate noble families than me. I'm just a commoner, and I haven't even reached any star rank yet. Despite pouring his heart out to Lika, he trembled with fear just thinking about it. At that moment, a blonde boy and a blue-haired girl walked up behind Rangi's. Having heard all his worries, the blue-haired girl was the first to offer comfort. We're all the same, Rangi's. By natural reflex, Rangi's turned to look. Seeing the two of them, he joyfully called out through his tears, Selene. Raymond. Selene looked at Lika beside him and remarked with a mix of joy and shyness, I still can't believe a commoner like me gets to go with Lady Lika. Raymond didn't say anything, but nodded in agreement with Selene's words. Lika looked at Rangi's, Selene, and Raymond and offered encouragement, saying that whether they were nobles or commoners didn't matter. She was traveling with them because she valued their abilities. Hearing this, Rangi's slightly tightened his grip on the spear in his hand and replied briefly, I understand. Then his voice sounded extremely serious as he promised, I will do my best and won't let myself become a burden to anyone. Inspired by Rangi's burning determination, Raymond also vowed, I will also work hard to live up to your expectations, my lady. And Lika praised the three of them with a bright smile. Good, I'm counting on you all. Having said that, she turned back to Zeke and asked, But are you really going alone, Zeke? He replied confidently and clearly, Of course, I can't wait any longer. Selene and Raymond both knew about Zeke's status. Selene looked at him with admiration and couldn't help but sigh. Incredible, I've been feeling anxious this whole time, while Raymond also remarked with respect. So this is what it feels like to share royal blood. Hearing Raymond's words, Lika replied loudly and honestly, Don't equate me with him, I'm trembling too. Zeke was a bit taken aback and asked Lika with terrifying naivety, You're scared? What is there to worry about? Aren't you and all the top students gathered here already? Seeing him mention this so naturally as if it were of no importance, Selene, Raymond, and Rangi's were rendered speechless, all happening to share the same thought. Actually, there are plenty of reasons to be worried, Master Zeke. Putting that aside, Lika teased him, asking, Do you really think they're capable? And Zeke smiled but replied seriously, Of course. Looking at Raymond and Selene, whom Lika had chosen, he had to truly praise her competence. She had successfully gathered the most promising students in the class. Lika's eye for talent was quite good. With that, he stated firmly, Their offensive and defensive capabilities are excellent. Your test will be a breeze. Even though he was used to Zeke's calm attitude, Rangi's couldn't help but remark flatly, Right, Master Zeke is always this confident. At that moment, Freya and the other instructors arrived. She asked casually, Well, is everyone here? And then looked over the students and remarked, Oh my, so you've decided to form teams together. That's not a bad choice, since some of you surely haven't mastered weapon arts yet. As soon as they heard Freya's voice, all the students turned simultaneously to listen intently to her command. After the greeting, she held up her spirit stone to demonstrate and asked, Let's begin right away. Everyone has their spirit stone, right? While holding the stone, she announced the rules of the exam. Your mission is to survive for 1 month on Poison Dragon Mountain while keeping this spirit stone. If you still have it when the test ends, you pass. Remember, all these spirit stones look exactly the same. Hearing this, the students grew tense and whispered among themselves. Standing in the crowd, in contrast to everyone's fear, Zeke remained silent and thoughtful. In the loopholes of the rules, he had already thought of a way to bend them. If I lose mine, I'll just go steal someone else's. Then Freja continued explaining the structure of the exam. Once you head up the mountain and find a hiding spot, the seniors will begin trying to take your spirit stones. While she spoke, two boys were talking confidently. One asked, "Hey, most of them probably haven't even reached 1 star yet, right?" And the other replied, "This will be like taking candy from a baby." Hearing about this difficult challenge, the students were once again hit with a wave of terror. Freja finished her speech and shouted, "Now then, the explanation of the rules is finished." She gave the command, "The exam begins." And as soon as she finished, all the students ran quickly up the mountain. Lika ran with the crowd, not forgetting to look back and wish Zeke luck. "Zeke, you absolutely must survive." And Zeke replied with a simple yeah and added, "You too." Lika called out loudly to Rangis, Selene, and Raymond, "Everyone, let's head out." And all three responded in unison and hurried after her. Currently, Zeke was still standing leisurely beside Freja, waving to them nonchalantly. "Be careful out there." Seeing this, Freja asked in confusion, "Aren't you supposed to go too?" Zeke only remembered after she mentioned it and muttered, "Right, my mistake. I was a bit distracted." Freja asked suspiciously, "Distracted? Aren't you worried at all?" Zeke waved it off and replied, "I have nothing to worry about. Now then, excuse me, instructor." And with that he set off leisurely. Freja watched him go and remarked to herself, "What a strange kid." Night fell and the stars sparkled above. At the foot of the mountain, all the instructors stood on guard, not yet daring to rest. Someone asked restlessly, "They'll be okay, won't they?" Hearing this, Freja asked the dragon instructor coldly, "What? Is something wrong?" And he replied seriously, "This exam might be a bit too early for the new students." Another instructor beside him added to the reasoning, "True. They've learned the basics, but only a few have reached a star rank, and their actual combat experience is still lacking." Having said that, he laughed awkwardly and wondered, "I wonder how many of them will actually pass." But Freja reassured them plainly, "Don't worry." She analyzed the situation. Poison Dragon Mountain has countless poisonous creatures, but the quantity and quality of the monsters aren't concerning. Most are only 1 or 2 star rank. Moreover, as you can see, the students are basically capable of handling them. The two instructors didn't question her further, and the dragon instructor replied in a low voice, "Yes, understood." Freja gave a mysterious, conspiratorial smile and whispered, "However, I'm still going to release that thing at the very end." The dragon instructor caught a faint sound but couldn't quite make it out, so he asked hesitantly, "Pardon me, I didn't hear you clearly. What did you just say?" Freja immediately changed her expression and replied with a smile, "Oh, it's nothing." At that point, she gave the command to the elite seniors chosen for the hunt. "All right, it's time. You all head out as well." And upon her signal, they immediately entered hunting mode and rushed up the mountain. Freja tucked a strand of hair that was blowing in the wind and muttered plainly, "Let's see how many survive. I'm really looking forward to this." The seniors darted through the dark, dense forest, moving with lightning speed as they raced up the mountain. Suddenly, along the way, one of them spotted someone and called out softly, "Hey, look there." It was Zeke, standing leisurely by a tree, and the boy whispered happily, "Found someone already." Another senior also noticed Zeke and mocked him with contempt. "How is he still hanging around a place like this after all this time? Is he stupid?" The first one who spotted him quickly found a thicket to hide in and aimed his bow at Zeke. The arrow flew toward him like a flash of light. Zeke calmly leaned his body to the side. His hand accurately caught the arrow mid-flight. Zeke gently snapped the arrow in his hand, laughing with a wild grin as he shouted, "I've been waiting for you." The three were stunned by the fact that he discovered them and even more so by his actions. One asked in confusion, "What kind of crazy talk is that?" While another remarked in shock, "Didn't he just stop that arrow with his bare hands?" Without saying a word, Zeke charged toward the three of them. He gave a delighted laugh and shouted decisively, "Now then, let the game begin." A series of noises erupted from the forest, followed by a monster suddenly lunging out. Selene frowned and swung her sword aggressively. She drove a strike straight into the monster's body, but right then another monster appeared behind her. "Selene, look out." Just as it attacked, Raymond jumped in and used his shield to save her in the nick of time. Next, he frowned and swung his shield again. Raymond used the edge of his shield to strike the monster hard, sending it to its grave. On the other side, Rangis had also just finished off another creature. While everyone was taking a brief rest, a voice called out to check on them, "All right, is everyone okay?" And Rangis quickly looked up and replied, "Lady Lika, we're." Immediately after, he was startled by the pile of spoils beside Lika. The rumors about Lady Lika were true. While we were panicking, she took down so many of them. Lika held up 2 fingers proudly. "Well, I have reached the 2nd star after all. This is nothing. More importantly, you've all grown quite a bit since the exam started a week ago. Selene and Raymond have reached the first star rank as well. Selene replied with a slight smile. It's all thanks to your help, Lady Lika, and Raymond added, Thank you, my lady. Rangi stood to the side watching them with a dejected gaze. They've both reached 1 star, but I'm still. Selene caught his look and immediately comforted him. Rangi's, you've gotten a lot stronger too. You'll reach the 1st star soon. And Raymond nodded. Don't lose your patience. Rangi's gave a wry smile and said, Thanks, guys. From a distance, Lika suddenly praised him. Taking down a tree frog by yourself was quite impressive. She brought up a past event to encourage him. Besides, you trained with Zeke before the exam to sharpen your spear skills. Don't worry too much. You'll reach 1 star in no time. Rangi's called out her name with emotion. Lady Lika. Just then, Lika suddenly looked up at the sky. All right, it's getting dark. Let's head back to base. Selene immediately agreed. Right, it's dangerous to be out at night. By now, the sky was fading into twilight as the sun slowly dipped behind the mountains. Not long after, as night fell, a thin mist began to spread through every corner of the forest. The group was currently on their way back carrying their spoils when Rangi suddenly called out, Lady Lika. Lika frowned warily. You, what are you doing at our base? Just as she finished speaking, a pair of legs stepped out from the forest. Everyone in the group simultaneously raised their guard and drew their weapons. What the? A tall young man with a sword at his hip stepped forward with a gentle smile and spoke up. Finally noticed me, have you? Lika gripped the hilt of her sword behind her and spoke to confirm. You're from the 10-year-old class, aren't you? Are you here to steal our spirit stones? The senior admitted it bluntly. Exactly. Looking at the senior's smiling face, one of the 4 secretly thought, the upperclassmen are finally attacking, and he's at the 2-star rank. The senior then spoke up. It's only natural for this exam, but I didn't expect this to be Lady Lika's base. Meanwhile, Lika coldly pointed her sword at him. Why don't you just go back? You can't hurt us all by yourself. The senior suddenly changed his expression and replied plainly, Right now. Who said I was alone? Lika turned her head and immediately saw another pair of unfamiliar legs appear. The blonde girl couldn't help but think anxiously. 3 2-star rankers right behind him. One of them suddenly spoke while drawing his sword. Even for Lady Lika, carrying 3 deadweights is quite a burden, isn't it? So, the man frowned and shouted, Just surrender already. In the next second, the man unhesitatingly swung his sword at where Lika was standing. But fortunately, she was able to jump back in time to dodge the blow. The blonde girl shouted while suspended in the air, Everyone! While Selene in another corner had already begun engaging the other 2-star senior. Hold your ground. Raymond was also an exception. He was currently raising his shield to defend himself. Hold on until I get back. Rangi's gripped his spear with both hands, trying to withstand a barrage of attacks from his opponent. The opponent kept attacking and shouting, Come on, hand over the stone. While Rangi's thought to himself in a daze, what should we do in this situation? At some point in the past, Zeke had asked him with a blank face, What? You're asking how to defeat a stronger opponent. Rangi's had hugged his knees and replied, Yes, I don't have any stars yet, so if a strong enemy appears, I want to know what I should do. After rubbing his chin in thought, Zeke suddenly blurted out 2 words, Give up. The blue-haired boy was instantly startled. What? He explained further, It's obvious, isn't it? For someone with no stars to fight a 3 or 4-star ranker is completely impossible. Rangi's cried out in disbelief. No way. But Zeke suddenly continued, However, with a 1 or 2-star ranker, you can still manage. Hearing this, Rangi's turned to look at him in surprise. Zeke said, You're worried about the upcoming exam, aren't you? If my memory serves me right, most of the monsters on Poison Dragon Mountain are 2-star, and I've heard the seniors attacking us will also mainly be 2-star. In that case, there is still a way. The boy suddenly knelt seriously before him as if waiting for instruction. What way? And Zeke held up 2 fingers. Nothing new. Faced with Rangi's vague look, he smiled and revealed the secret. Take advantage of an opening, that's it. An opening? Zeke nodded in agreement. Yes, you can take down a 2-star enemy. Even someone with no stars like you can turn the tide if you find an opening. Me. Rangi's asked seriously, but how do I hit an opening? And he replied immediately with just 2 words. Take hits, endure, and just keep enduring. Zeke leaned over slightly, the corners of his mouth curling into a mischievous smile. Keep taking the hits until you see the opponent's opening. The blue-haired boy was instantly startled and shouted. What? Zeke replied nonchalantly. Why are you so surprised? You're facing an opponent stronger than you. What do you think someone weak like you can do? Rangi's suddenly gripped his pants. That's true, but can I actually endure it? Zeke immediately corrected him. It's not about whether you can or not. You have to. If you can't do that, then defeating a strong enemy is just a fantasy. His words seemed to enlighten the boy, and he went silent for a moment. Zeke averted his eyes and continued his advice. Speaking of which, a special opponent like Lika, me, the girl with special lightning power, with your current self you can endure a 2-star opponent. Don't worry too much. Rangi's lowered his head and muttered softly, I think so. While he pointed out bluntly, Rangi's, you're still quite lacking in confidence. Zeke stared at him and lectured in a firm voice. Believe in yourself, that's the key to becoming stronger, you know. I know that, but before the blue-haired boy could finish, he pointed directly at him and continued. Then let me give you one more piece of advice. Zeke gave a bright smile and said, don't overthink a problem. Under Rangi's unblinking gaze, he delivered a philosophical speech. You don't need to think about finding openings or different powers. While Rangi's in battle still held his spear as if he could attack at any moment, just wait patiently for the opponent to show an opening and thrust the spear into it. That's all. The blue-haired boy knelt on the ground and stammered a few words, thrust straight. With a spear. And Zeke replied, yes, that's the secret to taking down a strong enemy. Back in the present, the opponent fighting Rangi's couldn't help but remark, this guy is really stubborn. Meanwhile, while defending himself, he thought, that's right. I'm currently weaker than this person, so I must endure and wait at all costs until an opening appears. Despite his body trembling, Rangi's maintained a resilient expression, trying to block every blow. The opponent suddenly cursed loudly, damn it. Next, he jumped up, preparing to attack the blue-haired boy from above. Just die. Rangi's suddenly frowned with a determined gaze and swung his spear forward. A blue star suddenly appeared in the center of the vortex in his eye. Rangi's forcefully thrust his spear toward that spot. In reality, he had struck the 2-star senior squarely in the stomach, causing the sword in his hand to fly out. There, dazed before passing out, the senior muttered unwillingly, impossible. Afterward, he fell completely unconscious before a panting, exhausted Rangi's. The star on his chest suddenly glowed more brilliantly than before. As for Lika, she was currently frowning and charging forward. It seems that side is finished. The senior suddenly cried out in panic. No way, I'm also a 2-star, but while blocking one of Lika's blows, he gritted his teeth and hissed, how can the gap be this large? Lika suddenly remembered the book with the axe symbol and thought to herself, because I learned axe skills, I have to put more power into the greatsword. That's why Zeke suggested the axe skills to me before. Golden sparks of electricity suddenly radiated from Lika's body. It's bad luck for you to target us. The senior turned pale at the sight of the sparks and cried out, no. In the next second, she unleashed a high-voltage current that blasted the senior to pieces. It's over. After he fell to the ground unconscious, Lika quickly turned back. As soon as she arrived, she asked loudly in worry, is everyone okay? Lika suddenly noticed Rangi's beside her, his eyes shining like car headlights. In the next second, all four cheered in delight. We won. Selene spoke to Rangi's happily. Congratulations on reaching the 2nd star, Rangi's, you did it. And Rangi's replied with emotion, thanks, guys, I'm so happy. Lika watched them and smiled with relief. Now everyone has reached a star rank. They can hold their own against opponents of the same level. But then she turned away and muttered, I wonder how Zeke is doing. At the same time, in another part of the forest, noises continued to come from the trees in the night. A young man with tied-up hair was running for his life, as if fleeing from something. He ran while sobbing, don't come here, don't come here. Damn it, what kind of thing is that guy? The image of Zeke's back stepping over his teammates suddenly appeared. What kind of monster is that? A girl and 2 other students came rushing out of the forest, stumbling and sobbing. Help, don't come near me. In another direction, a figure was lightly dragging someone else by the collar. What's wrong with that guy? He's a monster. It was Zeke triumphantly holding 2 people by their collars. What's the matter? No one wants to play with me anymore. Zeke said nothing more, only breaking into a fit of delighted laughter. The students ahead fled frantically without daring to look back. That guy is insane. Why is a junior hunting seniors like this? Aren't we supposed to be the hunters? While running, a blue-haired kid tripped, slamming his round cheek right onto the ground. The boy sat up and scrambled back in terror. Damn it, my leg is stuck. Zeke, with his tall frame, slowly approached, looking utterly terrifying. I'm bored of this pointless game of tag. Zeke wore a demonic smile, his eyes turning blank as he reached out his hand as if to hypnotize him. Come on, get up. Come fight me. The boy's eyes dilated in total panic. Hey, he seemed to lose consciousness, his eyes rolling back as his trembling body was hoisted up by Zeke. The boy let out a breath as if he were passing on, his face devoid of life. Zeke looked on, feeling helpless. Oh boy. Standing behind the unconscious boy while the other 2 continued to run, Zeke complained angrily. Seriously, why are you guys so cowardly and gutless? Everyone was so eager to fight at first. Don't leave me all alone. Zeke lowered his arm, glanced back, and considered, right. Maybe you should take a closer look. Soon he was the only one standing there, the surroundings becoming surreal. Standing and watching like this. I suppose there's no problem with my direction, right? Then I'll just keep playing freely. Another foot suddenly stepped forward, revealing itself from behind a tree trunk. It was a guard peeking out at the situation with an expression of worried confusion. What is this? Step by step, he moved deeper into the forest, pushing through bushes and slowly looking around. Being able to sense my presence after detecting a senior. Impressive. Suddenly he froze and stood there thoughtfully rubbing his chin. I have to report this. Caught in his sight was the body of the blue-haired kid from earlier, lying flat on the ground. Freya suddenly appeared out of the darkness with a gentle expression. You're back, report. The soldier, her subordinate, acknowledged the command, and one of the three reported. Understood. 1 week after the test began, approximately 30% of the 7-year-old class has been eliminated. However, the remaining students are gradually adapting. The guard stood at attention and continued to offer his opinion. I believe this number won't decrease much further. Hearing the information, Freya asked, I see. And the senior students? The guard hesitated. The seniors are. The guard slowly glanced at his two dejected-looking comrades as she urged him. What is it? Speak clearly. He then answered her question decisively. To put it simply, they are running away. Freya found it strange, looking more puzzled than pleased. Running away, the seniors? What on earth are they running from? She looked curiously at one of the guards and asked hesitantly, what kind of monster on the poison dragon mountain could make them run? The guard replied seriously, It's Master Sieg, ma'am. This answer shocked her. What did you say, Master Zeke? Zeke's ferocity has sent the other students scattering in terror. Master Sieg is currently attacking the seniors. At first, they tried to resist, but now they are all fleeing. Among the guards, one spoke up loudly. Who exactly is this Master Sieg? He's actually excited to pick off the seniors. This is unheard of. A guard with a lock of hair across his nose became suddenly solemn. I agree. His son and the Patriarch too. No, on the contrary, I must say that. In their minds, Zeke appeared as a terrifying figure, his eyes glowing brightly amidst an aura of powerful energy. He is an anomaly who has surpassed the concept of a genius. In truth, he's more like a monster. Freya pressed a finger to her cheek, looking away as she recalled his appearance. I find him very strange, too. He chose to act alone and started his journey with surprising leisure. Could it be that from the start, he wasn't the hunted but the hunter? Zeke at that moment with a bright smile and eyes that were anything but innocent. Is that so? Like a monster. Suddenly, a sound from another direction made a female guard jump. That sound is. Freya stood there nonchalantly, not surprised at all. Oh, it's finally here. I've been waiting. A burly man arrived pushing something heavy. Lady Freya, where should I put this? She guided him. Just put it there. Good work. The entire guard team gasped in shock. What is this, Lady Freya? This is. Don't tell me you're planning to release this into the poison dragon mountain. This thing has the power of a 3-star rank. With their current strength, the children can't possibly deal with it. Freya didn't seem to take it seriously, her face beaming with a radiant smile. It'll be fine. This has been specially adjusted. The guard with the hair across his nose stared at her. Adjusted how? She kept smiling and brushed it off. That's right, this one only attacks those who have reached the 2-star rank. Zeke and Liko were the two shining factors mentioned. So the ordinary children won't be majorly affected. A voice suddenly cut in, asking, I see, but why do this? Freya calmly held out her hand and answered decisively, This is an order from the Patriarch. Hearing that, the guard froze, breaking into a cold sweat. From the Patriarch, a mysterious creature with 2 blood-red eyes was locked in the iron-framed cage the burly man had brought. Now, let's see how he handles this. He's strong enough for veterans to call him a monster. I wonder if he can deal with something like this. Freya's expression suddenly turned dark and gloomy. She smirked with a sinister smile. Release it at dawn. The scene shifted to the sun, shining brightly through the canopy of the forest. Rangis held a long tube in his hand and looked ahead curiously, while Selene also felt something odd. Did the ground just shake a little? Lika walked ahead, her brow furrowed as she assessed the situation seriously. It seems so. What is it? This feels strange. A blond boy standing nearby looked on innocently. Is it the seniors again? Rangis began rambling, giving Lika a headache. Maybe it's a monster like a fierce wild boar or something like that. Her expression grew worse. But I have a feeling. Suddenly, a violent, massive sound echoed toward their group. Above their heads, a massive ancient tree was tilting, about to fall. Lika realized what was happening and shouted to the others. "The tree is falling. Everyone get out of the way." The group scrambled with difficulty to escape the impact of the massive trunk. Once she had dodged it, Lika looked back and wondered, what was that? Selene, with a terrified expression, realized, that's. Rangis trembled in fear, looking up, while the boy beside him watched intently. A monster with a body made entirely of stone and two blood-red eyes appeared abruptly. A golem. Zeke was looking up with an indifferent, detached expression. "Is it time?" He sighed and leaned against the pile of bodies he had just captured. Outside, guards were still patrolling the forest. "I'm starting to get bored. There's no one left to fight me. How disappointing." Suddenly, in the distance, birds flew up in a hurry, and the sound of heavy footsteps approached rapidly. Zeke jolted at the sudden noise. An unusual presence. He thought seriously, it's been a long time since a monster of this level appeared. He suddenly rolled his eyes upward, thinking to himself, are they trying to imply something by releasing this here? The first patriarch from 1,000 years ago. But for the abilities of today's children, a 3-star opponent might be too much for them. Zeke sat perched up high and tilted his head from side to side. Something like this should have been handled by the instructors before the test began, shouldn't it? No, wait. Freya, with her seemingly gentle smile, is actually quite calculating. They might have released it on purpose. What are they actually planning? Seriously. Because of that, he suddenly laughed with amusement, his eyes shining like car headlights. But this is even better. I suppose I'll get some entertainment after all. Zeke found something interesting and hopped down from his perch, preparing to leave. I can't just sit here. I'm coming for you, 3-star. If only it had appeared closer to me, it would have been more fun. Instead, it's all the way over there. On this side, Selene was holding a sword in her hand, struggling to attack. Her entire body was knocked back, and she hadn't dealt even a scratch of damage to the golem. As soon as her feet hit the ground, Selene looked up and worried, impossible. Not even a scratch. Raymond gritted his teeth and used his weapon to leap high, attacking the golem. Take this. His expression soured when he saw the golem was completely unharmed. Even that does nothing. It was Lika's turn to leap and unleash a stylish slash. Thunder strike. One arm of the golem was slightly chipped after taking her attack. Realizing this, she smirked triumphantly. It seems I can only break the outer shell when I use aura. That means this thing can only be defeated by someone at the 2-star rank. Rangis crept up from behind, his hand still tight on his weapon as he asked her hesitantly, Lika, what should we do? All right, Lika said with an air of command. Everyone listen up. The golem still loomed before them as Lika announced the plan. I'll distract it. In the meantime, the rest of you run. Her friends disagreed. What? Rangis stopped her decisively. No, we can't leave you behind, Lika. Lika kept her red-flamed weapon pointed at the golem, her face focused forward. I know this sounds offensive, but you'll only hold me back. Where I just hit its arm, I had to use all my aura just to crack it a little. The golem, with its massive, robust stone body, stood there like a pillar, puffs of white smoke snorting from its mouth. Small Lika stood in a corner, seriously reminding everyone, with your current abilities, you won't even be able to scratch it. Selene looked at her and whispered in realization, Impossible. She's right. We can't scratch it. Raymond, filled with fighting spirit, stood right in front of Lika, his brow furrowed with determination. But we can still support you so that Lady Lika can land her strikes more accurately. Lika jolted in confusion, her eyes wide with shock. What are you? Then Rangis raised his weapon, his eyes bright with resolve. I'll do my best too. Selene stood behind them with a bright, supportive smile. Exactly. If we all fight together under your lead, maybe we really have a chance. Lika was touched by their words. Everyone. A smirk played on Lika's lips and she said in a low voice, Fine then, if that's the case. She stood alone at the back, gathering aura into her sword while the others in front stood ready. Cover me. Lika used all her strength, confidently releasing her energy. Here I come. Lika climbed from behind the group like a flash of lightning, carrying her sword charged with powerful energy to attack the front. Standing right before the golem, it watched her intently and took a stance. When its massive arm swung down a heavy punch, Raymond was already there with his shield to block it for her. His expression while defending became increasingly strained. The situation was clearly very difficult. Raymond then backed away, and Selene and Rangis simultaneously lunged at the golem with their weapons. While it was focused on those in front and had dropped its guard, Lika leapt from behind with her sword. She let out a scream and brought a heavy blow down upon the golem. Thunder Soul Heavy Sword Art. The strike landed directly on it, a powerful conflict erupting that turned the whole area white. Heavenly thunder. An explosion deep in the forest erupted with a boom, echoing a violent shockwave. The ground was subjected to powerful surges of yellow energy. As soon as Lika landed, Rangi's rushed over to ask, "Lika, are you okay?" She tried to maintain a casual smile. "Just barely, but that last blow used up all my internal energy." Lika looked at Selene helping Raymond and spoke with concern. "More importantly, Raymond, are you okay?" He struggled to answer, I'm fine." Lika felt a bit relieved. In that case, Lika had just finished her sentence when the golem suddenly loomed up behind her. "Everyone, let's head back to base." Suddenly, Lika pushed Rangi's away so hard he didn't have time to react. She took his place and the golem snatched her up in its massive palm. Lika, she found it hard to breathe, feeling pain with every squeeze of the golem. "I dropped my guard. It can still move." Selene, who was helping Raymond, saw the scene and panicked in worry. "No way, it can still move after all that." Raymond called her name in pain, Lika. Rangi's acted impulsively without thinking, charging straight at the golem with his weapon. "Let her go, let her." The golem simply jerked its massive arm upward, then looked down at him with cold, empty eyes. Seeing this, he was overcome with panic. Lika, a whirlwind blew in from nowhere, distorting everything near it. The golem was suddenly hit by a pressure that sent it falling backward. One shoulder of the golem was shattered by the impact, and Lika fell to the ground. Rangi's took the opportunity to rush over and carry her deep into the forest. "Are you all right?" she murmured in confusion as they moved. "But what exactly?" Zeke suddenly appeared with a weird smile, shouting, "What's all the noise about?" Lika looked up in surprise, sensing something familiar. "That voice!" Rangi's recognized it and called out, "Zeke." Zeke suddenly leapt out from a large bush with agile movements. "What do we have here?" He looked with interest at the golem ahead. "What is this earth puppet?" A moment later, a bright yellow bolt of lightning struck down from the sky. This doesn't look good." Zeke didn't hesitate and immediately ran toward that direction. "Isn't that lightning?" So Lika's group got there first. I remember back in my prime, a distance like this was nothing to me. He was in a hurry to protect the kids. Lika's group is full of promising ones, but how long can they hold out against a 3-star opponent? Realizing he wouldn't make it in time at this pace, he braked hard. "All right, I'll try that technique I just learned the other day." He gripped a nearby tree trunk with force. "Let's see." Zeke used every bit of his strength to lift the tree out of the ground. He let out a roar, building momentum as he swung the trunk in a circle. He let go, sending the tree flying straight up into the sky. Zeke watched it go with satisfaction. "That's pretty good. I thought this body might need more skill. I'm glad I bothered to learn." The most suitable manual for him right now was Dragon Nurturing Art. This basic Great Dragon manual had been given to the kids before the exam. Like the Dragon Breath Close Combat manual, it wasn't exactly a martial art, but more like a handbook for basic movements and internal energy flow. He nodded in approval. "Turns out it suits me perfectly. After all, in my past life, long-range attacks. Indeed, 1,000 years ago, long-range attacks were manually powered." Zeke suddenly realized he had to go save the kids. "Well, no time for nostalgia. I need to do something now." He quickly moved through the trees and spotted Rangi's and Lika. Zeke smiled broadly and waved casually. "Is everyone okay?" Rangi's hurriedly summarized the situation. "Yes, but that's not the issue right now. Look at that golem over there." Zeke's eyes lit up with interest. "Oh ho, so it's called a golem, huh?" He pointed at the approaching creature while assessing it. "It has an aura but not a hint of life force. What a strange being." This made the others panic. "Zeke, be careful." The stone golem came thudding toward them and swung its arm down. His voice was full of excitement as he blocked the punch. "It has a pretty tough shell. With that level of hardness, it might be impossible to break without an aura-wrapped strike. But defeating it the normal way would be too boring, wouldn't it?" With that, Zeke gave a small smile and threw the golem back. His two friends were too used to it to be surprised anymore. "Ah, as reckless as ever. Boring. Why is he like this?" The golem stood firm and brought its hands together over its head. Zeke's gaze became dangerous as he evaluated it. "Now then, considering this size, it should." And then its strike came down rapidly toward his head. The ground seemed to sink, creating a shockwave. He grinned and warned those nearby. "This is going to be dangerous, so get back." The children immediately trusted his command and turned to run. "Yes, sir." Zeke stood his ground against the force of the impact. "Now then." He put some strength into his arms and surged up, throwing the golem off. "That shell is tough." A very bold idea was forming in his mind. "Well then, let's see if the inside is just as solid as the outside, shall we?" Zeke excitedly took a leap and soared high into the air. Time for an experiment. His fist slammed down onto the stone body of the golem. Dragon Destruction Style First Form. He continued the devastation with the second form, Explosive Rupture, shattering its body. Instead of just hitting the outer shell, I'll use explosive rupture to pump primordial chi inside and make it blow up from within. He stood tall, clenching his fist. Well, that was a success. Now this is what I call interesting. The bright sun flared, making the entire forest shimmer. However, Freja's mood was anything but cheerful. The test for the seniors was clearly to attack the juniors and steal their crystals, but you, a junior, went and attacked the seniors instead. No one has ever done that before. She stood with her hands on her hips, raising her voice in a lecture. Because of you, not a single one of them obtained a crystal, forcing them all to retake the test. Zeke's attitude remained nonchalant. But I didn't break any rules, and I didn't steal anything either. This prompted her to shout. Who would ever expect a junior to launch a counterattack like that? Freja let out a long, weary sigh and turned away. Anyway, you'd better change that casual tone of yours before you stand in front of the Patriarch. At that moment, the two of them were standing before a door of judgment. Freja continued her endless advice as she walked. At any rate, drop that careless attitude when you face the headmaster. Zeke felt puzzled. Why? She gave a cold, short laugh. Why, you ask? Freja's tone became dark and threatening. Because you'll be eliminated, even if you are just a child. She felt a twinge of sadness and worry for his future. I won't let that happen, he simply remarked. How cruel. She reached out and knocked on the door. Patriarch. Freja spoke up formally and clearly. Black Dragon Guard member Freja, reporting as summoned. A deep, authoritative voice came from inside. Enter. With his permission, they slowly stepped inside. Excuse us. Zeke shifted his gaze toward the man who held absolute power in this place. Freja stood with one arm behind her back and reported, I have come with the student, Zeke. The man with graying hair looked up with a pair of sharp eyes. He began to speak as if conducting an interrogation. Why? Is it true that you attacked the senior students? Zeke's expression didn't flinch or change at all. Everyone keeps asking the same thing, so let me ask you, was I not allowed to attack them? Baltza didn't expect someone to stand up to him so brazenly. What? Zeke shoved his hands into his pockets and explained clearly. The only condition to pass was to survive for a month on Poison Dragon Mountain and keep the crystal. I didn't hear any other rules, so I followed them and used my time as I pleased. If there were forbidden actions, you should have specified them before we started. Such arrogant words immediately caused Freja's face to pale. She quickly barked out, trying to shut him up. Student Zeke, you are currently. Baltza's gaze darkened instantly, radiating a spine-chilling killing intent. The ancient dragon in his mind seemed to wake up, letting out a roar that shook the heavens. Freja's legs buckled under the crushing pressure. This pressure, you're going to die. However, Zeke remained standing right where he was, hands still in his pockets. He even spoke up with a clear warning. Stop threatening me, it's annoying. This was the first time in his life Baltza had faced such a situation. Zeke pouted, disdaining Baltza's actions. Did you call me here just to ask about these trivial matters? Suddenly, an abrupt question was blurted out. Exactly how did you do it? The words left him puzzled. Do what? He brought up the unbelievable feat Zeke had performed. According to the reports, you didn't just defeat the seniors, you took down a golem as well. Furthermore, you stand before me now with an almost eerie level of calm. Baltza's gaze was complex and filled with confusion as he evaluated him. How can an illegitimate child like you possess such power? Zeke gave a slight shrug as if it were obvious and spoke up. The reason for my strength? It's quite simple. Zeke pointed a finger at his own confident face with pride. There is no reason other than the fact that I am simply talented. Their gazes locked, neither side willing to back down. Finally, Baltza waved a hand, not wanting to waste any more time. Your attitude is just as arrogant as the rumors say. However, I shall reward you for defeating the golem. You may choose one, a treasure from the Dragon Cache Pavilion or access up to the second floor of the Dragon Script Pavilion. Freja stood to the side, completely stunned and wide-eyed. A reward? What is going on? The places mentioned as rewards, the Dragon Script Pavilion and the Dragon Cache Pavilion, were home to rare treasures collected by generations of headmasters for over 1,000 years, starting from the time of the progenitor, Gilfas. The first, which many scholars dreamed of entering, the Dragon Script Pavilion, housed all sorts of books, including those that are currently forbidden. The second was a vast treasury. The Dragon Cache Pavilion preserved artifacts from previous headmasters, legendary weapons, elixirs, magical tools, and more. Rare treasures from many different eras were kept there. These places were legendary in this region. These facilities were the secret treasures of the Eldragon family, managed with extreme strictness and accessible only to those with permission. In particular, to reach the second floor or higher of the Dragon Script Pavilion required truly exceptional merit. She stared in disbelief at Zeke's smug face. To think that after all that, his disrespectful attitude was still rated as exceptional. He even greedily demanded more. If it's a reward, why not give me both? How stingy. Baltza didn't bother answering and simply dismissed him. Fine, you are dismissed. But Zeke wouldn't let it go. What, that's it? I still have a lot to say. This time, Freja acted quickly, grabbing him by the collar. Wait a minute, student Zeke. She forced a bright smile and thanked the Patriarch on his behalf. We are deeply honored to receive a reward directly from you. As you command, Patriarch. Let's go, Zeke. Zeke allowed himself to be dragged away, speaking nonchalantly. Fine, then I'll just say one more thing. The corner of his mouth curled into a wild smirk as he offered a piece of advice. As long as you keep suppressing your emotions like that, no matter how hard you try, you'll never truly become stronger. The pressure from two ancient dragons clashing made the entire room tremble. Freja was scared to death, whispering through gritted teeth, "Just stay quiet. Lord Patriarch, we shall take our leave," leaving Baltza stunned in the room. What was that pressure? Once they were outside and far from the Patriarch's office, she let it all out. "You," she shouted angrily right in Zeke's face. "What were you thinking, speaking with that attitude in front of the Patriarch? Did you not hear a word I said before we went in?" He frowned slightly, not remembering a thing. "What are you talking about? I was as restrained as possible." Freja felt like she was going to explode on the spot. "You call that being restrained?" She was incredibly frustrated by Zeke's behavior. "You can speak politely to me and the instructors, so why couldn't you do the same for the Patriarch?" He replied quite matter-of-factly. "He is my biological father, after all." She was left speechless. Truly, with that power and that attitude, Freja was forced to steady her emotions. "You aren't an ordinary child. Exactly who are you?" Hearing the question made him repeat it once more. "You're asking who I am." A faint smile touched Zeke's lips. "I told you I'm just me." It was the same answer as before, leaving her stunned. Freja couldn't understand any of it. "We have all consumed ancient dragon blood, so we absolutely cannot oppose the Patriarch who holds the power of the Dragon King, a species even higher than the ancient dragons. It should be like that, and yet, Zeke was like an alien dropped into this place. Why is this child so eerily calm in front of the Patriarch? Not seeing her answer, he asked, "Is something wrong?" Freja spoke up, denying the thoughts in her head. "No, it's nothing. I should re-examine the birth records thoroughly." She let out a breath, not wanting to argue any further. "So, which reward will you choose? You can enter the second floor of the Dragon Script Pavilion or take a treasure from the Dragon Cash Pavilion." Zeke held up two fingers, looking pathetic. "How about both?" She refused quite firmly. "Absolutely not." He pouted for a moment before choosing what was necessary. "You're no help, in that case." And the very next day, Zeke was standing before a white palace. He remarked in awe at the beauty of the place. "So this is knowledge. After being neglected for 7 years, this place was more necessary than anything. I'm lacking too much knowledge about this era. I'm also curious about the new elixirs and tools created over the last 1,000 years. But anyway," Rangi's ran up behind him, looking around excitedly. "I can't believe I actually get to enter the Dragon Script Pavilion." Zeke didn't quite understand his mood. "Are you really that happy?" The boy nodded enthusiastically. "Of course." His small, fair face flushed with excitement. "The Dragon Plunder close combat style and the Dragon Healing method we just learned were already great, but this is a chance to learn even better martial arts. I didn't expect the reward for passing the test to be this luxurious. I'm so moved." Lika stepped out from behind Rangi's in agreement. "How much knowledge can we absorb in the limited time? We have to work really hard. Zeke, this is your first time hearing this, but there's a time limit." Zeke noted. "There's a time limit." She appeared very knowledgeable. "That's right. We're only allowed on the first floor, but the basic rules should be the same." She updated him on these new rules. "You can only borrow one book, but you can read as many as you like within the allotted time. Therefore, how you use your time is very important." He pouted and nodded. "I see." Liko was then excitedly curious about Zeke's thoughts. "By the way, I heard something. Zeke, did you choose the Dragon Script Pavilion over the Dragon Cash Pavilion as your reward?" They couldn't understand why he chose the books. "Knowing you, I thought you'd take something from the Dragon Cash Pavilion." At this, he looked sorrowful. "I thought about it, but knowledge seems more important to me right now." Lika bit her finger in jealous longing. "Knowledge, huh? I heard the second floor has books even rarer than the first, especially the martial arts books. They say the gap in level between the first and second floors is huge." Wow, but she quickly perked up with her own strength. "I don't think anything is better than my Thunder Soul Greatsword style anyway. Hey Zeke, are you listening? Hey." They entered deep inside and met the guard. "The time you can stay in the building is 5 hours. Please use it quietly and strictly adhere to the time limit. Zeke followed them in, feeling a bit impressed. I wonder if that's a long or short time. Lika quickly replied, it might be long. She shared her experience expertly before entering. First, you must decide which book to borrow, then read the others within the time limit. Rangi's was a bit flustered and nervous. I've heard that talented people can read through many books at once, but my goal is just to find a martial arts book that suits me in that time. Stepping inside the hall, they were met by an overwhelming floor of books. Truly, just finding the book I need is going to be difficult. They instinctively spoke in hushed, admiring tones. So this is the Dragon Script Pavilion. Zeke looked up at the high ceiling that seemed to have no end. More impressive than I thought. He grinned in anticipation of new knowledge. Now then, let's see what knowledge is here. He delved into the massive library. This is making me excited. Time quickly passed. After a period of searching for information, Zeke's eyes widened and he shouted, "What the hell is this? Impossible, rifts, chaos, magic. There's too much information I know nothing about." Having said that, he casually tossed the book aside and lay flat on the floor, letting out a long sigh. 1,000 years really is a terrifying amount of time. He thought about how during those 1,000 years, this world had connected to another. Going back 900 years, a tear suddenly appeared in the wall of space. It was a rift, and on the other side of that rift was another chaotic world called the Chaos Realm. In that world, monsters called Chaos ran rampant. To fight against Chaos, the humans of that world cultivated a special energy within themselves. The Eldragon family fought alongside them against the Chaos, and through the bonds formed on the battlefield, 4 powerful warriors from that other world married into the Eldragon family. They were Typona, Levias, Bahamut, and Fafnald. They are the founders of the 4 major branches of the Eldragon family that exist to this day. Thinking back now, that angry roar from before was covered in a strange black mist, and then there was Leika's lightning aura. It turns out everything originated from another world. No wonder I didn't know anything. And what makes me most curious is magic, a new technology brought from the other world. Where are the books on how to use it? Why aren't there any? Usually, things like that should be placed right next to history books. The protagonist spoke as his eyes shone like stars. However, his noise was immediately interrupted. "Please be quiet inside the building," someone said, but this only made Zeke more curious. The voice has no aura at all, it's just sound. Could this be that, a technique that only transmits sound? But I don't feel any energy or power source. At the same time, the books around him suddenly seemed to be controlled by some force and floated in all directions. Seeing this, Zeke was incredibly excited and shouted, "What is that?" "Oh, using power sources like threads to move objects. That's a fascinating technique." The warning voice rang out again, "Please be quiet." To these words, how could Zeke possibly listen? He even lunged out to grab a book. "How can I be quiet in front of something this interesting? Show yourself right now and teach me directly." Not far away, a mysterious cloaked figure was using magic to create threads of light that wrapped tightly around Zeke and then pulled him into the air. "Time up, the doors are closing." The person reminded him, tossing Zeke directly into a mysterious poem. Luckily, our friend's reflexes were fast, so he was able to stop himself with just a somersault. "What was that? What was that? That's yet another thing I don't know." "Let me see that thing properly," Zeke said irritably. Just then, Rangi's arrived behind him and witnessed the scene, his eyes rolling. "Master Zeke, what happened?" Leika also sighed and chimed in. "What did you do to get tossed out like that?" Zeke scratched his head and explained flusteredly, "Well, I just got a bit too excited." "What about you guys? Did you find anything good?" Hearing the question, Rangi's shared excitedly. "Yes, I borrowed a martial arts book called Cloud Water Spear, and I think I've learned a simple footwork technique from it." On this side, Selene also pulled out a book and said, "I learned a footwork technique from this as well. I borrowed this Wind Flower Sword technique book." Raymond also mentioned his choice. "I learned Eldragon-style Guardian Sword from this. The book I borrowed is also Eldragon-style Sage Guardian Martial Arts." Their choices made Zeke feel a bit choked up inside. He thought to himself, all of those are things I created just to kill time in my past life. Despite his thoughts, Zeke nodded. "I see. So, Leika, what did you choose?" Leika replied with a cheerful voice, "This one. Tidal Greatsword Style. I heard it was created by the first Patriarch, and then the revised Tidal Greatsword Style was improved by the 15th Patriarch. I already have my family's inherited martial arts, so this is just for research." Returning to Zeke's perspective, Leika's words left him thoughtful. The 15th Patriarch again. Dragon Breath and Dragon Strike were also created by the 15th Patriarch. There are many martial arts I created in the Dragon Temple. but many have improved versions placed right next to them. Could it be that those are also from the 15th Patriarch? To be honest, when I first came here, I thought it would be very boring, but now I can't wait to see what's next. Time quickly passed. 5 years later, Leica's questioning voice rang out in the hallway. Huh, where did Zeke and the others go? Someone heard and replied, Ah, Lady Leica, Master Zeke and his friends have gone to the training ground. Leica waved. Thanks at it again, are they? Thank you. The scene shifts to the training ground, where our protagonist is currently fighting all three of them, Rangiz, Selene, and Raymond. At once, the scene shifts to Patriarch Baltza's office. He is currently tapping his fingertip on the desk, talking to the person in front of him. Is this the shape of a special rift? Are you sure about this? In response, Commander Ein of the Black Dragon Guard reported, Yes, according to the investigation, there is an 80% chance that magic water exists inside this rift. The certain answer seemed to make Baltza hesitate a bit. He sighed. It has appeared in a troublesome location. Of all places, why did the magic water choose that spot? Those who drink that water will become mages. That is magic water. Those who drink it will become a special form, able to convert primordial energy into another type of power, mana. The new techniques released through mana will bring a revolution to the world. At the same time, fierce territorial disputes over magic water sources, magic springs, have begun. The magical era has arrived, a place where the number of mages will largely determine the military strength of a family. On Eldragon territory, there are currently no magic springs. For families that don't own a magic spring, there is only one way to obtain magic water, conquering a special rift. Currently, the Eldragon family only has a few mages, including Baltza. All of them are seasoned elites who obtain magic water by conquering special rifts. Even so, the family is currently being overwhelmed by other families, those who own magic springs, simply through numbers. Conquering special rifts has become the most important mission for the Eldragon family. However, over on this side, Ein seemed to understand the worries weighing on the Patriarch's mind. He continued, As you said, this location, the Verdant Dragon Forest, is very troublesome. In the surrounding areas, there was even a small-scale border conflict just a few days ago. The Verdant Dragon Forest is a vast woodland, stretching far beyond our borders and into the territory of another clan. A portion of it extends into the territory of the Cerberus clan, those who claim co-ownership of the forest and call it the Verdant Hound Forest. Our close friend is certainly within Eldragon territory. However, considering the scale and location of the rift, there is a high probability it will cross over into Cerberus territory as well. With those golden hounds, it's likely they will come swarming in. He spoke while pointing to the map. The Eldragon Patriarch completely agreed. At the very least, those guys have very keen noses. They'll realize it sooner or later anyway. Commander Ein continued to offer a proposal. We need to prepare a force strong enough to control the situation in case we have to face them. Since this is a special rift, the options for both sides are limited. But before he could finish his sentence, Eldragon understood his meaning. We have to act before they notice, right? Report to the dragon nests immediately. Tell them we will hold a selection exam. Eldragon commanded in a stern voice. Ein received the order instantly. Understood. In a different development. At this time, the young girl Leica had just arrived at the training ground. She let out a long sigh. You really go all out, don't you? In front of her, Zeke still stood firm, calm before the attacks of all three, Rangiz, Selene, and Raymond. All three unleashed their ultimate techniques, Wildflower Sword Arts, Scattered Petals, Selene, Eldragon-style Guardian Shield Arts, Rock Wall Fist, Raymond, and Water Cloud Spear Arts, Water Piercer, Rangiz. Right at the moment the attacks were about to hit their mark, Zeke's eyes suddenly brightened. Then he only lightly raised his hand to block Selene's sword. As for the spear tip and the shield, he didn't even bother to dodge. It's not even enough to scratch the main character's skin. However, Rangiz, you're putting too much power into that strike. By doing that, you're killing the specialty of spear techniques. Having said that, he turned to critique Selene. Selene, you focus too much on speed and stats, so your balance is off. Learn to distribute your balance correctly. Finally, Zeke turned to Raymond. Raymond, you did quite well, but your passive personality still hasn't changed. You should get used to attacking more proactively. One more time. Yes, sir, the whole group shouted in unison. However, before they could carry out another wave of attacks, Leica stepped forward. As usual, she spoke up. This is truly a crazy sight. Zeke turned to complain. What do you mean crazy, kid? Leica shrugged and replied. Blocking attacks head-on without using true essence, isn't that just crazy? Immediately after those words, Zeke blocked several attacks while shouting. Nonsense, this is proper training. Look, here is the result of the training. Even without using true essence, the body has become this solid. Lady Leica, look at this. Isn't Master Zeke way too strange? Someone exclaimed. At least he didn't tell them to stop attacking while we were talking. Another person shouted. Over here, one person could only hold their face and groan. I think the fact that you keep attacking regardless of others is what's truly strange. On another side, Raymond and Selene couldn't help but admire. Defending like this without needing true essence. A person like this is just too mysterious. Hearing that, the young girl Leica immediately explained. Zeke isn't human, so don't equate him with us. Do you know what Zeke is called by the seniors? He's the monster child of the East District. Hearing this title, even Zeke couldn't help but complain. Isn't that being a bit rude to me? Putting that matter aside, the protagonist spoke up to ask. So you don't have any business with us, or did you come to join the training? Leica, of course, didn't come just to sit around. She came to announce some news. Training is fine, but first I have something to say. It seems you will be meeting the kids from the other dragon nests, and likely quite soon. This information caught the others by surprise. What? I guess this day would come, but it's finally here. Selene turned to ask for more details. Is it the next exam? Leica shrugged and answered, Who knows, even I don't know that much. Zeke immediately turned to ask, Then how do you know about that stuff? You just have to look at the instructors to guess from their conversations and actions. Leica explained calmly. Meanwhile, Zeke said, He never pays attention to things like this. This seemed to make someone a bit irritated. Such a carefree successor candidate indeed. But anyway, be careful. There is someone in the West District, one of the other candidates for the position of successor patriarch, who is targeting us. In response to this warning, Zeke not only showed no fear but even felt a bit excited deep down. Then that's interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Time passed quickly. A few days later, the children began to gather at the training yard. The protagonist's group of friends also seemed to have guessed the reason. Zeke whispered, Leica, it's probably the matter you mentioned before. Leica nodded in agreement. Yeah, likely so. Sure enough, immediately afterward, Freja's voice rang out. Is everyone gathered? Everyone shut your mouths. The children, seeing her demeanor, fell silent, not daring to utter a single word. Their fearful attitude made Freja somewhat satisfied. Very good. Starting today for the next 3 days, you will fight against the kids from the other dragon nests. Shifting to the next scene. It appeared that this information was not known to the children beforehand, so the whole group couldn't help but stir with lively chatter. Fighting those from other districts. That usually only happens in the graduation exam, right? Why so sudden? Up front, Freja naturally heard those whispers. However, she had no intention of explaining much. There are many reasons I cannot speak of in detail yet. But let me say one thing. The winners of this tournament will be assigned a special mission. Just hearing that was enough to make the protagonist's eyes sparkle like stars. A surge of excitement rose within him. A special mission that requires us to fight like this. Unaware of the thoughts in his head, Freja continued to explain. The match will be a knockout tournament with 7 representatives chosen from each district, East, West, North, and South. You must decide on your representatives before the end of the day today. Understood. Among the children, one person suddenly wondered. Those 7 will be chosen from our upper block, right? Unfortunately for that friend, Freja immediately announced some bad news. Why do you think I gathered everyone here? I will choose from all blocks. Once again, this caught everyone by surprise even more. What? Even if you say that? What can the little kids from the lower block contribute? Besides us, no one can fight. They are just trash. At those words, the lower block children seemed a bit confused but didn't dare talk back. As for the beautiful Freja, she completely ignored them. She only waved her hand in encouragement. Whatever works, as long as it's decided before the end of today. Then immediately after she left, a senior named Rick stood out and spoke loudly. Listen up. The 7 representatives will be chosen from us seniors. Naturally, no one has an objection, right? In response to those words, how could the young girl Leica remain patient? She immediately shot back. Actually, I have an opinion on that. It's not fair when you only call for the seniors. Shouldn't we also choose from the lower blocks? I am qualified for this too. On this side, Rick saw her stand up and broke into a proud smile. Well, if it isn't Lady Leica, it seems you're misunderstanding something. We are talking about real strength here. You've got it wrong. We are only discussing ability. He spoke with complete confidence, unaware that just a second later, Leica unleashed her power. On her person appeared 3 small points of light, representing 3 stars. Witnessing this, the entire upper block group immediately turned pale with fear. What? 3 stars? Impossible. The rumors said she was at most 2 stars. Since when? The whole group spoke with stutters, making Leica push her advantage even further. I agree that we should choose based on strength. So is it true that there are more than 7 seniors stronger than me? Answer me. If there aren't, then we should choose from the lower blocks as well. Rick heard this and knew he was at a disadvantage, but still argued stubbornly. That's because Lady Leica is an exception. The other kids can't possibly compare to the seniors. Right at this moment, Zeke's voice abruptly cut in. You people are too noisy. Rick's eyes bugged out as he turned to bark. You bastard, what did you just say? Zeke pouted and said it one more time. I said you people are too noisy. I'm saying you seniors keep screaming your heads off, sounding like you think those in the lower block are trash, right? Then how about we all fight until only 7 people are left standing? The protagonist proposed this while making a very battle-hungry face. These words were too much even for Leica. Zeke, that's going to automatically cause a whole bunch of violence issues. Regardless, her point was, how about we organize a preliminary round for those who want to participate? Anyone who wants to join can challenge in 3 days, regardless of block or grade. What do you seniors think? If you're confident in your strength, there won't be a problem, right? Regarding Leica's proposal, the upper block group seemed to have temporarily accepted. Fine, though I think it will be a complete waste of time. Having said that, the group withdrew. Meanwhile, Leica turned back to Zeke. All right, then Zeke, will you participate in the preliminary round too? Zeke replied with a bright smile. Of course, furthermore, Rangi's, Raymond, Selene, you 3 should participate as well. The other 2 didn't have much of a reaction yet, only Rangi's eyes went wide. Us? You want us to fight the seniors? Zeke gave a serious reminder. That's right. Haven't you been training with me all this time? If you don't show results now, then what was the training for? Over here, the swordsman girl Selene was so worried she was seeing stars. The pressure. It's overwhelming, she muttered, while Raymond could only offer helpless comfort. All we can do is try our best. Turning to Leica, she turned to ask the remaining lower block students. That group is as usual. Along with those 3, does anyone else want to try their hand? Hearing this, the group turned to whisper among themselves. Even so, our opponents are seniors. There's no way to win. I mean, there are seniors who are at least 3-star. As for Zeke, when he saw the lower block group staring like that, looking so terrified, he was a bit disappointed. Good grief! At least have a little spirit. One gains the most when fighting someone stronger than themselves. Whatever for now. Just watch. Let's see what they have. This strength those seniors keep claiming. The 3-star group brought their swords over and provoked. Selfish brats are really a nuisance. No matter how hard they try, they don't have a chance of winning. They intentionally spoke loudly. Hey, go easy on them. Except for Lady Leica, they're just 2-star kids. Selene, Rangi's, and Raymond on the other side couldn't help but be afraid. Seeing this, Zeke spoke up. What's wrong? You look worried. Rangi's hesitated. Well, I mean, we're facing the highest-ranked 3rd-year seniors and they're 3-star. He abruptly interrupted. You've been training with the teacher nonstop for 5 years now, haven't you? He continued. Everyone is doing great. Believe in yourselves a little more. Hearing that, both Selene and Raymond became excited again and replied, Yes, sir, while Rangi's was still a bit worried but muttered, Yes. A senior among the 3-star group suddenly charged forward and shouted, Hey, stop that chattering right now. Top-tier students don't have that much free time. Come on, I'll teach you brats your place. After a while, the students sitting in the stands were all watching and whispering to each other. What on earth is going on? I don't know. The 3-star group had been defeated by the trio of Rangi's, Selene, and Raymond. The other students were all surprised. Is it possible that the high-ranked students of this grade are that weak? No, we should say those guys are just. The senior had been knocked out cold on the ground, drooling and groaning. Impossible. Zeke smiled in praise. Good, well done, everyone. He inwardly evaluated. Rangi's has become much sharper at parrying strikes and spotting openings. Now Selene has utilized the consecutive strikes of the wind flower sword arts very well. He thought further. Raymond's tactics have also improved a lot. He switches smoothly between shield arts and sword arts. Zeke pondered. All of them have shown excellent training results. If they continue to build confidence through actual combat, it will be even better. And he looked over at Leica and inwardly remarked, Leica has grown stronger too. The other students witnessing Leica out fighting her senior couldn't help but gape. This can't be. Afterwards, she completely defeated Marin and said confidently, I guess this is about right. Rick was stunned. No way. How? There's no way we 3-stars lost to you 2-star brats. Zeke spoke up. How naive to have seen this result and still be spewing such nonsense. He gasped. What? He continued. Age, stats, rank. Zeke signaled for him to be quiet and said, They're just some stats anyway. Power in combat is decided only by the victor. If you're weak, you lose. That's all there is to it. Rick pointed at his face and barked. Are you stupid? Star rank is power. Don't tell me a kid like you doesn't even know that. He replied calmly, but stars or no stars. He spoke coldly. If you destroy the heart, anyone will die. Stunned by Zeke's words. Don't turn away from the true nature of power. Power in combat is simply whether you can win or not. He screamed, shut up. Who do you think you are? I'm a high-ranked student. Don't think a kid's sophistry like that works on me. I was going to go easy since you're just children, but don't blame me if you're crying later. I won't forgive you. Zeke waved his hand and said, I'm bored of this mouth fighting. Children should move their limbs before their mouths. Now it's just you and me. Let me see what kind of martial arts you've grasped. He revealed his strength and provoked, and how much you've practiced. Rick grit his teeth in anger. Zeke charged forward and cried out, take this. He also jumped toward him and shouted, don't underestimate me, great strength fist arts. But Zeke easily landed a hard punch to Rick's face, sending him flying 3 meters back. He praised, you've trained quite well. The atmosphere became quieter than ever. Leica, watching from the side, said, you dare say that after knocking him out without even bothering to check the result. At the same time, at the West Wing training ground, students were lying defeated and groaning. It hurts. Suddenly, an iron fan was folded shut. One of the candidates for the position of successor patriarch, Venial Fafnald Eldragon, sat on a defeated student and said, every single one of them is useless. Suddenly, someone spoke up. Master Venial. That person was none other than Venial's trusted assistant, Alan. He reported, the selection list here is complete. Retton walked over to meet Venial. He was slightly surprised. You, a junior, and yet you've reached 3 stars. He shouted, yes, sir. Venial admired. Not bad, I like those with ability. If you're useful, I'll take you in as a subordinate. Retton bowed deeply and respectfully. Thank you very much, sir. He cheered inwardly. I've been recognized by Master Venial. Retton thought, as long as Master Venial is here, the West Wing will not lose. And by gaining merit in that prestigious special mission, he thought further, Master Venial will become the successor patriarch, and when that happens, I will become a direct subordinate of the patriarch. Alan stepped up and said, Master Venial, there's something I should report to you. Venial asked back, what is it? He whispered, it seems Lady Leica will join the selection team for the East Wing, sir. Hearing this, he frowned and said, that meddling brat, always in the way. Venial stood up and spread his arms while continuing. Oh well, no matter how much of a genius she is, we will be the winners. We will pass the special mission with ease. Then he snapped his iron fan open and boldly declared, I will show my brothers that the seat of successor patriarch, Venial smiled confidently, is mine. In the arena, many students came to watch, their cheers echoing throughout the stands. They were all watching very intently. Rangiz looked around nervously and said, there are so many people. Leica added, every hall is packed like this, though some were disqualified in the exam. She looked up high and said, but this has thinned it out quite a bit, hasn't it? Hearing her say that, Rangiz thought, right, those who were disqualified are no longer here. They are called pseudo-dragons, just like Dad. Leica turned and saw Rangiz looking restless. She immediately patted his back hard and encouraged. Forget about it. We were chosen as representatives for the East Hall. You should be proud, Rangiz replied softly. Yes, I'll do my best. Suddenly, Leica turned back toward Zeke and asked, Master Zeke, what's wrong? She was suspicious. You're so quiet. Zeke replied, it's nothing. I'm just evaluating the combat strength of the students here. Suddenly, a loud shout came from a distance. As expected of Master Zeke, I didn't think you could pull something like that off. Zeke turned his head to look and said, things really have changed. Rick and Marin in unison. Understood. Members of the East Hall Senior Selection Team, we, the members of the East Hall Senior Selection Team. Rick said, we. After the fight that day, we have changed our minds. He declared loudly, though I am also a part of Eldragon, I truly respect the strong. Although a bit confused, Zeke still replied, I see. Well, it's not a bad thing, so it's fine. While Rangiz tearfully hugged his leg and said, you gave me a real fright. Zeke crossed his arms and thought, except for the East Hall, everyone else is 3-star. As expected, there are no 4 stars. But he glanced sideways and observed, thinking to himself, now then, let's see what ultimate techniques I get to witness this time. After a while, Leica was chatting with Rangiz. Suddenly, Sandy ran up to hug her and called, Leica, she gasped in surprise, Sister Sandy. Zeke, who was whistling, also took notice of her. Sandy pinched Leica's cheek while asking, long time no see, have you been okay lately? No one's bullying you, right? She shyly pushed her away and replied, I'm fine, I'm perfectly fine. Rangiz was suspicious. Lady Leica, who is this person? She responded, this is my cousin, Sandy Typhona, the beloved daughter of the Typhona clan patriarch, Sandy Typhona. Rangiz, Selene, and Raymond were all astonished and thought, Typhona, in other words, one of the four great families. Rangi's couldn't help but blurt out. Oh my God, Sandy asked in a questioning tone. Leica, who are these children? Are they your teammates, your friends? Hearing that, she appeared indifferent. Friends, really, being on good terms is nice, but Sandy judged coldly. Aren't they unqualified to be the companions of a successor candidate for the head of the house? Zeke spoke up from a distance. We'll know once we fight. She raised her voice. And you are. Leica hurried to introduce him. This is Zeke. He is also a candidate just like me. Sandy replied, a candidate? Don't tell me. Is this that rumored bastard child? He walked over and looked at her with a confident smile. Sandy spoke with contempt. I didn't expect a bastard like you to still be alive. Leica hurried to intervene. Wait, Sister Sandy, why would you say that? She responded. Oh my God, even if he is a bastard, he is still your rival, right? And you're calling him a friend? With that attitude, you won't win against the other candidates. Sandy continued her criticism. Furthermore, none of these kids have even reached the 3-star rank. Is the quality of the East Hall really that bad? They're just defectives. Hearing this, Rangi's, Raymond and Selene all looked embarrassed, while Zeke simply pouted and said, if you keep looking down on them like that, be careful they don't flip the script and leave you flat on your back. Sandy's voice turned cold. What did you just say? You're just a bastard. Besides the Patriarch's blood, you have no backing at all. She pointed her finger and questioned, are you actually trying to give me advice? He replied, it's just a warning. Sandy exclaimed, you. Suddenly, the North Hall representative, Edgy's Vanblade, stepped forward to stop them. Come on, don't cause trouble for the other teams. He shifted his gaze toward Zeke while Rangi stammered, that person is... Hey, Edgy's, Sandy spoke loudly, can you not interfere? We are talking about something important. He replied with a smile, I can't ignore this. The selection battle is about to begin. On the stands, the students had gathered in full force, everyone excited on the threshold of the battle. Suddenly, a tall man wearing a black cloak and a hat approached. He called out loudly, attention! All the noisy students immediately fell silent and focused on him. He spoke, all right. Instructor Teach Mentric, captain of the Gold Dragon Legion, announced clearly, from this moment on, the selection battle will begin. Teach announced the rules. This competition will be a tournament-style elimination between the 4 halls. First, the 4 halls will be divided into 2 groups. The winner of each group will face off in the final. The combat format is one-on-one duels. Each hall will take turns sending out one person in a predetermined order. Among the 7 participants from each hall, the hall that defeats 4 opponents first will be declared the winner. He continued, once the battle has begun, the team lineup order cannot be changed. Consider the arrangement of the order as part of your strategy. One last point. He emphasized, those selected in this battle will be assigned a special mission. This special mission is of extreme importance to the Eldragon family. Whoever undertakes this mission will make a great contribution to the Eldragon family. The students all thought to themselves, contributing to the Eldragon family means a big step toward becoming the head of the house. Teach said, now we will decide the match pairings. Representatives of each hall, come forward in order and draw a stone from this box. He called out, representative of the West Hall, Venial, step forward and draw. He called out, representative of the West Hall, Venial, step forward and draw. After he pulled out a stone, the instructor requested, all right, you may return. Leica saw him and immediately reacted, that guy. Zeke asked curiously, what is it? Do you know him? She replied, yes, he is the successor candidate from the West Hall I told you about. Venial Fafnald Eldragon. He placed a hand on his chin and pondered. It's not just Venial. Overall, the West Hall has many strong warriors. He thought further, the other halls have also trained well, but surely everyone can feel the power gap. Zeke looked toward Rhett and evaluated silently. Even so, that guy? It's been a long time since I've seen that face. He chuckled inwardly. He had some skill during the entrance exam back then, but I didn't expect him to reach the 3-star rank at his age. He must have trained very hard. Impressive, impressive. Retton also caught Zeke's gaze. He gritted his teeth and said, why is he? Suddenly, some students in the stands cried out, hey, look, isn't that Rangi's? Why is that dropout standing over there? Raymond turned to reassure him. Rangi's, are you okay? He stammered, I'm fine. Teach called out again. Next, the representative of the North Hall. Edgies exclaimed, it's our turn. After he went up to draw, the instructor called again. Good. Next, the representative of the South Hall. After the South Hall representative finished drawing, Teach called out finally. The representative of the East Hall. Leica said to Zeke, hey, Zeke, they're calling you. He asked blankly, me? She replied, of course, because you're the strongest among us, Zeke. The others nodded in agreement, but Zeke looked confused. No, these events should be left to the kids. Leica waved her hand and said, what? We're the same age, just go up there already. Seeing Zeke step up, Sandy questioned, "Wait, why is that bastard child going instead of Leica?" She replied, "Because he is the strongest among us." Hearing this, she expressed disbelief. "Are you joking? He's not even at 3 stars. Sandy continued, "This is also a succession war between me and Veniel, you know. In this situation, you—" But Leica interrupted. "It's okay, sister," she said confidently. "We are very strong." Instructor Teach continued. "Now, representatives of each hall, please channel your true inner strength into the stones you just drew." Zeke held out the stone and looked at it. The stones held by the 4 hall representatives all simultaneously glowed with blue and red colors. Teach announced, "This will decide the group pairings. The first match is East Hall against North Hall." He continued, "And West Hall against South Hall." Rangi's thought to himself, "North Hall." He shifted his gaze to look at a large and fierce-looking guy on the opposing team. Leica replied, "Well, yeah, but—" She muttered, "I didn't expect to face Sister Sandy right in the first round." Sandy spoke boldly. "Reika, this is a good opportunity to help you snap out of it." She pointed her hand directly at Leica and said, "I will crush you completely, and then you'll remember your place and your purpose." Though she was a bit worried, she still strongly declared war. "Bring it on." Edgy said with a smile, "Hi, it looks like we'll be fighting you first. I'm really looking forward to it." Zeke replied comfortably, "Let's have a proper match. It seems we're a good fit." He responded, "I'm also really looking forward to this match." Veniel sat arrogantly in the stands. The students from other halls did the same. The instructor announced, "The first match, East Hall versus North Hall." Zeke and Edgy smiled at each other. Rick clenched his fist and said, "Master Zeke, I will definitely win." Leica worriedly said, "I don't know if Rick is okay, he looks so tense." And Zeke replied, "Yeah." Teach turned to both sides and asked, "Are both sides ready, then?" He raised his hand high and signaled, "Begin." Rick immediately jumped forward and threw a punch at his opponent. Zeke crossed his arms to watch and said, "Now then, let's see how it goes." Leica beside him asked, "I can tell just by looking that it'll be tough, right?" He replied, "In combat, there is no such thing as a guarantee." Zeke turned to Leica and said confidently, "Except for me, obviously, my victory is absolute." Hearing this, she replied, "I wasn't talking about you." He turned back to focus on the match and evaluated. Regardless, in terms of skill alone, the North Hall fighter isn't much different from Rick. Therefore, as long as he fights normally, he'll be able to win. Leica responded, "Normally?" "True, but this is the first time we've fought in front of so many people, and there's the pressure of representing the whole team." Meanwhile, in the battle, Rick seemed to be getting attacked more and was being injured. Zeke said with a smile, "That's true, but for them." He remarked on Sandy and Edgy's, "Those two are the exceptions." "I guess so," Leica added, and he continued, "Those two have almost reached the 4-star rank." Zeke continued, "They won't be easily shaken like that." He thought to himself, Leica's cousin Sandy probably uses techniques from the same bloodline, right? This will be a good experience for Leica. As the match ended, Rick had been completely defeated. He lay face down on the ground covered in wounds. The instructor announced, "That's it. First match goes to North Hall." Seeing this, Marin cried out in fear, "I have to win." "Marin," Leica comforted her, "don't be too tense, you'll be fine." After a while, Teach announced again, "Second match goes to North Hall." Both Marin and Rick were beaten until they had bumps on their heads. They tremblingly and tearfully said to Zeke, "Master Zeke, we're sorry." He interrupted, "You were completely overwhelmed by the arena atmosphere, weren't you?" Both whispered, "Yes, we're sorry." Zeke reassured them, "It's okay. If this were a real battlefield where your heads were on the line, it would be different." He said with a smile, "But this is a place to learn by testing your strength, not a place to kill each other. Lessons like today's can only be experienced safely here." Zeke tried to lift their spirits by advising, "This failure will become nourishment for you on a real battlefield in the future. Sharpen your skills." Marin and Rick said in unison, "Yes, sir." He continued, "But even so, we've lost 2 matches in a row, right? So the next match will be very important, won't it?" He turned to ask, "Right, Rangi's." Hearing this, he panicked, "Don't make me even more tense. I've been worried to death since this morning." Rangi's hesitated, and even worse, he looked at the most fierce-looking member of the North team. Rangi's hugged Zeke and cried, "My opponent is that terrifying senior. I'm scared to death." He asked him back, "You fought a senior before when we formed a team, right?" Rangi's wailed, "None of the East Hall seniors are that scary. Fighting a terrifying opponent in front of this massive crowd." Zeke remarked while patting his head, "Oh my God." He held his shoulders and asked, "Rangi's, look at your opponent. What weapon does he use?" He looked over at him and replied, "Let's see. A sword, I think." Zeke then said with a smile, "Exactly. You are fighting someone holding a sword, don't think about anything else. If he thrusts, parry." He continued, if he slashes upward, back off. If he strikes downward, step in and thrust. Zeke instructed, just focus on dealing with the weapon right in front of you, just like always. Rangi's eyes turned bright as if finding a truth. He muttered, just like always. Zeke smiled at Rangi's and evaluated silently. Rangi's ability to focus is truly impressive, but right now he still needs a little guidance to keep his mind steady. Once he can enter that state naturally, he'll go even further. He thought, I wonder how much he'll improve after this match. Meanwhile, the students in the stands continued to speak with contempt toward Rangi's. Look at that size difference. How can that skinny kid compete? It seemed those words became the motivation that pushed Rangi's, making him angry and more serious. Teach shouted loudly, begin. As soon as the match started, the opponent charged straight at Rangi's with his sword. He unleashed a move. Three-leaf sword style, fastest blade. Facing the large blade in front of him, Rangi's showed no sign of flinching. He easily avoided his opponent's attack. Seeing this, he roared, don't think you can escape. He unleashed another move. Three-leaf sword style, double fang branch toward Rangi's. This time he leaped up to avoid the strike. Leica called out worriedly, Rangi's. Selene remarked, the opponent is closing in to cut off Rangi's preferred range. Raymond turned to ask, Master Zeke, is Rangi's okay? He smiled and replied, no need to worry, just look into Rangi's eyes. He said he is more focused. At the same time, Rangi's also dodged his opponent's next attack. Zeke emphasized, than ever before. Despite the opponent unleashing consecutive ultimate moves, three-leaf sword style, leaf storm dance, Rangi's remained incredibly focused, his eyes becoming bright. Rangi's employed a technique, cloud water spear style, flowing clouds and water, and countered the opponent's move. Seeing this, he gasped in shock, what? While Rangi's continued to strike, cloud water spear style, furious internal current. He actually sent the opponent flying, causing him to collapse and foam at the mouth. Instructor Teach announced, the match is over. Third match, East Hall wins. Rangi sweated anxiously and exclaimed, thank goodness. While Zeke smiled confidently and said, well then, let's start flipping the script. East Electric's winning streak grew ever stronger as Celine took victory in the fourth match. Their lead stretched further when Raymond won the fifth match. Soon after, the sixth match began, and Leica's opponent turned out to be her own older sister, Sandy. Leica gave a small greeting and remarked lightly that it had been a long time since the two sisters faced each other in the arena. Both used lightning-style swordsmanship, but their styles were completely different. Sandy admitted she was quite surprised that the North Electric elites had lost to a bunch of young students not even up to 3-star level yet. Leica calmly replied that, as she'd said before, her friends were very strong. Sandy scoffed, agreeing that she had indeed underestimated them. However, she emphasized that Leica's friends weren't the real issue between the sisters. A blaze of golden aura burst around Sandy, enveloping the arena in terrifying pressure. Leica's face tightened slightly, showing surprise and visible tension. Sandy declared that Leica's friends had nothing to do with this. If she wanted to become head of the family, she needed overwhelming power of her own. Yet currently she ranked only second in East Electric. Sandy asked back whether her sister really understood how precarious her position was. Leica answered that she understood her position very well, her gaze flicking towards Zeke, who stood watching from outside the ring. Then she affirmed she had never abandoned the idea of becoming family head, nor given up the goal of surpassing Sandy. She believed that with her current strength, she could definitely defeat her sister. Sandy merely said she wanted to witness that confidence with her own eyes. The moment Sandy activated her ability, her body vanished from Leica's sight. The sudden move horrified the audience. In the next instant, Sandy appeared right behind Leica, her voice whispering at her ear, I want to see that so-called power of yours. Leica reacted lightning fast, raising her sword to parry. But Sandy was a step quicker, suddenly bending low and moving to the front of her. From that unexpected angle, she launched another extremely nimble attack. As the two swords clashed repeatedly in a furious rain of blade energy, edges watched from afar and judged that Sandy clearly held absolute advantage. He wondered how Leica could possibly defend against someone who used the same greatsword lightning style, but was far more skilled. Sandy unleashed a powerful move called Judgment. The strike connected, leaving a fresh wound across Leica's side. Seeing her injured, Selene and Marin panicked. Leica quickly backed away a few steps, reassuring herself that she was fine. She realized the wound was only a shallow scratch. She just needed a moment to catch her breath. Rangi's couldn't help but marvel at Sandy's terrifying power, astonished that Leica was being forced back so quickly. Raymond added that he had heard Sandy was the one who had trained Leica since childhood. The moment of pause was very brief. Leica charged forward to attack once again. Sandy dodged easily, while calmly remarking that Leica still hadn't fixed her old bad habit, swinging her sword wildly whenever she was pushed into a corner. Leica ignored the mockery and continued to press her attack. The two lightning-based auras collided repeatedly, the sound of clashing metal ringing out piercingly. The strength of the two clashed violently, creating a powerful explosion right in the middle of the arena. When the dust and smoke cleared, Leica had sustained several new wounds from the recent exchange. Sandy coldly observed that, as she had predicted, Leica's bad habits had not improved at all. She said Leica couldn't even become #1 in her own main hall. Sandy added that if Leica had joined the North Hall from the beginning, she absolutely would not have let her sister's skills decline to this extent. Despite her injuries, Leica slowly stood up and coldly declared, "The match isn't over yet." Sandy advised her sister to surrender, stating bluntly that with her current strength, Leica had no chance of winning. She even muttered that if she had known it would turn out like this, she should have asked their father to force Leica to transfer to the North Hall long ago. Leica remained silent, only slowly raising her sword once more, her attitude resolute and refusing to submit. Sandy sighed at her sister's stubbornness and decided she had to teach her a truly stern lesson. In another flash of light, Sandy vanished again and appeared behind Leica. Her body crackled with electric light as she prepared to launch a new assault. Just as Leica raised her sword in defense, Sandy abruptly changed her technique, delivering a sharp kick to her side, knocking Leica off balance. With her defense broken, Sandy immediately launched an unrelenting barrage of attacks, leaving countless wounds on Leica's body. From outside the field, Selene and the others were extremely worried. Zeke alone remained calm. He realized Leica looked like she was on the verge of breaking through some kind of barrier. As Sandy prepared for her next offensive, she once again advised Leica to surrender. Then she performed the first secret technique of the lightning-based greatsword style, enveloping Leica in a massive golden storm of electricity. The entire stands went silent, everyone thinking that this powerful strike had ended the match. But Sandy watched in shock as Leica slowly stood up from within the fatting light. Leica's voice rang out calmly, "Now I finally understand the true power of your technique, sister." Sandy couldn't hide her horror, asking how Leica was still standing. She was certain that the previous blow should have been the finisher. Leica admitted her sister was right. If she were the same person she was 5 years ago, she certainly would have fallen to that strike. But she explained that over the past 5 years, she had never stopped training. The match between the two sisters was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Before the match started, Zeke realized Leica wasn't her usual self. He quietly asked if anything was wrong. Sensing her mood, Zeke guessed she was tense. Leica admitted that was true because her opponent this time was none other than her own sister, Sandy. Zeke listened, his expression showing interest. Leica recounted that Sandy was the first person to teach her the lightning-based greatsword style. Although she had learned the basics from her uncle, the head of the Typhona family, the person she always turned to whenever she faced difficulties was her sister. Whenever a technique was too difficult to understand, Leica would run to Sandy for guidance. In other words, Sandy was her true mentor. Zeke nodded slowly, beginning to understand the situation better. Leica let out a heavy sigh, confessing that in all the time the two sisters had sparred, she had never won against Sandy even once. She knew well that for every hour she spent training over the last 5 years, her sister had spent just as much time. Even though she had acted confident before, she now didn't dare to be certain she could win. Zeke's voice remained calm and steady as he told her to remember their own training sessions. He reminded her to think back on the long 5 years they had spent together, pushing each other's limits. However, as soon as Leica remembered those training sessions, her face immediately contorted in annoyance. Zeke chuckled softly, joking, "Was training with me that terrible?" Then he turned serious again, reminding her that Leica's biggest weakness had always been letting her emotions take over during fierce battles. That was why for the past 5 years, their training had focused on only one thing, teaching her to remain calm and composed even in the heat of combat. Leica grumbled in agreement, remembering how Zeke had never hesitated to attack her during their sessions. He only winked, saying that was the true fighting spirit. His joke made Leica even more annoyed, and she snapped back asking what kind of spirit he was talking about. Zeke continued to smile, saying that the results of those training sessions were beginning to show clearly. Now she could calmly analyze every move of her opponent, even while under attack. Leica admitted he might be right, but still doubted if it was enough to deal with her sister. Zeke reassured her that she would soon know the answer. A warrior with her talent, once she truly learned how to observe her opponent, would understand just how terrifying the power of that ability could be. He added that she shouldn't forget who had trained her, him, the strongest. With that kind of training, past results no longer mattered. Lika looked at him, seeing how he spoke as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Finally, a small smile returned to her face. She thanked Zeke for helping her regain her composure before the match. Zeke suddenly asked curiously if Sandy really was the one who taught her the lightning swordsmanship. When Lika confirmed it, a new thought seemed to flash in his mind. He said this was the perfect opportunity for her. She just needed to treat this match exactly like her training sessions with him. Observe every one of Sandy's techniques carefully. If she could do that, she would certainly become much stronger. Returning to the present, Lika's voice echoed throughout the arena. She declared that throughout the past match, she had observed her sister's lightning greatsword style extremely closely. She had even intentionally taken Sandy's attacks to study them, until she finally began to see through the techniques she once admired. Sandy looked at her sister, completely bewildered by what she had just heard. In the moment of Sandy's confusion, Lika charged forward. Her sword moved with incredible speed, leaving shimmering afterimages behind. That illusion made Sandy unable to distinguish whether Lika's sword was slowing down or had stopped entirely. That brief moment of hesitation was all Lika needed to land a clean, direct hit. While Sandy was still dazed by the sudden counterattack, Lika immediately took advantage, unleashing a relentless series of sword strikes accompanied by violent lightning. Her sister had no choice but to desperately defend against every powerful blow. As Lika lunged again, Sandy could only wonder to herself what was happening. She couldn't understand how her sister had suddenly become so terrifyingly fast. Lika even tried to mimic Sandy's signature finishing move, Judgment, but the attempt failed. She quickly realized her mistake. She hadn't been able to copy the subtle rhythmic changes her sister performed naturally. Now understanding the missing piece, she only needed to apply it. Sandy smirked, asserting that such a level of skill wasn't something that could be mimicked after seeing it just once. From outside the field, Rangis and the others stared in shock, completely overwhelmed by the incredible change in Lika's fighting style. Zeke only gave a satisfied smile. It was just as he had predicted. Fighting an opponent of the same school always brings the deepest insights. When Rick asked if he understood what was going on, Zeke nodded. He explained that Lika was learning her sister's moves right in the middle of the match. That was the direct result of their training, the ability to stay calm and analyze the opponent even under immense pressure. Rick listened, his expression gradually showing understanding. As the battle continued, Zeke added that previously Lika would easily lose her cool, focusing only on her own sword. But she was different now. She now possessed the ability to observe and learn from her opponent during the engagement, helping her rise to an entirely new level of power. Sandy still refused to accept it, screaming that such a half-baked imitation could absolutely never defeat her. But after a thunderous clash between lightning and steel, Sandy was sent flying backward. Her face showed extreme horror as she realized she was being completely overpowered. Lika lunged again, her voice filled with newfound strength. Over these years, I've trained to the point of exhaustion, nearly dying at the hands of a certain someone. As she gathered a massive storm of lightning around her sword, Lika told Sandy that this was the true power of the lightning greatsword style. With one final shout, she unleashed a great lightning technique. The terrifying scale of the strike made Sandy's eyes go wide. A surging torrent of golden electricity enveloped the entire arena in a blinding light. When the blinding light faded, Lika was still standing, though she was panting heavily. Sandy struggled to get up, looked at her sister, and admitted that Lika had truly grown strong. Afterward, her strength gave out and she collapsed to the ground. Lika was declared the winner. Even Venel stared in shock, unable to believe the power Lika had just displayed in defeating Sandy. When Lika returned to her friends, Zeke greeted her with a proud smile, saying it seemed his own match wouldn't be necessary anymore. Lika smiled radiantly, happy to have brought the victory to the team. She added that if she had lost, the person who would have had to face Edgies in the next match would have been Zeke. That name immediately caught Zeke's attention. He asked if she knew Edgies. Lika shook her head, explaining that she didn't know him personally, but his reputation had spread far and wide. Edgies was known everywhere as the greatest genius the Van Blade family had ever produced. Zeke's gaze turned toward the silent opponent. He thought to himself that with such a powerful aura, that reputation was well-deserved. Lika also added that even for someone like Zeke, a battle with Edgies would be very dangerous, with no guarantee of victory. Before anyone could say more, the referee stepped into the middle of the arena. He announced that even though the East Hall had won, the matches would continue until every fighter had their turn on the field. Both Rangis and Zeke were surprised by this unexpected announcement. Marin spoke up in confusion, saying she thought the competition would end once a team secured 4 victories. Zeke remained silent, his eyes fixed on Mentric and Edges. He couldn't help but feel that the two of them were plotting something. Nevertheless, a familiar thought overrode his concern. No matter what they were planning, it didn't matter. As long as he had the chance to fight, that was enough. Edges admitted that even though the North Hall had lost, he was still very happy to have the chance to duel Zeke. Zeke asked back if he really wanted to fight that much. Edges immediately confirmed it, explaining that he was interested because Zeke was the representative for the East Hall. Even with Lady Lika present, Zeke was the one chosen as the representative. That alone made Edges extremely curious about his true identity. He added that although Zeke came from the Patriarch's bloodline, his senses told him that Zeke was only at the 2-star level. However, Zeke being chosen as the representative over the 3-star Lady Lika was the main reason Edges wanted to test him. Zeke listened in silence to everything Edges said. After a moment, he spoke up. "I have a feeling we're going to get along." He had also been looking forward to crossing swords with Edges. Edges asked suspiciously if Zeke was being serious. Zeke affirmed that he was completely serious. Although there were many masters at this event, Edges still stood out the most. Zeke had heard rumors that he was called a once-in-a-century genius, despite his young age. It was because of that reputation that he truly wanted to directly measure Edges' strength through a battle. A smile slowly spread across Edges' face. He slowly drew his katana, saying that he was becoming more and more excited. Zeke's eyes focused on his opponent's weapon. It had been a very long time since he had encountered someone using a katana. The moment Mentric declared the start of the match, Edges lunged towards Zeke with incredible speed. The sudden burst of speed took Zeke by surprise, but at the same time it filled him with excitement. With just a single step, Edges had closed a massive distance. Zeke couldn't help but secretly admire his opponent's impressive footwork. Edges smiled confidently as he unleashed a technique from the Heavenly Sword style, 9 swords, aiming his strike directly at Zeke. Zeke was momentarily stunned when his perception of Edges' katana seemed to vanish completely from his senses. However, right before the invisible attack could connect with his body, it was Edges himself who was startled when his blade only slashed through a phantom afterimage. Edges quickly realized that Zeke had evaded the blow by twisting his body at the very last second. He admitted to himself that he had been absolutely certain the strike would land. Zeke simply smiled, praising the excellent strike and encouraging Edges to show him even more. Without a moment's hesitation, Edges moved with blinding speed again. He unleashed another technique called Sword Wave, aiming straight for Zeke. As he observed the incoming attack, Zeke silently noted that Edges' sword paths were incredibly difficult to read. Suddenly, something happened that was completely outside his expectations. Zeke realized an attack was surging up from beneath the ground, a move he absolutely had not anticipated. Despite this, Zeke maintained his composure. He praised Edges' skill, stating that while he had no intention of letting himself be cut, his opponent's swordplay was indeed terrifyingly unpredictable. At this point, Zeke was certain of one thing: Edges was a true genius. He could continuously alter his attack patterns without losing a shred of speed or power. His internal energy flowed flawlessly, with no wasted movement, creating sharp strikes that perfectly synchronized with Zeke's breathing and rhythm. Zeke knew well that such a level could not be achieved without undergoing brutal training. Meanwhile, Edges watched as Zeke continued to successfully evade every single one of his attacks. He couldn't believe he hadn't landed a single scrap. Edges praised his opponent, admitting Zeke was truly amazing, and asked what kind of training he had gone through. Zeke only asked back if Edges really wanted to know, then casually invited him to train together after the match ended. A moment later, the momentum shifted. Zeke abruptly closed the distance and took the initiative to attack. His eyes flashed with determination as he threw a heavy punch straight at Edges. Edges immediately raised his katana to block the blow, but the raw power behind the punch made his entire body tremble violently. He couldn't believe this was the strength of someone supposedly ranked at only 2 stars. Zeke glanced at the wound on his fist. He had tried to change his breathing to throw off Edges' rhythm, but his opponent had adapted quickly. He had to admit that Edges was even more exceptional than he had first thought. Edges remarked that Zeke was finally making a move. He asked if that meant Zeke was finished observing his techniques. Zeke replied that, essentially, he was. The answer made Edges wonder privately just how much his opponent had seen through. Immediately after, Edges unleashed another lightning-fast attack. As Zeke observed the incoming strike, it looked identical to the previous ones, but at the exact moment the blade was about to touch him, his eyes suddenly widened in surprise. Using the dark shadow-style directional shift technique, Edges abruptly altered the sword's trajectory. The shift was so fast that Zeke couldn't react in time, and Edgy's katana grazed a line across his chest. Having finally landed a hit, Edgy's asked if he still needed to show more to meet Zeke's expectation. Zeke put his hand over the wound on his chest, finding it hard to believe Edgy's had actually managed to injure him. Even so, a wide smile slowly spread across his face. He thought to himself, this battle is getting more and more interesting. While the fierce battle between Zeke and Edgy's raged on, Sandy slowly regained consciousness as her awareness returned. Her teammates rushed to her side, their faces filled with worry as they asked if she was all right. Sandy reassured them that she was fine. Then the reality of the match truly sank in. She had lost to Lika, but as she recalled how the match ended and how Lika had surpassed her, Sandy let out a soft sigh, followed by a small smile. Despite her defeat, she felt true pride in her younger sister's new strength and was satisfied with how the battle between them concluded. She turned to her teammates and sincerely apologized. She felt that if she had won that match, their team might still have had a chance to claim the special mission. Her teammates immediately protested, saying they were the ones who should apologize. They felt they had become a burden to both Sandy and Edgy's. Everyone bowed their heads in shame, but Sandy stopped them. She spoke sternly, saying it wasn't their fault. Their opponent this time was simply too strong. She explained that this only meant they needed to train even harder to ensure something similar wouldn't happen again. Those words visibly lifted everyone's spirits, and a new sense of determination filled the group. Sandy turned her attention to the tournament bracket. She asked if the match between the West Hall and South Hall had started yet. A teammate pointed toward the arena. For some reason, the previous match was still ongoing, and according to what everyone saw, it was an unbelievable sight. Sandy followed their gaze and saw two figures clashing with a frenzied momentum. A shiver of shock ran down her spine as she tried to process what was happening. She recognized Edgy's technique immediately. He was using the five-sword chi, a clear sign that he was fighting with everything he had. Sandy's eyes were glued to the incredible confrontation between Zeke and Edgy's. The words Lika had said earlier echoed in her mind. Out of everyone, Zeke is the strongest. Sandy remained silent. At the time, she hadn't truly believed it, but now, seeing it with her own eyes, she knew Lika was right. Inside the arena, Edgy's executed a technique from the Heavenly War style, manifesting 5 illusory sword chi blades that lunged straight at Zeke. However, Zeke evaded them with ease. Beads of sweat rolled down Edgy's face. He couldn't believe even that technique had failed. Furthermore, after such a long battle, Zeke wasn't even out of breath. He couldn't help but wonder exactly how Zeke's body had been trained. Zeke's answer was very simple. There's nothing special about me. I've just undergone grueling basic physical conditioning. He explained that while techniques were important, the foundation was the root of true power. Edgy's took those words to heart. If that was the case, he decided he would focus much more on physical training from now on. With renewed resolve, Edgy's launched a continuous series of strikes at Zeke. Using only his 2 arms, Zeke smashed through every incoming sword chi blade. Meanwhile, he analyzed Edgy's power. The hardness, sharpness, speed, and range of those blades were all impressive, reaching an advanced level. Considering Edgy's age, Zeke saw incredible potential. This young man would certainly become an extraordinary existence in the future. A faint smile touched Zeke's lips. The battle with Edgy's finally helped him realize something important: the fundamental difference in combat styles between his era and the present. He remembered that 1,000 years ago, martial arts focused on the movements of the body itself. The goal was to express the universe through technique, with internal energy serving only as a secondary tool. But in this new era, everything was reversed. Warriors manifested their energy directly and used it as the primary medium to express their martial arts. In other words, mastery of internal energy had become the core of modern martial arts. While easily dodging the incoming blows, Zeke realized he had been foolish. He had been too focused on the form of the techniques and had overlooked this fundamental shift in philosophy. Even so, the evolution over a millennium felt more fascinating than he could have ever imagined. Edgy's continued his relentless assault, but dread began to rise within him. He realized Zeke was perfectly neutralizing every single one of his moves. There was only one conclusion: Zeke wasn't human. He was something else entirely. From the sidelines, Rangus and the others grew increasingly anxious. He noted that the match had lasted over an hour with no sign of ending. Lika remained calm. She simply said that neither of them were ordinary people, but she had a feeling the battle would end soon. Edgy stopped his attack, an expression of realization on his face. He told Zeke it seemed his observation was finished. Zeke didn't deny it, admitting that this match had truly been an amazing experience. Edgy's agreed that he felt the same way. Zeke then declared that, out of respect for his opponent, He would use exactly what he had just learned from this battle to create a new technique. Having spoken, he slowly clenched his fist. A terrifying pressure suddenly enveloped Edgy's. Edgy's let out a short, almost breathless laugh. Now he understood. This was the reason he couldn't win. Despite this, he refused to surrender. Edgy's poured every last drop of his strength into a final ultimate technique, 5-sword absolute kill, vowing to fight to the end. But before Edgy's could unleash his strike, Zeke shot high into the air. He hovered briefly in midair, gathering a massive amount of energy into his clenched fist. Then he unleashed it. A rain of massive golden fistoras plummeted down, covering the entire arena. It was a new technique, a variation of the dragon breaking punch that he named Punching Star. Consecutive explosions rang out, tearing the ground apart. The spectating students scrambled backward in a panic, terrified by the scale of the attack. The final wave of fist chi slammed directly down on Edgy's. A massive explosion erupted, making the entire stadium shake to its very foundations. Raymond instinctively raised his guardian shield to protect his teammates, his eyes wide with amazement at the display of raw power. Sandy stood frozen, her mind unable to process what she had just witnessed. She only whispered the question, "Who won?" At that exact moment, the referee's voice echoed across the area, declaring the match finished. As the thick smoke began to clear, the first thing everyone saw was Edgy's katana shattered into pieces. Edgy's lay in a deep crater, laughing weakly. He couldn't lift a single finger. Edgy's admitted defeat, acknowledging Zeke's overwhelming power and realizing how much more effort he needed to put in. A smile appeared on Zeke's face as the victory was officially awarded to the East Hall. The stands erupted in shocked murmurs. No one could understand the battle they had just seen, nor could they believe a genius like Edgy's had been so thoroughly defeated. Metric announced a postponement of the matches. The arena needed to be repaired before the next match between the West Hall and South Hall could begin. He requested the other teams to stand ready. Rangus and the entire team were overjoyed, their faces a mix of pure happiness and admiration. They had never imagined Zeke would actually defeat Edgy's. Lika calmly remarked that Zeke had destroyed the arena once again, adding that he was truly an eccentric person in many respects. Zeke asked what she was implying, then waved it off, saying the most important thing was that he had won. He quickly changed the subject, telling everyone they should focus on the upcoming match between the West Hall and South Hall. Lika agreed immediately. She added that this match was particularly important because another candidate for the head of the family position would be participating, Venel Fafnerald Eldragon. Zeke looked at the ruined arena and asked Rangus if he had been a bit too heavy-handed. He couldn't imagine how they would fix all the damage in such a short time. Rangus only smiled and told him not to worry, gesturing for Zeke to look at one side of the arena. Zeke's eyes widened in surprise. The arena was self-repairing at an incredible speed. He asked how it could recover so quickly. Rangus explained that the entire arena structure was built from a rare material called etherite. When infused with energy, this stone could automatically return to its original, undamaged state. Zeke understood immediately. It was yet another amazing invention that had appeared during the 1,000 years he was gone. Returning to the next battle, Veniel was the one taking the field. Seeing this, Zeke said with interest, "The West Hall seems to have the highest overall quality of fighters. However, the South Hall also has someone who looks very strong. I wonder how it'll turn out." He smiled with pure anticipation. But things turned out completely contrary to Zeke's expectations. The match between the West Hall and the South Hall was an entirely one-sided affair. As the match concluded, a strange and uneasy feeling rose in instructor Metric's heart. Veniel, the winner, stood calmly in the center of the arena. His opponent had been defeated so quickly and thoroughly that it looked like a staged fight. Even Veniel wondered if there was any meaning in continuing. Metric's voice finally broke the crowd's stunned silence. He officially declared the match over, with the West Hall as the winner. Then, he announced that the final match between the East Hall and the West Hall would take place in 1 hour. With that declaration, the stage for the final deciding battle of the tournament was set. As medical personnel carried Veniel's unconscious opponent off the field, the other students could only stare in a state of daze. They were all overwhelmed by the display of absolute power. Zeke and his team also watched the scene with serious expressions. While Lika exclaimed that the power was terrifying, Zeke only said softly, "Something is wrong." In his mind, the match kept replaying. Something wasn't right. The gap in their abilities clearly wasn't that massive. But for some reason, the girl's energy flow had become incredibly sluggish. Looking at this situation, it was certain that something abnormal had happened, and that was the reason it ended in such a one-sided result. From his seat, Zeke noticed the instructor's pensive expression, and understood that he, too, felt something was off about the match. Raymond was also completely confused. He couldn't believe Lady Lila of the Sonar family had been defeated so miserably. Another teammate guessed that maybe it was just because the opponent was Venial. This was the first time they had seen Venial fight in person, and the performance left everyone feeling intimidated. Rick tried to encourage everyone's spirits. He reminded them that while Venial was strong, they had Zeke and Lika on their side, and that was what mattered. Rick noticed Rangus looked very dejected and asked what was wrong. Rangus explained that although Venial had defeated his opponent alone, Venial's team had also won all their matches. He bowed his head, feeling ashamed. He apologized, saying he was just a bit stressed, but Marin, who was listening, chimed in. She admitted her own failure, saying that as much as it annoyed her, she was no match for the West Hall students. They were simply on another level. Rick added sadly that the South Hall team had been defeated so quickly. They didn't even have time to see the opponent's techniques clearly. Fed up with the gloomy complaining, Rick clenched his fists, his resolve returning. He spoke loudly to get everyone's attention, declaring they had come too far to give up. He said their only option was to win, and he believed they could do it. Zeke stood watching from a short distance. A small smile appeared on his face as he saw the team's fighting spirit return. Then he turned his gaze to Lika, who had been silent this whole time. He knew that witnessing Venial's terrifying power must have been very unsettling for her. Lika was staring into the distance, her pride clearly wounded. Zeke felt he should talk to her, but he had no easy answers, so he chose not to offer any hasty advice. Rangus went over to ask Lika if she was okay. Lika thanked him for his concern, then turned and walked away. Zeke watched her go. He knew Lika was looking for a quiet place to compose herself. Finally, she came to a peaceful garden and sat down by a large fountain. Looking down at the still water, her mind drifted back to the recent match. She couldn't accept that Venial had become strong enough to defeat Lila so easily. She knew well that even Edgies couldn't have overwhelmed Lila like that without sustaining injuries. Her own reflection in the water seemed to stir old, painful memories. Lika dipped her hand into the cool water, the ripples spreading out like the chaotic thoughts in her head. A memory surfaced, the last time she had fought Venial. She had been only 5 years old and had lost miserably. Since that day, she had never stopped trying to take her revenge. Just when she thought she had finally caught up to him, he had once again slipped far beyond her reach. She thought about the tournament bracket and realized Venial's next opponent would likely be Zeke. A flicker of relief passed through her, knowing she wouldn't have to face him. But almost immediately, that relief turned into a surge of anger at herself. Lika clenched her fist in the water. Water splashed over the edge of the fountain, like the violent waves surging in her heart. She hated her own weakness. Feeling relief was the same as admitting defeat. She swore to herself that no matter what, she would defeat him. At that exact moment, a voice from behind shattered the silence. Venial saw her from across the garden. He and his companion approached with arrogant smiles on their faces. He mockingly asked why she looked so serious. Lika turned around, her eyes narrowing with intense irritation. She coldly asked him what he wanted. Venial stepped closer, telling her not to be so cold. He said he just wanted to congratulate her on her recent victory. Lika tried to ignore him and turned to walk away. Venial quickly closed the distance, whispering in her ear. He said he noticed how she was staring at him during the match. He accused her of being afraid of losing to him again. Those words were like venom, striking directly at Lika's deepest insecurities. He then grabbed her shoulder, forcing her to listen. He demanded she admit that she could never defeat him and should just surrender and submit. Having heard enough, Lika finally lost her temper. She spun around and forcefully brushed his hand off her shoulder. Venial didn't flinch. A dark, mocking smile spread across his face. He smirked and told her she wasn't adorable at all. Then he glanced down at his hand and whispered softly, "You're finished." With those final cold words, he turned to his companion and asked if he knew what to do next. He simply replied, "Leave it to me." The companion then asked what their plan was for the bastard they were about to face. Venial seemed unconcerned, saying they would settle it during the fight. However, the companion was more cautious. Alan sensed that Zeke was no ordinary opponent and suggested they prepare additional precautions. Venial was forced to agree, admitting that Zeke indeed possessed very sharp instincts. It would be quite troublesome if he discovered their plan. An image of Zeke briefly flashed in his mind. He recalled the overwhelming power the opponent had shown in the match against Edgies. He also clearly remembered that Zeke seemed to have intentionally taken some hits. Venial and his companion exchanged knowing glances, then lightly bumped fists as a silent agreement. Venial reached down toward the fountain. A strange purple liquid began to seep from his fingertips, merging into the clear water. Don't worry, I will defeat Zeke in this match, and I will crush him completely. The final match has finally arrived. Rick clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the moment clearly. He knew they were facing the elites of the West Hall, a team notorious for bullying the weak. His confidence began to waver as he wondered if they actually had a chance to win. Doubt crept into his mind, dispelling the determination he had just regained. Suddenly, a sharp slap to the back of the neck startled Rick. "Idiot," Zeke barked loudly. "Where did all that passion from a moment ago go?" Zeke looked at him with a look that was completely unimpressed. He looked Rick straight in the eye. "Are you fighting with the mindset of a loser?" Zeke said sternly that a real battle requires an absolute will to win, no matter who the opponent is. Those words struck Rick's heart. "To win," he muttered, his resolve hardening once more. "You've trained hard, haven't you?" Zeke smirked. "Then have some confidence." "All right," Rick thanked him, his fighting spirit blazing brightly again. "Good," Zeke nodded. "Let me give you a tip. Relax your shoulders." Rick was stunned by that simple piece of advice. Zeke explained that the great power strike needs to concentrate all power into a single point. If you're too tense, the power scatters instead of converging. "Now relax a little," Zeke said as he personally adjusted Rick's shoulders into a better posture. That small adjustment had a big effect. Rick felt a new surge of power fill his body. "Now I feel like I can win," he cheered. "Thank you," Zeke smiled. "Go out there and win." The exchange made Lika curious. She remarked that Zeke wasn't a specialist in the great power strike, yet he understood the technique surprisingly well. It made her wonder how much he knew about different fighting styles. "Why is that?" she asked. "It sounds strange." Zeke's face turned serious, saying it wasn't a stupid question at all. Lika leaned in closer, her expression also serious, believing he would finally answer the question she had wondered about for so long. But then Zeke's serious face suddenly broke into a wide grin. He pointed his thumb at his own chest. "Because it's me." Lika's face went blank instantly. She realized she was stupid to expect a serious answer from him. "The time has come. The match is about to begin." Rick stared at his opponent. It was the extremely skilled master he had seen in the first round. He promised himself that this time he wouldn't lose. His opponent, Eden, scoffed at that confidence. He couldn't believe it. A weakling who lost to the North Hall dares to act so arrogant. "Shut up," Rick roared. "I'm not the same as I was before." Eden just smirked. "Not the same as before, huh?" Instructor Menrick announced loudly. "The first match between East Hall and West Hall begins." Eden drew his dagger, ready to prove that Rick's boasts were nothing but hot air. The opponent's charging speed on the first strike startled Rick. "You can't change in just a few hours," Eden screamed. He executed the Mantis Cut, a sharp wave of green energy flying straight at Rick. But what shocked Eden was that Rick blocked that powerful attack using only his aura. "You dare block my strike with just your aura?" Eden barked, challenging Rick to block it again. He continued to unleash his next move, Insect Light, determined to shatter Rick's defense. The strike was very strong, pushing Rick back, but he maintained his stance. "Well, what's the matter?" Eden mocked. "I thought you had changed." Rick gritted his teeth. The opponent was too strong, but he absolutely refused to give up that easily. Eden easily dodged Rick's desperate counterattack. Too slow. Eden's dagger flashed, leaving a thin, bleeding cut on Rick's cheek. He realized that if he continued like this, he would never even touch the opponent. At that moment, Zeke's advice echoed in his head. "Relax a little." He visualized Zeke's movements and remembered clearly what he said about concentrating all power into a single point. He knew what he had to do. It was all or nothing. Eden began to grow frustrated with his opponent's stubbornness and unleashed the next strike, Needle Sting. But Rick had seen through the continuous rhythm of the attack. It became familiar and predictable. The moment the sharp tip was about to touch him, a confident smile appeared on Rick's face. "All right," he whispered. Eden's eyes went wide with terror. With a move that was both desperate and clever, Rick grabbed the blade with his bare hand. "Take this," Rick roared. His other fist began to glow with surging power. He unleashed the ultimate technique, Great Power Strike. The fist containing all the concentrated power slammed directly into Eden's chest. The terrifying force sent Eden flying backward, clear across the arena. The students could only stare in stunned silence. Zeke and Lika watched as the dust began to clear. A knowing smile briefly appeared on Zeke's lips. Instructor Mentrick stepped forward and announced, "The winner is East Hall." Eden lay motionless in a small crater created by the impact. Rick looked down at his hands, his mind still unable to believe he had actually won. Then a wave of pure joy washed over him. "I did it," he shouted, thrusting a victory fist toward the sky. Meanwhile, Eden still couldn't accept what had just happened to him. He wondered if he had actually lost to someone like that. His self-esteem shattered. Trembling, he turned to look at the team leader, Veniel, to apologize. "Sir, I'm sorry," he stammered, kneeling before Veniel in shame. But Veniel just flicked his dagger, immediately sending Eden flying. The message was extremely clear and ruthless. Failure is not permitted. Veniel then swept his cold gaze over his entire team. "You all understand, don't you?" His face was completely calm as he issued the cold command. "Crush them." The whole team roared in agreement. Their spirit was now filled with brutal determination. Next was Marin's match. From the sidelines, Rick cheered her on with all his might, full of encouragement after his own victory. Marin drew her sword, her eyes locked on her opponent, a cold-looking West Hall student holding a spear. The instructor announced the start of the second match. Marin immediately charged in to attack, executing the red fire sword style. Her blade glowed with fire energy as she lunged at the opponent, but the opponent easily blocked the strike with the shaft of his spear. He continued to spin the spear in a nearly impenetrable defense, repelling Marin's consecutive attacks. She was completely overwhelmed. The opponent easily pushed her back before launching a powerful counterattack. He executed his move, Great Chaos Spear style, Furious Piercing Strike. The terrifying blow sent Marin flying backward. She landed hard on the ground, coughing up a mouthful of fresh blood. But the opponent showed no mercy, immediately continuing to attack without pause. From the sidelines, Rangiz was horrified by the brutality, wondering how someone could be so cruel. Teammates couldn't bear to watch the horrific scene. Rick roared in anger, trying to charge in, but was held back tightly by Raymond. Seeing the destructive blow, the instructor finally announced the end of the match. The winner was West Hall. The spear user stood tall over Marin's motionless body. Rick broke free and ran to her side, taking her in his arms. He called her name, asking if she was okay, but Marin's eyes remained tightly shut. Zeke just stood silently observing, his face a mask of silence. The brutal match left Marin unconscious and seriously injured. The entire East Hall team surrounded her, their faces a mix of horror and grief. Even Zeke, who usually maintained an air of indifference, could not hide his heavy expression from the stands. He knew West Hall was ruthless, but this was a different level. While the medical staff attended to Marin, the spear user coldly turned and walked away, seemingly unconcerned with the brutality he had just inflicted. Rick couldn't contain his rage and stepped up to confront him. "Hey, was there any need to go that far?" The spear user turned back with cold, contemptuous eyes and asked, "Is there a problem?" "What do you mean? This is a real battle. I was just being careful to ensure victory." Rick couldn't believe what he was hearing. "This is too much," Selene cut in, shouting loudly. The spear user just smirked. "You people are so naive." His voice was full of contempt. "We in West Hall don't hold back in battle. We simply crush the enemy, that's all." That cold philosophy came from their leader himself, Veniel. Lika stepped forward, both fists clenched. "That was Veniel's order, wasn't it?" The opponent's reply was as cold as his fighting style. "So what if it was? You can withdraw any time you want." As everyone was carrying Marin out, the spear user continued his lecture. "Don't you understand? The referee never stopped the match. She still had the will to fight, so I crushed it. Isn't that the most logical thing?" Lika was about to explode and was ready to shout, but the West Hall student cut her off, turning his back to them. "Talking to you people is a waste of time." He glanced back over his shoulder, giving a final cold warning. "Instead of worrying about a fallen teammate, worry about yourselves, because you will all suffer the same fate as her. There's still time to withdraw if you want." The next warrior from West Hall entered the arena. His name was Retin. His eyes locked onto his opponent, Rangiz. Seeing the target, Rangiz called out the opponent's name with a familiar tone full of confidence. "Retin." Retin looked down with a look of pure superiority. "Someone like you has no right to call my name so casually." He continued, "So you're not withdrawing? Fine. I won't stop you if you want to end up like that girl." Retin's smile turned sinister as he leaned down. "Or do you want me to repeat what happened in our village? Speak up, mediocre Rangiz." The taunt hit its mark. Rangiz's face darkened at the painful memory. Lika shouted his name, intending to intervene, but Rangiz raised a hand to stop her. "Lika, it's okay." He stood up from the ground, his voice trembling but firm. "I won't run away." The teammates could only watch him in worry as he prepared to face his past. With eyes full of new determination, Rangiz pointed directly at his opponent. "Today, right here, Retin, I will surpass you." Retin just looked at him with an entirely unimpressed face. Huh. As Marin was carried away on a stretcher, a heavy atmosphere filled the arena. The audience had not yet recovered from the previous brutality and now had to witness another match. Rangiz stood alone in the vast arena. The surrounding noise became a blur. His mind was in chaos, his confidence beginning to shake. Suddenly he was startled in shock. "Wait," Zeke's voice. Zeke's voice echoed. Don't worry, I'm just recreating an experience I had a few years ago. Zeke remembered his time in the library when the librarian had used a similar method on him. Now he was recreating that technique himself. This is sound transmission. Rangi's thought in a panic. I don't even know where to begin. The pressure was overwhelming him. Zeke held up a finger, getting straight to the point. More importantly, I'm using this technique to give you a piece of advice. Rangi's eyes widened in the memory. Advice. Zeke's voice became deep. There is an old saying, floating clouds move freely, flowing water stays clear. Rangi's was completely confused by the cryptic saying. Clouds. Zeke explained patiently. Floating clouds move freely, water flows without stopping. When you're backed into a corner, remember this. The words still echoed as the image faded, leaving Rangi's to face reality. Suddenly, Instructor Mentric's voice interrupted his thoughts. What are you doing? Rangi snapped back to his senses, stammering. Oh, sorry. The instructor looked at him with dissatisfaction and officially announced. The third match between East Hall and West Hall begins. The two opponents faced each other. The tension was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Retin did not hesitate, lunging forward with incredible speed. Rangus immediately counterattacked, unleashing the technique Zeke had taught him. Cloud Water Spear Arts Water Piercer. But Retin was ready. Don't get cocky, you wretched worm. He used his own attack to block it, a swirling vortex of rolling purple energy. Serpent Strike Sword Arts, Serpent Devour. The blade transformed into the shape of a ferocious, venomous snake. The two techniques clashed, but Retin's power was completely overwhelming. The serpent's fangs shattered Rangi's water piercer strike. Retin sneered, his strike continuing to push Rangi's back. Big talk for someone with such weak strength, you nobody. He kept pressing his advantage relentlessly. Here it comes again. Rangi's tried to defend, but it grew increasingly difficult. Retin unleashed the next technique from the Serpent Strike Sword Arts repertoire. What's happening? Rangi's cried out as the sword seemed to bend in midair. It was the serpent form iron, a strike far too unpredictable. It curved around Rangi's spear shaft and slashed deeply into his side. Rangi screamed in pain, staggering back. I thought I blocked it, but it changed direction. Retin mocked him incessantly. What's wrong? Try to counterattack if you can. He lunged forward again, his eyes full of malice. If you're even still able. Rangi's gritted his teeth. No way, I can do this too. Recalling Zeke's words, he tried to guide the flow of the technique. Cloud Water Spear Arts, Flying Cloud, Flowing Water. With a cruel smile, Retin easily blocked it. He knew this style like the back of his hand. Eat this, Retin roared, unleashing another consecutive wave of serpent strike attacks. The entire East Hall team watched the scene in horror and anxiety, shouting his name. Rangi struggled to stand firm, his body covered in wounds. Every move he made seemed to be anticipated by his opponent. I want to parry and counter, he thought desperately, but every movement of mine is being used against me. Retin loomed over him, his face full of disdain. Are you trying to use my own movements to counter me? Pathetic. You're making me laugh. You poor thing, do you want to know my favorite technique? It's counterattacking. Unfortunately for you, I'm 1,000 times better at this than you are. Rangi's looked up, his hope fading. Retin's taunts became more personal and vicious. I don't know what you're misunderstanding, but how could the son of a fake dragon ever become strong? He grabbed Rangi's by the hair, jerking his head back violently. In the end, you're just as useless as your father. The insult struck at a deep-seated pain. Rangi's eyes flashed with a fire of rage. How dare you insult my father? Retin only laughed loudly, his face contorted in a wicked grin. A fake dragon can never defeat a real dragon. He slammed Rangi's face into the ground, while simultaneously landing a powerful kick to his side. Rangi's collapsed, coughing up blood. The match seemed to be over. Lying on the cold stone, his body aching, Rangi's was overcome by despair. In the end, I still couldn't do it. I thought I had grown stronger. But I was wrong, I'm still this weak. A tear rolled down his cheek, mixing with the dust. In the end, I'm just a fraud after all. His mind drifted back to a peaceful day from his childhood. His father asked, Rangi's, do you like fishing? The innocent young Rangi's smiled brightly. Yes, I love it. His father smiled warmly. Yes, you're just like your father. He looked out at the water, his expression gentle. I like fishing this way, just sitting and watching the clouds reflected on the surface. He asked his son, do you like the clouds in the water? The boy replied, yes, clouds are always so peaceful and the river always flows. His father nodded. When you look at them, you realize that all human problems are just small things, they don't really matter. He placed a hand on his son's head. Maybe one day you'll understand the meaning of this, Rangi's. In the arena, Rangi's was broken and defeated, his memories fading, but those words still echoed. Clouds drift freely, water flows without end. Instructor Metric stood watching, his face unreadable. He was clearly bored of this one-sided display, but Retin refused to stop. He raised his fist, preparing to deliver the final humiliating blow. I'll end it here. You're just like your father. A fraud will always be a fraud. You'll spend your whole life on your knees begging. But those words, just like your father, did not make Rangi's collapse. On the contrary, they stirred something deep within him. A spark of insight flashed in his weary eyes. His father's voice, once a distant echo, now became incredibly clear. Clouds drift freely, water flows without end. In that moment, Rangi's understood. A blue aura exploded from his hands, taking the shape of a flowing stream. He reached out and stopped his opponent's attack dead in its tracks, startling Retin, who jumped back in panic to maintain distance, while the referee seemed to have witnessed something intriguing and broke into a smile. And before everyone's eyes, his power surged to the 3-star level. Retin stared, unable to believe it. Just moments ago, he had held absolute dominance. Rangi stood there, his body covered in wounds, but his eyes shone with a fresh clarity. A bright yellow aura surrounded him. He had awakened and leveled up right in the middle of the match. Retin's pride could not accept this. He gripped his sword, purple energy crackling around the blade. He absolutely refused to believe a fraud could match him. With a roar of rage, Retin poured all his fury into a final, desperate attack. He charged, using his signature technique once more. A storm of curving slashes enveloped the arena. It was the serpent form iron, the strike that had severely injured Rangi's earlier. But this time, everything was different. Rangi's eyes gleamed with a strange light, tracking every movement. He was no longer just reacting, he was anticipating. With a newfound fluidity, Rangi's moved between the blades. Retin was utterly shocked. He couldn't understand how Rangi's could suddenly read all of his techniques. Refusing to surrender, Retin unleashed an even more violent assault. It was a chaotic flurry of slashes intended to crush any defense. Rangi simply raised his spear calmly. He was entirely composed and focused. With a graceful motion, Rangi's guided and redirected the entire storm of slashes. He blocked the full brunt of the attack without retreating so much as half a step. Retin's face contorted in horror and panic. He screamed, asking how this was possible. His self-confidence had completely shattered. From the stands, Zeke and Lika watched intently. Lika looked worried, but Zeke only said calmly, Rangi's has drawn closer to the essence. A blue aura swirled around Rangi's. He finally understood the true meaning of the Cloud Water Spear arts, the essence of his clan. Lika didn't understand the word essence that Zeke used. Zeke explained, clouds drift freely, water flows without end. It is soft and can change its shape. Zeke continued to analyze with a hint of pride. Even though I only hinted at the concept, Rangi's mastered it right in the middle of a match in an incredibly short time. Lika looked at him, truly impressed. She thought that perhaps even Rangi's hadn't realized it, but his focus was now on a completely different level. Now it was Rangi's turn to move forward. Surrounded by a bright yellow aura, he took just one step, and the pressure became immense. Retin staggered back, his face pale with fear. The boy he used to bully had become a calm and powerful presence. He screamed at Rangi's to stay back. Retin swung his sword wildly in a desperate effort to push Rangi's away. His stance was now completely messy, his mind filled with terror. Rangi's easily parried the blows. His spear moved as smoothly as a flowing river, and he hadn't even broken a sweat. Looking closely as the two weapons clashed, the gap between them was glaringly obvious. Retin's sword trembled, while Rangi's spear tip was perfectly still, a point of absolute control. A sly smile appeared on Zeke's lips. He knew that water doesn't only flow peacefully. The energy around Rangi's began to surge. It was no longer peaceful. Retin cried out in panic as Rangi's gathered power for a final strike. Zeke's voice seemed to echo in his mind. When water turns angry, no one can resist its flow. A stream of pure energy in the shape of a turbulent river surged from Rangi's spear, aiming straight at the helpless Retin. The terrifying strike clearly displayed the true power of the Cloud Water style. Retin's scream was cut short as the surge of energy slammed him hard into the arena floor. His eyes rolled back and became lifeless as he lost consciousness. From above, Instructor Metric looked down with a satisfied expression. He declared, "The match is over." Retin lay in a crater of shattered stone, both his body and his pride in ruins. The result of the match was clear. The announcer's voice echoed through the stadium. "The winner is East Hall." Rangi's just stood there. As the adrenaline faded, he felt dazed and blurred. He looked from his hands to the devastation around him, as if waking from a dream. He was completely disoriented. Suddenly, his teammates rushed in to surround him. Lika was the first to reach him, her face radiant with joy. She congratulated him on reaching 3 stars and having an amazing victory. As everyone flocked to cheer, Rangiz was still trying to understand what happened. He stammered about 3 stars and winning the match. Lika and Selene were both smiling brightly, confirming his victory. He had really done it. He had defeated the personal enemy who had haunted him for years. He looked down at his spear, lost in thought. Defeating Retin was a personal victory even greater than the team victory. Overcome with emotion, Rangiz could no longer hold back. A tear of joy and relief rolled down his cheek. His friends pulled him out of his thoughts. Rick excitedly asked about the incredible technique he just used. Raymond chimed in, eyes wide with shock. That was insane. It was like a water dragon climbing a waterfall. Rangiz was just as confused, saying he didn't know any technique like that. The group turned to look at Zeke, who was standing with his arms crossed. Zeke explained, "That technique is called the Rising Dragon Strike." He continued, "It's in the 2nd volume of the manual, the one Rangiz hasn't read yet." Zeke praised Rangiz for realizing it on his own. Rangiz asked in shock how Zeke knew so much, making Zeke look slightly tense. Zeke quickly made an excuse that he just happened to see it in the Dragon Temple. He tried to keep a calm face, but internally his heart was racing, not daring to admit he was the one who created it. Lika seemed to believe him. While his friends celebrated, Zeke thought about the truth. The Cloudwater spear style was a martial art he had created in his previous life. He didn't remember writing it down, so someone else must have. They split it into volumes and hid the true essence from beginners. But what truly shocked him was Rangiz. He had found the path to that hidden essence all by himself, through his own power. Zeke looked at his friend with a smile of genuine pride. He knew Rangiz possessed terrifying talent. The instructor interrupted the celebration, telling them not to waste time. Selene quickly apologized, and the team immediately stood at attention again. This victory had sent the East Hall team's spirit soaring. They quickly formed their lineup, ready for the next matches. But their victory also made the West Hall team furious. The subsequent matches became more intense than ever, with neither side willing to yield. The 4th match began. Selene gave it her all, but ultimately lost by a very narrow margin. Veniel sat silently, observing the entire match. In the 5th match, Raymond stepped into the arena. He showed incredible will and determination. After a grueling battle, he secured a hard-fought victory for the East Hall. His friends helped him off the field, his body covered in wounds but full of pride. Rangiz smiled and told him he did a great job. From the stands, the girls checked the score. Selene looked sad about her loss, but Lika comforted her, saying her match was very good. Lika held up 3 fingers on one side and 2 on the other. With 3 wins and 2 losses, victory was almost within reach. She promised to win the next match to bring home the team victory. Just as she was about to leave, Zeke abruptly appeared beside her, his face close to hers. He looked directly into her eyes and asked how she was feeling. The serious tone and sudden close distance startled Lika. A flush spread rapidly across her face. Panicked, Lika stammered, asking him what was wrong. She insisted she was fine, told him not to stand so close, but promised she wouldn't lose. Rangiz cheered for Lika from the side. Zeke just stood there observing, his face showing no emotion. Lika turned back toward the arena, clenching her fist with a confident smile. She shouted that she would, of course, do her best. But Zeke was no longer paying attention to his friends. His eyes narrowed, his expression grave as he sensed something strange. The 6th match officially began, but off-field Alan, the green-haired warrior, coldly dealt with a fellow student. He called him a useless pawn, displaying a level of ruthlessness that was chilling. Stepping into the arena, Alan declared that when he won, everything would return to how it was meant to be. But his opponent was Lika, the hot-blooded blonde swordsman of the East Hall. With a confident smile, Lika shot back. "That won't happen because the winner will be me." The referee declared the start of the 6th match. This was the pivotal confrontation between the East Hall and the West Hall. Without wasting a second, Lika charged, her form vanishing from its spot and reappearing right above Alan's head. Her greatsword erupted in bright yellow lightning, ready to strike down. Alan's eyes went wide with shock. He knew Lika was fast, but this power was far beyond what he expected. The sound of clashing steel and thunder echoed through the stadium like a lightning strike. Alan managed to guide and redirect Lika's attack, but he couldn't hide his terror at the raw power in that strike. Lika quickly jumped back to create distance. Though the first blow failed, her stance was steady. Her bright yellow eyes burned with resolve. Veniel had secretly poisoned Lika during their previous contact. His hand was still dripping with eerie purple energy coiled around the spikes. In the arena, Lika suddenly felt her body turn cold. The purple energy had seeped in, quietly flickering around her lightning aura. Alan saw the opportunity and immediately pressed the attack, no longer holding back. Veniel's eyes flashed with an eerie light, a sign that the dirty trick was fully operational. Lika raised her sword to block, but her movements had become sluggish. The power in every slash had completely vanished. Alan landed a powerful kick to her stomach, sending Lika flying backward. Rangis, Selene, and everyone else could only watch in horror as their friend suddenly fell into a disadvantageous position. Even Zeke's usually calm face was replaced by a heavy frown. Lika staggered, trying to summon her power, but nothing happened. Her lightning aura, her strongest weapon, would not manifest at all. "I told you," Alan sneered, "you can't win." But Lika still refused to give up. With a desperate roar, she poured all her remaining physical strength into a final defensive strike. Her face was contorted with pain and resilience, but her spirit had not yet broken. Zeke observed and realized the horrifying truth. It wasn't just the aura. Veniel's poison had completely sealed Lika's connection to her internal energy. For a warrior, losing internal energy mid-match was a death sentence. The enhanced strength, speed, defense, everything vanished in the blink of an eye. Alan took full advantage of this weakness, his attacks becoming faster and more ruthless. Lika could only grit her teeth and endure, knowing she had to hold on for the team and her friends. From the stands, Sandy and Edgies looked down with increasing worry. Sandy cried out that Lika's movements were very strange. Edgies' sharp eyes confirmed her fears. He spoke in a low voice. "Her internal energy isn't working." The next blow sent Lika crashing to her knees, gasping for breath. Alan loomed over her, both impressed by her persistence and ready to end the match. He glanced toward the stands, his gaze showing respect to his leader. Veniel gave a small, arrogant nod from his seat. "You held out quite a while," Alan said, his eyes void of any emotion. "But this is as far as it goes." "Lady Lika, please stop," her friends screamed in despair. Zeke's fury finally exploded. His eyes glowed with an orange light, flames beginning to lick around his clenched fist. He was about to intervene. Alan raised his sword, preparing to deliver the finishing blow, a strike powerful enough to severely injure the helpless Lika. Lika could only look up, her eyes wide with terror as the blade came down. But in a flash of bright yellow light, another warrior appeared. It was Sandy. She had jumped into the arena, her massive greatsword blocking Alan's attack right at the critical moment. "What were you thinking?" Sandy roared. Alan was completely stunned. He didn't expect anyone to interrupt the match. Zeke breathed a sigh of relief. Alan questioned, "What on earth are you thinking, interrupting a match like this?" Sandy turned sharply to Alan. "Don't pretend. You were just about to kill Lika, weren't you?" The stands erupted in a horrified buzz at the West Hall's brutality. Alan only sneered, feigning innocence. "That sounds so violent. How could I ever do such a thing?" But Edgies had also stepped onto the field. "Is that true?" he asked, his voice calm but extremely dangerous. He stepped between the two sides, shielding his friends. "From where I was standing, that last strike looked excessively dangerous." Alan tried to deny it, but Edgies wouldn't have it. He looked directly at Alan, his voice cutting through the tense air. "Everyone saw it clearly. Lika currently cannot use her internal energy. Yet you still used full force to attack someone in that state. There are limits to what is allowed." Suddenly, Veniel appeared beside Alan, leisurely placing a hand on his teammate's shoulder. "So you interrupt a match and then complain about how we fight. How disappointing." Sandy's anger exploded. "Regardless, this match isn't a life-or-death duel." "Too soft," Veniel smirked mockingly. "That's exactly why you people lost." Edgies remained silent, though his cold gaze promised a coming retaliation. Veniel leaned down, his voice whispering like venom. "Listen closely. We aren't playing pretend war games like you. We are fighting seriously." He shrugged in admission. "That's right, this isn't a kill-or-be-killed situation. Even we are holding back." Then with a chilling smile, he added, "So it's not like we're intentionally trying to kill her. Regardless, there's a chance she might get hurt a little." Sandy's aura exploded around her, her eyes bloodshot with rage. But before anyone could move, a terrifying pressure enveloped the entire arena. Instructor Metric intervened, his mere presence causing the entire stadium to fall into a pin-drop silence. Every eye turned toward him in fear. With a voice of absolute authority, he asked, "Did I give you permission to talk nonsense?" Sandy tried to object, but his razor-sharp gaze silenced her. "Those who aren't supposed to be here have no right to speak." His glowing golden eyes swept across the entire field. Edgies knew they were in a weak position and bowed his head, apologizing for interrupting the match. The instructor delivered his verdict. "The match is over. West Hall wins. Everyone not participating in the next match leave the field immediately." Without another word, Edgies gently picked up the unconscious Lika. Her friends immediately ran to her side, their faces filled with extreme worry. Edgy's told everyone, "Lika is fine. I've given her a recovery potion, but it will take time to recover, so I'm taking her to the infirmary in this condition." Zeke turned to speak with a face slightly tinged with guilt, apologizing for the trouble, while the other boy gave a hearty laugh and said, "Don't worry about it." As they were leaving, Edgy's whispered to Zeke, "You were going to intervene too, weren't you?" He was referring to the moment Zeke's fist flared with fire, a detail that hadn't escaped his notice. Zeke just whistled, feigning ignorance, but his eyes told a different story. Edgy's and Sandy exchanged worried glances. This entire tournament felt very wrong. "Alan is strong, true," Edgy said, recalling the fight, "but for Lika to be overwhelmed to that extent." Thinking back, everything had been strange since the first match. There is definitely something going on with them. Lika stirred slightly in Edgy's arms, whispering weakly, "Zeke, you have to be careful too." Zeke's face hardened. He appreciated the concern and knew exactly what he had to do. He turned back to look at the arena, waving to his friends to signal that he had it handled. In the center of the arena, Veniel raised his special weapon, an arrogant smile on his face. "What a pity for you, isn't it? You will never be able to defeat me. Your failure has already been decided." Zeke just warmed up slightly, a silent promise of the pain he was about to deliver. Veniel began to get annoyed when he received no reaction from Zeke. The referee announced the start of the 7th match. Veniel opened his mouth to spout more arrogant words, but all that came out was a mouthful of fresh blood, as Zeke's fist slammed directly into his jaw with terrifying speed. The force of that single punch created a shockwave that rippled across the stone floor of the arena. The entire stadium went dead silent. Rangus and the others couldn't believe their eyes. Even instructor Metric was completely taken aback by Zeke's sudden explosive attack. Zeke stood calmly. "For someone who talks so much about real combat, how could you leave yourself wide open like that?" He lowered his hand, gesturing toward his dazed opponent. "Isn't this what you like, real fighting?" Seeing this, Alan cried out in panic, "Master Veniel." Although Zeke had launched a powerful attack toward Veniel, the opponent managed to counterattack with a move of his own, a swirling sphere of wind that shot toward Zeke. However, before it could hit, Zeke simply tilted his head slightly, easily dodging it. As Veniel stood up, he muttered a curse. Despite clearly feeling the terrifying force of Zeke's punch, he still didn't understand why Zeke was standing so still in the middle of the arena. Veniel knew he had countered almost instantly when attacked. So why was Zeke completely unharmed? Zeke spoke calmly. "I get it now. You use a wind-based power source. You're from one of the 4 great families, aren't you?" He even asked if that was the special power source of Veniel's clan. Veniel roared in fury, "You bastard." Zeke mocked him in return. "How does real combat feel? I even intentionally matched your style a bit just for you." Those words only enraged Veniel further. When he demanded an explanation, he suddenly went stiff. Zeke had appeared right behind him in the blink of an eye. Zeke glanced back, his eyes flashing, and said in a calm voice, "That's the 2nd time." Then he punched Veniel hard in the back of the neck, sending his opponent flying forward. As Veniel skidded across the ground and came to a halt, he screamed, "What the hell is this? How can someone like me be handled so easily?" When Veniel stood up again, Zeke immediately closed the distance. While the opponent prepared to attack, Zeke said, "Thinking in the middle of a real battle is useless. You've always felt safe until now, haven't you?" Then Zeke unleashed a powerful punch straight into Veniel's chest. The impact made his entire body shudder violently. Veniel's eyes rolled back, and he coughed up fresh blood, collapsing to his knees in front of Zeke. "That's the 3rd time," Zeke said. Veniel, trembling with pain, growled and asked what Zeke was talking about. What was he counting? Zeke replied simply, "It's obvious. I'm counting the number of times you've died in this match." Veniel was still dazed as Zeke explained. "The first was the punch to the face. The second was the blow to the back of the neck. The third was the strike to the heart. The only reason you're still alive is because of the match rules." Veniel screamed in rage that there was no way that was true. But Zeke kicked him straight in the face mid-sentence, declaring, "You're right. This is real combat and break time is over. Talking to the enemy isn't part of it." The force of the kick sent Veniel rolling several times across the arena floor. Sandy's face darkened as she witnessed this. She couldn't believe her eyes. Sweat poured down her face as she remarked that the battle between Zeke and Veniel could no longer be called a match. Edgy's agreed, adding that compared to this scene, his own match with Zeke was just a friendly practice session. He continued, saying that Zeke's power was completely illogical. He was the very definition of unfair. Standing in the middle of the arena with a faint smile, Zeke asked Veniel, "Are you starting to understand what real combat is now?" As Veniel lay trembling on the ground, struggling against his injuries, Zeke admitted that completely crushing an enemy is indeed very important on the battlefield, just as Veniel had said. He added that Veniel and the others from West Hall would likely become excellent warriors in the future. As Veniel tried to crawl toward him, Zeke closed his eyes slightly and pointed out, "But we aren't on a battlefield." He noted their match was being supervised by instructors and recovery potions were readily available. He described this as an extremely soft environment for someone like Veniel to dare talk about real combat. Veniel struggled to get up, barking at Zeke to shut up. But Zeke continued, "The real combat you talk about is far from reality. You're just running away from your own weaknesses." He asked, "Am I wrong?" Instead of answering, Veniel repeatedly screamed for Zeke to shut up, his rage reaching its peak. Suddenly, a vortex of green wind formed behind him, leaving the audience in awe. Veniel declared that a person like Zeke, a bastard child, had no right to lecture him. Zeke calmly asked if Veniel was going through a rebellious phase, saying that if so, anything he said would be useless. He added that, as an opponent, he didn't mind if Veniel wanted to vent all his frustration. Veniel prepared to attack, roaring for Zeke to shut up and stop acting like he knew everything. Then he unleashed the Stormblade technique, a barrage of wind strikes flying toward Zeke. Zeke easily jumped into the air, dodging every single blow. Seeing this, Veniel secretly thought that he only needed one chance. He just needed to touch Zeke once. From outside the field, Rangus didn't understand what was happening, asking why the ground was being torn up when he couldn't see anything. Edgies explained that it was Veniel's power, the wind aura of the Thanold family, one of the 4 great houses. He added that wind aura is invisible, so it was normal for Rangies not to see it. Sandy was still irritated, calling it a disgusting type of power that suited Veniel perfectly. Edgies laughed and told her not to say that, although he admitted that no matter how annoying it was still very hard to deal with. He noted that Veniel's continuous invisible attacks made him a formidable opponent. Hearing this, Rangies grew even more worried. In the arena, Veniel was completely bewildered. Not a single one of his strikes touched Zeke, even though Zeke couldn't see them. Zeke simply replied, "I just need to follow the flow of the air." Veniel couldn't believe it, screaming that it was impossible. Suddenly, Zeke appeared and punched Veniel squarely, pointing out that his opponent's opening had been exposed once again. Veniel clutched his head, declaring that he had truly had enough of Zeke. He launched a barrage of extremely fast attacks, but Zeke dodged them all with ease, hands behind his back and eyes closed as if he were playing. After being insulted once more, Zeke calmly remarked that Veniel was indeed in a rebellious phase. When Veniel finally stopped attacking, Zeke asked if he felt any better. But Veniel only grew more enraged, roaring that he would kill Zeke. Zeke replied that Veniel's stubborn will was quite admirable for a warrior. While launching another strike, he added that Veniel's body had long since surpassed its limits. Veniel collapsed to his knees again. Zeke advised ending the match, saying that continuing would only cause him more pain. But suddenly, a mysterious purple aura appeared as Veniel grabbed Zeke's leg. Zeke didn't notice anything unusual at first, asking if he still wanted to continue. As the purple aura grew stronger, Veniel's face darkened and he began to laugh like a demon. When Zeke asked what was going on, Veniel concentrated the aura into his weapon and declared that this would be Zeke's end. He unleashed the Stormblade, Wind Bullet. Zeke tried to use his power source for defense, but he sensed something was wrong. He couldn't use it. With no other choice, he used only pure physical strength to block the blow. Rangus and Eric were stunned when Veniel finally managed to land a hit. Edgies noticed something strange about Zeke and pointed it out. When Selene asked what he meant, Lika and Marin arrived just in time. Lika was helped into a seat, apologizing for causing everyone worry. When asked if she knew what was happening to Zeke, she explained that she didn't just know, but she realized he was exactly like her. In her previous match, she had suddenly become unable to use her power source. She added that the person who fought Veniel first had also shown strange behavior. Perhaps she had encountered the same situation. If so, then Zeke very likely couldn't use his power source either. In the arena, Veniel laughed loudly, convinced he had won. He mocked Zeke's earlier arrogance and declared he would make sure Zeke never dared to stand against him again. Gathering his strength, he prepared his ultimate move, Silent Storm. A massive vortex of energy began to converge above his head. As Zeke stood up, Veniel roared for him to die. With that, he swung his fan, hurling the energy storm toward Zeke. Rangies could only scream Zeke's name in panic. Zeke concentrated all his physical strength into his fist. Before the strike hit, he lunged forward and delivered a powerful punch straight to Veniel's face. The force slammed Veniel into the arena wall. When the dust cleared, Veniel looked at Zeke with eyes of horror and disbelief, sweat pouring down his face. He didn't understand how Zeke could still fight after everything that had happened. His teammates were equally stunned, while Lika simply gave a small smile, observing that whether he could use his power source or not didn't seem to matter to Zeke at all.